Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. On the table there was a mug with foam, and the question was heard whether the comrade had heard. Different characters were sitting at a table in a tavern. The man continued about Chunshik. The hero clarified, "Is this the CEO of Novus World?" The guy in the header was holding a paper and said that yesterday he said that this year he would take first place on the server. The girl asked if he was joking. A brunette was sitting at the table. The man behind him said that most likely he had never played, and the second said that he also thought so what such an old man should do in the game. The guy opened his mouth and asked why his ears itched so much. He scratched his ear with displeasure and asked if someone was discussing him. The girl said that people discuss him every day. She doesn't think that you should believe any signs. The brunette froze with a raised finger. The hero took a sip from his mug. Holding it, Chunshik asked why everything was so realistic. It was just a game. The girl replied that it was because they were using the latest VR device. The man lying in the helmet was pierced by the pain of the blow, and the heroine explained that in the new version, the ability to taste and smell was added to the sense of touch, and you should be careful in the game. Here the pain is felt no worse than in life. The guy drank from the mug again and said that the game was still a game. Alcohol was much tastier in real life. Why children like this game so much? They spent a day in it. He squeezed his eyes shut, enjoying his beer. The girl was sitting at the table. Hearing him ask the bartender for another mug. While the waitress was putting the drinks, the man asked what to do. Secretary Jong replied that she would explain the basics to him. She held the scroll and said that he should get the maximum level, raise karma points and become a ranker. This scroll tells how to level up quickly. Let him try to follow all the points. This will help him in leveling. The blonde elf listened as the guy said that it was difficult. He thought that he should just hunt someone. And why did he only say that he would take first place? He could say that it was a joke. The blonde smiled. The girl's words were heard that his reputation would suffer in this case. The heroes turned around when they heard the question. They were serious. The huge warrior in the red suit laughed, saying that he knew that this loser would die. If he were in his place, there would be no living place left of them. Jong closed her eyes, saying how noisy it was here. The guy had already approached these heroes, asking why they were making noise, just when she was about to call him to leave. Pointing his finger with displeasure, the brunette said that the young people now have no manners at all. Are they in their house? Why are they making so much noise? There are actually other people here besides them. Chunshik pointed his finger at the warrior's forehead and said that it was because their parents did not raise properly. Why would they give birth to children if they did not engage in upbringing? The big man stood up, angrily asking who he was and why he had molested them. He wanted to die. The brunette angrily pointed his finger, asking how he could address his elders so informally. Pointing his finger, he continued to shout. Are all the children really so impudent now? In their time they were afraid to say an extra word to adults. He turned around as he heard the man tell him to listen carefully. The blond man with a bandage on his face crossed his arms and said that judging by his appearance, he was a beginner. Why did he want to play games for her? It was better to let her go play chess or what the old people were doing. Chunshik's eyes narrowed angrily. The man in the red armband said that if he did not leave immediately, he would die on the spot. Jong touched the indignant headmaster's chest and apologized for her friend crossing the line. The blonde frowned and asked why. Calmly looking at him, the heroine explained that he is very old-fashioned, thinks just like his grandfather. She hopes he will understand him and forgive him. Those present in the bar looked around as they heard the girl assume that he was a ranker. She didn't think he would be praised if he got into a fight with a rookie, so he had better just let him go. The man with the red armband gloomily told the old man to run as long as he could. Chunshik walked away, continuing that they should learn etiquette, how to treat them politely. The red-armored warrior asked if he would really let them go. The blond man replied that of course not. His eyes shone golden, and he continued that he was thinking about the best way to deal with them. Flying islands hovered in the sky behind the trees. Words were heard that everything here was the same as in the real world. There were a lot of rude people. A disgruntled Chunshik clenched his fist, saying that if he was a high rank, or whatever it is called in the game, he would have taught them a lesson long ago on whether Jong agreed. The girl turned gloomily and called for the director. Standing in front of her, she said that she didn't think he should say here that he was the CEO in real life. Looking at him, she continued that he was already being discussed by everyone about his statements that he was going to take the first place. If his identity was revealed, there could be even more problems. She imagined silhouettes with greedy smiles and said that perhaps a hunt for his head would begin. Looking at her indifferently, the brunette replied that he didn't care. Pointing his finger, he clarified, as she said, "You need to raise the levels, he will do it quickly, and no one will be able to kill him." Jong replied that he will most likely die before he becomes so strong. Unwrapping the scroll, Chunshik asked if he needed to defeat this animal. The secretary confirmed, saying that it was called a quest. He killed the desired monster and gained experience, and the monster could also drop good items. On the scroll there was a wolf-like beast. The guy asked where to look for it. The carcass of a wounded beast lay nearby, and Jong said that as far as she remembered, it must be somewhere nearby. The monster's eyes were closed. The guy assumed that it seemed that someone had already killed him. Jong sat down, looking, and said that it was true, he was killed recently. The guy asked what to do. The girl's eyes widened. Looking at the wound, she said that she had a bad feeling. The wolf was not killed by a novice. A bright red beam crossed her body as she said that something was wrong here. His gaze became shocked. The guy's eyes narrowed in surprise. The same blonde man held the braid, saying that he thought it was good in battle, but it turned out to be a dummy. The warrior's eyes shone yellow. The director shouted that this was the rude from the inn that he wanted from them. Curling his clawed fingers, the ranker said that he still didn't seem to understand the situation he was in. He thought they would just forgive him for that humiliation. Looking at the pixels that were left of her friend, the director asked, "Is she dead?" The gloomy blonde continued how he had even thought of scolding them. At least he understood who they were. Clenching his fist, Chunshik was indignant, shouting that because of this, they killed an innocent person. This is a real crime. The red-armored warrior clenched his fist, telling him to call the police, let them go to jail. The blow crashed into the hero's body. He spat out the blood, thinking that the pain of the blow was really like life. Standing next to the trembling guy, the tank offered to watch him lie in pain. The blonde said that it was quite funny. His eyes glowed yellow. The man asked if he had anything to say. He could not die in PvP, since he was now under the buff for beginners. Chunshik gritted his teeth, angrily saying that they were bullies, completely crazy. How could they attack those who were weaker, moreover, older ones? Putting the weapon behind his back, the big man said that he was back to his own. This was senile senility. Hitting the weapon, he said that he would see how long it lasted. He struck painfully, screaming, wishing death. He looked down in surprise, wondering if he had anything else to say. There was a dome of novice blessing around Chunshik. He replied that he wanted to. He was once again convinced of how arrogant, ill-mannered, did they really take pleasure in being weak. The blonde man stopped his friend with his hand and asked. He grabbed the hero's hair and asked if he wanted him to tell something. The sharp blade touched the boy's forehead, and the ranker angrily said that he didn't care who he was. Blood splashed, and a scream was heard. The blonde continued that to him he was nothing more than an annoying bug. The guy was holding on to his eye, and the blonde man asked if it hurt. He was sure that he was very angry now, but what were the rules of the game? The strongest survived. The player's eyes were shining. He said that if he was dissatisfied with something, let them complain to the developers, and let him not forget to write his name in the complaint. Pinching the wounded eye, just wait. A blue sphere appeared next to the hooligan, which said that a message had arrived. The armored man heard that the most fun was beginning, and asked what it was. Turning to him, the man with the bandage replied that the guild master had summoned him, thinking he was an errand boy. Chunshik grabbed his leg and asked where he was going. He wouldn't let him go. His foot stepped on his palm with the words that he was infuriating. As he was leaving, the gloomy ranker asked his comrade to give him a good beating. The warrior raised his hammer and asked him not to worry. He would take care of him. Why couldn't he just remain silent? Looking down, he said that they would have fun. They had enough. However, he was interrupted by a blow to the jaw. This was followed by many more blue blows. Chunshik was shocked, asking what it was. Above the blonde's palm was a skull attacking bones. She asked, "Do they think it's good to bully newcomers?" Placing her hand on her side, the elf said confidently that only real scum would do that. Holding a skull, a legendary item that temporarily knocks out an enemy, she told the trash to disappear. On the screen there was a logo with information about the system update, a presentation of Nova's world. There was a group of people on the stage. The host said that at the end the director of the company would answer their questions. The director of Chunshik held the microphone, greeting everyone, asked not to hesitate to ask questions. The man looked away as he was interrupted. The journalist adjusted his glasses and said that I would like to ask what is the meaning of his slogan that you don't need donations to win, and you can have fun without paying. It's just a marketing ploy. Why doesn't it solve the main problem in the update? The discouraged man heard that because of past updates, it is quite possible to play, of course, if the person is not a major who donates. But then what is the point of the slogan? The guy looked through his flashing glasses and said that he understood. The director had never played. The audience in the hall laughed when they heard that he was rich. He did not understand how difficult it was to oppose VIP players. Chunshik darkened after hearing the questions of what he was asking a person who was lagging behind the modern world. He really didn't think. The director gritted his teeth, and then he indignantly pointed his finger and shouted that he had just said a marketing ploy. They were to blame for everything. It was not his fault that his hands did not grow from his shoulders. The journalist was smiling. The man in the suit was grinning. The secretary looked alarmed when she heard the cry that he was old-fashioned. Let them give him a year. He would play without any donations. Clenching his fist, Chunshik shouted that he would take first place in the top. A warrior in a red suit was sitting by a tree. Chunshik barely stood up and asked who she was and why did she help. The blonde threw him a vial of red potion and said that he would arrange an interrogation later. Let him drink this first, this potion to restore health. The brunette was indignant, asking why she threw things in her face, did not respect her elders. She laughed, saying that she thought he would catch him. The hero took a sip when he heard that they needed to escape, and asked if she hadn't defeated him. The warrior stood up just as the elf said she had simply knocked him out. His eyes burned red. He called her impudent. The elf chuckled, saying that he had already woken up, and the hero asked if she had a plan. She grabbed his wrist, saying that of course there was, and she jerked after herself, quickly running away. Chunshik, who was running after her, asked, "Isn't she stronger? Let her just defeat him?" Turning around with a smile, the interlocutor said that in fact she was also a beginner. As he thought, she should fight the ranker, and the guy was indignant at how old she was and why she was addressing informally. The tank swung his hammer. The girl said that although she could not defeat him, She threw something at the garden, saying that she could do this. Green drops splashed in front of the player. He asked what kind of tricks they were. A green thing was approaching the warrior. It flooded all of his red armor. Chunshik turned around in surprise and asked what it was. The elf clarified, was this the first time he had seen this? She circled around the enemy and teased, saying that it was slime, used quite rarely, and in vain, because it has a cool effect. Only a few people know about it, so it is very easy to lure enemies into a trap. The director asked in surprise what it was, and said that he did not understand the younger generation at all. Suddenly his eyes widened. Pointing her finger at the swung opponent, the elf said that even her father knew it. The big man hit her with his fist, shouting that she was caught, he would destroy them. Everything disappeared from the rising dust, and words were heard that it hurt. However, in fact, the elf dodged and said that she was joking. The green slime was already covering the warrior's entire body, and she said that the more he moved, the stronger the effect from it. As a result, there was a jelly with eyes on the ground. Slime is an improved item that slows down the enemy and can turn him into a monster, and when you damage a monster, the enemy turns into a normal state. She said that the more movement, the more it envelopes the slime. A cool item. She does not understand why it is so rarely used. A portal appeared in front of the heroes, and the slime monster asked for help. Chunshik turned when he was called. Green Jelly looked angry, saying that he remembered his nickname. Next time he would die by his hand. The hero swung at him, calling him a rude. Is he a friend or a buddy? He needs to be drunk with a belt for such manners. Pointing with his finger, he said that if they met again, then it would be him who would have problems. Let him learn manners. Jelly was indignant, asking where they were. Let them free him first. Well, in the end, he was left alone on the ground, shouting that he remembered them. Suddenly, the jelly covered a shadow in the form of wings. It was his comrade standing on a huge bat who said that he had asked him to teach this rookie a lesson. This is how he follows his orders. The warrior was trying to justify himself. Landed and the blonde said he was a loser. Where did they go? He needed to check something. The jelly replied that he didn't know. They used the portal, and asked what happened. He was alone, with a bandage on his face, explained that he did not know the details. The guild master had entrusted him with a task. He needed to find a rookie named Chunshik. The head offered a round sum for him. In the city there was a statue in the form of a winged praying man. This is the statue of death in the city square. The brunette's eyes widened. Saying that she had been gone for a long time, the director was left alone. She grimly imagined how the director gave up, and she became the worst secretary, and thought that if she did not support the director, then he would simply disgrace himself because of the broken promise. If he stooped in the public eye, it meant that she was not worthy of the position of secretary. Chunshik walked behind with the elf, saying that this round means of transportation is very convenient, and she said that the correct way to say the portal is, it really is like grandpa. The guy waved his hand when he saw Secretary Jong, and said that it was good that she had been reborn. The brunette sat with her eyes closed and said that she understood what had happened, and then thanked Ms. Kiddo for her help. The elf scratched her head with a laugh and said that there was nothing for it. The newcomers should stick together. Chunshik smiled broadly, saying that she was really amazing. Use slime, it was cool. The girl said that he embarrasses her. Jong silently looked down. After hearing the question of what she did in real life and how much money she earned, the elf asked why he would know, and it didn't matter, they were just in the game. Chunshik turned when the secretary called out to him, saying that she wouldn't let him down again. Looking at him, Jong said that she was to blame for what happened. She should have protected him. This would not happen again. The director waved his hand with a smile and said that everything was fine. Don't blame yourself. He was weak and admitted it. The heroine raised an eyebrow in surprise when she heard that she didn't have to worry about it anymore. Chunshik pointed his finger at the satisfied elf and said that from tomorrow he would travel with her. She no longer needed to accompany him. The girl slammed the table indignantly, asking what he meant. Calmly looking at her, the hero said that it was he, not her, who entered into a stupid argument. All responsibility lies with him, and he understands that he is using her, so she can now calmly go about her business. The brunette indignantly pointed her finger at the girl, saying that it was too dangerous. How could he trust a person he had known for a maximum of an hour? The guy crossed his arms and said that it was not polite to talk about someone in the third person if that person was next to them, and his decision was non-negotiable. Looking at her gloomily, the director said that this was not a request, but an order. A shadow fell on the face of the discouraged girl. Kiddo laughed, saying that she should not be afraid, she will not let him be offended. And by the way, this is her second account, basically she already has the maximum level. The guy sitting at the table said goodbye to the secretary, saying that it was late, and thanked him for his work. Jong glanced sideways at the satisfied elf and thought that she didn't like her. Turning to the side, she thought that she was sure that she was up to something. She must have deliberately approached the director. The heroine walked along the evening street, thinking that she would definitely protect the director, no matter what. Chunshik looked at the blonde and said that he did what she asked. But why did she want to travel and teach him? Kiddo laughed, saying that for questions, of course, there is kindness, players should help each other. The hero gave a thumbs up, saying that she was right, the younger generation should learn to be so responsive. He fully approved of her approach, and the girl said that he was just like her grandfather. Getting up, she said that it was really late, she would go too. Turning back, the heroine said that they would see each other tomorrow and would raise the level together. The girl came out of the tavern, singing, and then she laughed insidiously, saying that it was too easy. There was a predatory smile on her lips. Kiddo thought that she knew that since he had a secretary, then he was the president of some large company. So lucky, let the director just wait. At this time, Chunshik was already drunkenly blushing, and she thought that she would soon get everything he had. Multi-story building of the Novus World head office. The secretary went into the office and said that they had set up the VR device as he had requested. Chunshik, who was standing at the window, turned around and said that he would come over now. He handed Jong a jacket and said that the game wasn't really as bad as it had turned out to be to him, and he was even beginning to understand why the children were so passionate about it. The man was holding a helmet when the girl addressed him. Looking at him, the secretary in glasses said that she would still like to help him in the game. Putting on the device, the director reminded that he had already said that everything was fine. He was not a child, he would cope on his own, and he wanted to test his strength. He had not felt such excitement for a long time. Remembering the blonde man in the mask, he said that he wanted to become strong as soon as possible in order to punish the bad guys. He could not even sleep peacefully, remembering that impudent man. Leaning back in his chair, Chunshik said that he would play at 1 or 2 and go home, asking not to worry about him. Jong remained silent, mentally apologizing to the director. Blue pixels appeared in front of his eyes. The hero appeared in the game, and the girl thought that she was forced to disobey him. Kiddo waved to him. A dark silhouette peeked around the corner. It was Jong, who thought it was for his own safety. Throwing her hands behind her head, the blonde asked what they would do today. Whether they would raise the level? The guy replied that yes. The secretary Jong gave a guide on how to quickly raise the level. Holding the scroll, he said that up to the 10th level, you need to complete quests and kill monsters. The girl grabbed the scroll, interrupting with a question why he was reading it so carefully. Chunshik raised his fist indignantly, shouting how it was possible to grab something out of his hands, especially without permission. Kiddo asked if it was just an old guide. She thought he was studying serious documents. As she rolled the scroll back, she asked if he really wanted to level up in such a stupid and slow way. There were many others that he would use to climb up quickly. Frowning, the brunette asked to be told about these methods. The girl smiled. Waving her hand, she called him to follow her, promising that she would show everything. He looked ahead, asking if she was sure this was what they wanted. In front of them was a rookie set. The heroine said that this lucky set is insanely useful. It has everything you need for a player up to level 20, armor, and weapons. With this set it is guaranteed to level up. The guy looked at the set, saying that he had no money, and Kiddo replied that, of course, he would not have funds in his game account. They had to be purchased with real money. She froze with a sly smile and thought that now he was caught. Her plan was just perfect. She imagined a mountain of money and thought that you can't survive in the game without donations. VIP players have much more opportunities. She imagined warriors in silver armor and thought that donations mean rapid development. It becomes easier and more fun to play. But after the first purchase in the game, it is almost impossible to stop. She imagined the guy in armor and how she had stolen it, and thought that according to her plan, he would continue to donate and buy expensive sets, and in the end, she would take all the things she bought. The girl raised her finger with a smile, saying that such a treasure cost only $9.99. However, the guy said that he would not buy it for real money. As he left, he waved his hand. The blonde asked why he didn't want to, explained to him that donations to the game were a waste of money. Catching up with the hero, Kiddo asked, he costs only $10 here. Does he really not have it? This is a lucrative offer. Why does he refuse? The guy hit her on the top of her head and said that he didn't want to. His fist was smoking. Chunshik indignantly asked what it was for only $10. It was a lot of money. He wanted to level up on his own. The disgruntled girl showed him an indecent gesture in the back. While the guy said that young people donate as if they earn money themselves, they do not appreciate the work of their parents at all. Turning around, the hero said that he had forgotten to ask right away. He scratched his cheek and asked what he needed to do to become the top one on the server? The blonde's eyes were rounded in shock. Throwing back her head, she laughed loudly, saying that he was joking. With such a skill he wanted to take the top one on the server. Chunshik angrily asked why she was laughing. He said, just asked? Wiping away tears from laughter, Kiddo apologized and said that it was normal, even though he was not the strongest ranker in the game. She presented silhouettes and explained that first you need to get the maximum level. Paid sets help a lot with this. After that he scores points, which are called karma. They determine his rank. She introduced warriors, a huge monster, players who cross swords, and said that each game action brings karma points. That is, they can be obtained not only in PvP, but also through quests, buildings, blacksmithing, and so on. Touching his chin, Chunshik asked if the karma was high, then he would be in the first place. The girl confirmed, saying that in order to start getting karma points as soon as possible, he was needed. She pointed at the goods and continued that a lucky set for second-level beginners, he could get a good discount. However, the guy was already far away from her, asking why she was standing there. A bird flying in the sky heard her indignant cry that he did not even listen to the end. Tall trees grew in the forest. Chunshik looked at the scroll, ignoring the question of why he needed this boring and complicated guide, because she said that it was easier to buy the set. There was a bear with horns in the drawing, and the hero said that they needed to find this animal. It was a horned bear. The girl replied that it was an epic monster. She did not think that they would cope with it. The guy looked away. A lot of orange monsters were beating the knight. Seeing this, Chunshik asked if he could help him, but the girl replied that it was not their problem. The red monster has opened its mouth. Mobs are quite difficult to catch. Besides, there is little experience with them. A waste of time and effort. She turned, but it was empty. The beast was holding a bat. Chunshik said that let her say that these mobs are useless for leveling if a person needs help. He struck the beast from top to bottom, continuing that they couldn't just pass by. The knight was discouraged. Kiddo touched her forehead in displeasure. The sword touched the monster's body flat. She shouted that if he decided to be a hero, let him do it properly. Stas was surprised to hear that he needed to hit them with a blade. The monsters jumped with a scream. They surrounded the guy who asked for help from the girl, saying that he could not cope. However, she turned away, saying that she had warned him. He did not listen. He would be a lesson to him. The guy closed one eye with tension, saying that he could die like this. Let him help. At this time, a huge knight stood up. The blonde looked at him attentively. The knight raised his staff, wanted to help him. Light emanated from the ball at the top, because it is a healing staff that is used for healing. Green crosses appeared around the guy. The gray-helmeted knight was embarrassed. The monsters stared silently. Kiddo, shocked, exclaimed that he is a healer? Looking at the muscular knight, she said that it didn't look like a support. Chunshik exclaimed that he didn't understand what was going on, but he felt better. Swinging his sword, he shouted that he had a lot of energy in him, as if he was 20 again. Jong hid behind a tree, hearing him laugh and say that he doesn't know what he's doing, but something seems to be working out. Clutching her bow, the girl thought that the headmaster was in danger. Looking in that direction, she realized that she could not openly help him. His fingers touched the arrow. Pulling the bowstring, Jong decided that she would help in this way. She had to do at least something. The ginger beast noticed this when she thought that he would be her first target. The arrow flew away, leaving a trail. The skill shooting at the target accurately identifies the enemy and shoots at him. The girl saw the arrow fly past the monster. It was brought into the bushes. Chunshik held the monster's ears and asked, "Did they hear anything?" He looked at the obviously frightened monster and asked what was wrong with it. Looking ahead, the blonde replied that he was afraid of the king of this forest. A clawed paw appeared. It said that it was that mob. The arrow stuck out between the horns. The girl continued, which he needed to defeat. A huge horned bear towered over the heroes. His shadow fell on the tense guys. Opening its mouth, the beast roared. A bear could be seen in the forest. He was sleeping on a fallen tree. He dreamed of a jar of honey. The beast dipped its paw into it. The bear pulled it to his mouth, but he woke up from a blow to the head. His eyes turned red with anger. Chunshik and Spirit were standing opposite. The guy asked what they should do, because the beast looked aggressive. The girl said that they need to defeat him and gain experience, because this is what they were looking for him for. The bear swung his paw. The hero replied that he did not think that it would be so huge. The beast struck. Looking at the footprint on the ground, she added that you need to be careful, because one blow can kill. The men were outraged that she was talking about it only now. Kiddo watched them silently, hearing the screams. The horned bear looked at them attentively, imagining how the beast threw the player. He thought that in the game this is the only problem of all beginners. They meet a strong enemy for the first time, so his nickname is the White Sea of Beginners. Watching their fight, Kiddo was now thinking that it would be useful for them to learn about the difficulties of the game. A strange smile appeared on her face as she thought that it would make it easier to attract him to shop. Looking at the way the bear stabbed the hero, she also thought that he would not be able to defeat him, so he would constantly die and be disappointed in the game. The girl imagined putting her foot on him, wondering what she would say at that moment. That shopping would make him stronger, and the first stage of her ingenious plan would be completed. Looking to the side, she also realized that there was one problem. Seeing Jong peeking out from behind the tree, she thought that Jong wouldn't let the director spend the company's money so easily, and she must have shot an arrow at the bear. Looking away thoughtfully, Kiddo thought that if this girl wanted to help, she would do it right away, but she was just looking from the sidelines. The bear was breathing heavily, and Chunshik decided that he had done enough damage, so the beast had lost blood and should weaken. But he struck. Spirit healed him. The guy hoped that he did not break his back, not understanding how they should defeat him. His friend was surprised to hear the question about what he could do besides treatment, specifying that he was asking this only just in case. Watching Spirit shake his head, Chunshik was surprised that he really couldn't do anything. He raised his finger to him, remembering something. Raising his hands, he began to cast incantations. This is how the man kept the light sphere in them. The bear came closer when the hero did not understand why such a useless skill was invented. Opening his mouth wide, the hero screamed. The bear shook him from side to side. The hero flew next to Spirit. He watched as he lay on the ground. When the man caught him again, Kiddo was surprised that they were still alive, saying that their attempts were futile, suggesting that they simply surrender. Rising from the ground, Chunshik replied that he didn't know what it meant to give up. Frowning, he added that while he was receiving blows, he noticed his weak point. The girl raised an eyebrow in surprise, surprised that it was fast. Looking at the bear, she thought about what many people consider to be the weak point of its horn. But they are wrong. They need to take a closer look at where the arrow hit. Noticing it between the horns, she thought that this was the vulnerable spot. Chunshik clenched his fist victoriously, saying that like all other bears, he couldn't stand light. Kiddo looked at him questioningly. The hero remembered watching TV, saying that in one of the films they used a flashlight as a bear repeller, which means they can't stand light. Frowning, the interlocutor thought that this was nonsense. Drawing his sword, Chunshik told his comrade that when he gave the signal, he should use the skill with the light. It would be nice for them if he could distract him a little. The bear himself tried to reach for the arrow. He turned around when someone called him stupid. The beast saw the hero in front of him. Frowning, the man told him to attack. The bear rushed at him. He raised his paw. Spirit took notice. The man stopped him with his staff. Chunshik withdrew his sword to strike. Spirit pushed the beast away from him upon hearing of the unparalleled sword strike. A light appeared in his hand. A light illuminated the blade. The bear paid attention to this. Chunshik struck him in the forehead. Kiddo opened her mouth in surprise. The beast staggered and growled. Seeing how he fell, the hero was glad that they succeeded. Chunshik angrily looked at Kiddo, who said that she should have hit quickly and accurately right away so that this light would not be needed, and replied that she should not spoil the joy of winning by reproaching her for standing on the sidelines, so she had no right to criticize. Noticing the bear's movement, she replied that it would be as he wanted, offering to finish him off. Raising his sword again, Chunshik told the bear not to be offended, because he attacked first. The beast looked pitifully, which made the hero frown. Looking at him, Kiddo asked, "Why so long?" The hero continued to stand silently. Turning, he replied that he would not kill him. Frowning, they looked at each other. The girl was indignant that after all his suffering, he would simply leave him, without gaining experience and not completing tasks, to which he replied that he had his own reasons. Remembering the dog's face, he said that he had done the same, reminding him of a puppy, to which the interlocutor said that he was crazy, because a huge bear cannot look like a domestic dog. Spirit also looked at the beast, hearing that the hero had already decided everything, and he just couldn't kill it. The bear also looked at him pitifully. The man healed the bear, when the girl offered the hero to remember how he wanted to kill him. Now he talks about pity, to which the guy replied that he decided so, and there is nothing to discuss here. Glancing at Spirit, the beast growled slightly. He left and the man waved after him. Turning away from Kiddo, Kiddo replied that she wouldn't rest until he killed him, to which she replied that he should have done it right away. Chunshik noticed that the bear had disappeared. The hero looked around, not understanding where he had gone, because he was almost dead. Spirit was visibly frightened when asked where he was looking and how such a monster could have gone unnoticed. A new message appeared in front of Chunshik that the man wanted to join the team. Folding his hands, the hero saw that he did not mind, and asked for the opinion of Kiddo, who replied that the healer would never hurt. Placing his hand on his shoulder, the hero said that they were glad to greet him and that they had forgotten to introduce themselves right away. Pointing to himself, he called himself a fiery champion and the leader of the team. The girl, pronouncing her name, wondered why he was the leader, although she offered to create the team. Spirit watched as they argued. The guy shouted that he was the oldest and wisest, to which she asked if he had any other achievements besides age. Everyone listened to everyone, shouting that as he said, so it would be. Kiddo continued to claim that she would be the leader. A statue could be seen in the square, and the question was heard that if a person was a healer, then why did he raise the strength indicator? Pointing at the man, Kiddo wanted to know why of all the characteristics it was strength if it was useless for healing, noting that it was because it looked cooler, and now she didn't understand why he chose the role of a healer, when it was worth choosing a paladin. Chunshik looked at the map, saw that the stock continued to rise and fall. He looked up as he heard himself addressed as if he were fiery. The girl folded her hands in displeasure, and when asked why she was suddenly shouting about the flames, she replied that since his name was a fiery champion, the abbreviation would be fiery, and that he needed to get used to the game faster. Pointing to the new comrade, Kiddo said that they were heading to the cathedral to change his stats, and that they would be back soon, so he could wait here. Looking at the map again, the hero agreed to wait for them. A lot of people passed by when he was surprised that he could even watch the news here, and someone turned to him again as a fiery champion. Chunshik glanced to the side. The red-skinned girl pointed at him, clarifying that it was him, the CEO of Chunshik. From her, the guy did not understand what she was talking about, and said that she had confused him with someone, to which she replied that he spoke exactly like Chunshik. With a smile looking at him, the girl said that she had been a fan for a while and that the book he wrote was very insightful. The interlocutor was delighted, remembering what he was like during the demonstration, and that people like her could not even dream of it. Frowning, Chunshik thought about what he should do in such a situation, wondering if she really knew that he was him. Remembering Jong's face, the man thought that this was what she was talking about, and that if people recognized him, then leveling up would be much more difficult. Looking at the cute look of the interlocutor, Chunshik thought that she did not look like a bad person. Smiling, the guy decided that everything would be fine if he revealed his identity, and said that it was him. Kiddo put her hand on his shoulder when he wanted to give his name, and replied that it wasn't Chunshik. The heroes and the red-skinned girl looked at her inquiringly. She introduced the man in armor, saying that Chunshik was rich and that he would surely spend a lot of money on such a thing. Casually glancing at the guy, she added that he refused to buy even the rookie set, to which he replied that he did not understand why he would spend money on the game. With her hands behind her back, her companion noted that Chunshik had said he would take the top one at no cost. Pulling her hand away, Kiddo replied that it was nonsense, that a person would not play the game without cost. The hero was annoyed to hear that he was just an old man who was unlikely to fulfill his promise, and that this game belonged to his company. Slamming her fist into the palm of her hand, the interlocutor replied that now that she had listened to this, everything made sense. Chunshik shook with anger when he heard that someone like him would never play by the rules and that this guy couldn't be him. Folding his arms over his chest, the hero nevertheless clarified that she was looking for Chunshik, asking what she had to do with him. The heroine, pointing to herself, replied that she was a journalist and therefore wanted to meet to take an interview. Looking at her intently, the guy thought that if he revealed himself, it could turn into a big problem. Kiddo said that it was time for them, wishing them good luck. Frowning slightly, the girl thought that such an obvious tactic would not work, and that she would introduce herself as anyone for her companion to recognize himself as Chunshik. Heading forward, the hero thought that although it was regrettable, this was his goal, and he would not allow anyone to stand in his way. Kiddo looked away. The girl looked at the hero's face, thinking that she really thought he was Chunshik. Putting her hands in her pocket, she decided that she had made a mistake again, and it was not so easy to find him. She turned when she was asked what she was doing. Drake approached her, and she replied that she was looking for Chunshik. His interlocutor stretched her back and, when asked if she had found him, replied that this time she had also failed, and although she questioned everyone, nothing came of it. Frowning, Drake didn't understand how their guild master expected them to find him, because he wasn't some kind of detective. The girl looked at him as he asked what she was going to do if she found him. She grabbed her sword. Smiling ominously, Crazy Dog replied that she would have to kill him first, and then think about it. Jong looked around the corner, overheard them talking about how everything was fine, but she needed to be careful with the murders, because her name was often found in the lines of incident reports, which surprised her to become so famous. The girl presented the guild emblem, thinking about why these thugs were looking for the headmaster. Looking at Drake, and amused that fortunately, they had never been able to find him. Jong glanced at the guard nearby, realizing that the situation hadn't gone too far yet. The same one asked her what she was up to here. The girl decided to run away, remembering that last time she put the CO in danger, but this time she will definitely protect him. Spirit lowered his head in confusion. The hero asked how it went, but the girl replied that nothing worked, because it turned out that he had already gone to the cathedral. They stood in front of the man. Chunshik asked that nothing could be changed. The girl replied that from now on he would stop pumping strength and begin to raise his intelligence. The guy clenched his fist, telling him not to be upset, because it happens, and it's great that he found his own way. Kiddo raised an eyebrow, not understanding what he was talking about, because if a healer chooses power, then he is a bad character. But the interlocutor did not understand why it is difficult to say a few encouraging words. Raising her finger, she remembered that there was one way. Anna introduced the potion, saying that it was for resetting characteristics, and it was distributed during one event, but it is no longer freely available, so it cannot be obtained. Putting her hands on her belt, Chunshik did not understand why she remembered it, because if it is not produced, then it makes no sense. But she demanded to listen to her to the end. Kiddo introduced a narrow street, saying that there is also a place called the Black Market, and although it is not very safe, it has everything and they transport discontinued items, so if they look for it, they can find it. Turning around, the hero heard that the price should not be high, and thus they would only be able to purchase it there. He replied that it was worth trying to visit the Black Market. Chunshik turned to her again after being asked if he knew where the place was, and replied that their problem wouldn't solve itself. Smiling, he added that this was their comrade's problem, and they should help him as soon as possible. Kiddo looked at him silently, hearing him call out to Spirit, and only added that she had a bad feeling. Several lanterns illuminated the street. The three of them walked along it. The hero noted that it was a creepy place, to which the girl noted that it was a back alley. Something caught his attention. A cat appeared in front of them, greeted them in the Black Market, and asked how he could help. Spirit was embarrassed to see him, and the girl said that she had forgotten to mention something. A few more cats were busy with their own affairs when she said that the guild that runs this market are players with a feline appearance, and if you want to join them, you need to be ready. Kiddo leaned into the ear of their interlocutor, who wanted to know what they were looking for, and told them to follow him. She, along with Spirit, went after him, telling the hero to wait here and make sure he didn't get lost. The one-eyed cat climbed on his shoulder as he replied that he was no longer a boy. This one asked him what he was looking for. Chunshik was frightened when he saw him. Mayang waved him in a friendly way, saying that he was a Black Market conduit and could help. Putting his hand behind his head, the hero replied that he did not need anything now, to which the interlocutor offered to show how to go to the guild and rest. Chunshik raised his hand to his face, contemplating that nothing terrible should happen. The cat took her by the hand, calling it a great decision, insisting on going there. He stepped over the threshold. A lot of cats smiled at him, greeting him. They sat him down at the bar, offering him grape juice. He took it in his hand, saying that when he saw this place from the outside, it looked creepy, but inside it turned out to be a real cafe. The hero took a sip. He winced as he tasted it. Chunshik spat out the contents when one of the cats said that the grape juice had been mixed with some kind of potion and asked if he was okay. Mayang took this juice in his hand, saying that it was a very expensive potion and the staff of the establishment had made a mistake, and although he was sorry, the guy had to pay for this item. The hero clenched his fist, hearing that since it was their mistake, then the 70% discount was not given. He could not believe that it was serious. Chunshik put his hand on his forehead, admitting that he was partly guilty of drinking without thinking, asking how much he needed to pay. The cat was smiling, talking about 30,000 gold. The guy frowned, specifying the price, to which the interlocutor explained that the original cost was 100,000 gold. He also replied that he did not have such an amount. Mayang clarified with a smile that he had no money, and heard that this was the case. Looking at him intently, he added that everything was fine. He tossed a fork in his paw. Then he stuck it in the tabletop, saying that the hero could pay with his body. The sign said that it was a black market guild, and someone asked where they left off. Chunshik had his mouth tied. A dagger glittered in the cat's paws, and he remembered that he had no money, and that it was not out of the question, for he was indeed a novice. Looking at the blade of the knife, Mayang noted that it would not return the potion he had consumed. The cat glanced in his direction, adding that it was so. Chunshik tried to free himself when asked why he didn't respond. The guy frowned when the interlocutor added that he was so distracted that he even had to tape his mouth shut. The one-eyed cat headed in his direction on the order. He freed his mouth. Opening it wide, the guy shouted that they were scammers, forcing him to drink this potion. Mayang pulled his paw away, surprised that he was forced to drink it himself. He laughed when Chunshik called it a robbery. The cat headed in his direction when the man asked why he was not allowed to go. He held a knife to him, saying that he didn't know how old the man was, but they had several years behind them, so it would be better for him if he shut up. Turning away, Mayang decided that they were with this for now, and that if he complied with one small request, then they could be considered even, and asked the guy what he thought about it. Chunshik looked at him indignantly, not understanding why he should do anything for him. After all, they are scammers. The cat turned to him, noting that he did not understand what position he was in, demanding that the assistant bring something. He showed the phone screen, asking if he could see it clearly. The photo showed how the hero destroyed the tavern, but he replied that he had never done so. Chunshik greedily drank the potion, and in the photo, the interlocutor said that it was not so difficult to fake them. After presenting the silhouettes of various people, Mayang said that if their VIP customers saw this recording of him bullying in the store, there would be a lot more problems after they posted it. The guy threw himself around in his chair, hearing that if he wanted to get out of the game in a bad way, he could do whatever he wanted, but he was outraged by who he was taken for. Frowning, Chunshik thought about what they wanted to publish him. By imagining the person in front of the computer, he knew that in that case, they might find out that he was Chunshik, and if so, things would become more complicated. Lowering his head, he decided that this would never happen. The cat threw up his hands, saying that if he continued to stand his ground, there would be nothing to help him, and he would end up blacklisted by their guild. Mayang looked at him with a smile, waiting for an answer. The man glanced at the cat, saying that he would do it, clarifying that he needed to fulfill the request, and wanting to know what it was. Looking at him carefully, the interlocutor noted that it was necessary to start with this. Kiddo and Spirit were walking down the street. The girl talked about how she didn't even know this thing was so expensive. She remembered the cat showing them the potion, saying that the potion used to cost much less, suggesting that it was a black market and the prices were different. The comrade looked at her silently. She asked if everything was all right, saying that this would not prevent him from playing the game, so everything was fine. Looking around, she did not understand where the flaming man was, because she had told him to stand here, but he ran away somewhere again. Part of the conversation caught her attention. Two cats were walking nearby, saying that the big boss had caught another loser and they might not have to do this routine anymore, and that they were ending up with the lower rung. The two of them hid around the corner, hearing that the newcomers were easy to deal with. Lowering her eyebrows, Kiddo hoped they weren't talking about Chunshik. Mayang wrote something in the document, saying that it was a simple matter. He showed it to the hero, saying that they don't want beginners to do something complicated. The task paper said that he needed to find and capture the red dragon alive. The interlocutor noted that if he succeeded, the debt would be repaid. Chunshik took the task in his hands, answering that it sounds very complicated, clarifying that he should catch it. Mayang waved at him, replying that the dragon is only a name and nothing special. The cat poked him in the back with a knife, telling him to hurry up and come back quickly. The guy wanted to know where to start, to which he replied that he would explain everything, so there was no need to worry. There was another one standing nearby, and he said that Nianji would go with him, and he would instruct him. The other pointed to the portal, so after passing through it, he should be in the right place. Mayang smiled when he heard that he wasn't going to tell him where this place was, that no one would go through the suspicious portal, and replied that he should stop grumbling. The cat nudged me in the back, adding that he should just come in. Upon landing on the ground, he clarified that Nianji would be responsible for this. One Eye glanced at his boss, asking what would happen if they actually did this. He remembered a small line in the contract, remembering that successful execution would be in their favor, even though he wouldn't be able to catch the dragon. Imagining dark silhouettes with bright eyes, he added that this is what he also desires. Chunshik fell out of the portal to the ground. Getting up, the guy complained about his lower back. The hero looked at his companion, who addressed him. Nianji, taking hold of the handles of his backpack, demanded to stop whining, follow him, and he would lead him to where the dragon appeared. As he was leaving, the cat added that the fog was thick and the man would not be able to see anything, so he had to be sure that he was following him. Their silhouettes were visible in the fog, The guy wondered what this thing looked like and what he was there to instruct him. Gazing intently at his companion, Chunshik was surprised that he expected to succeed with such an attitude. Turning around, Nianji replied that before he ripped his tongue out, he should shut up and follow him, because in the worst case, he might get lost here. The hero clenched his fist, indignant at what he had said and that he had never seen such a rude person before. The silhouette of the cat disappeared in the fog. The man shouted to him that he was walking too close. He looked around, unable to see anything. Chunshik brought his hand to his mouth, calling out to him, saying that if he was going to tell him where to go, now was the time. The guy put his hands on his belt, annoyed that the children were now doing whatever they wanted. Something flashed past him. Turning to him, he said that he had finally found him and that everything would be fine if they moved at the same pace. Chunshik raised an eyebrow in surprise. He saw a red lizard in front of him. She raised her head abruptly. She climbed onto his back. The guy asked what was going on. In a moment he felt something. Someone's eyes were looking at them. A huge beast appeared in front of them. He opened his mouth and growled. Chunshik looked at him in fear. The two of them were running away from the monster. Looking behind his back, the hero was indignant at how scammers could send him to catch something like this. The monster pushed him in the back. Looking at the lizard, the guy did not understand why it clung to him, asking him to stay. A wide mouth opened from behind. The monster slammed it shut. The cat laid out the cards on the table, saying that he had a full house. Mayang pulled the chips towards him, saying that he was lucky, and apologized for taking everything, promising to spend the money for the benefit of the guild. His assistant looked up, noting that Nianji and the debtor had not yet returned, suggesting that they had run away. He smiled at him when he heard that Nianji was not originally part of the family, but only a slave, and was surprised that the assistant did not know how they found him. Kiddo stopped by and heard that he would be back, and said that she wanted to ask something. Tossing the chips, Mayang greeted her, asking how he could help. The girl went inside and said that she was wondering if there was a newcomer who had come in. Breaking in, the cat replied that he had not come in. Frowning slightly, she clarified whether he swears by heaven, earth, as well as by mom, dad, and all the luck of his friends. Without opening his eyes, the interlocutor wondered why she was looking for him. Withdrawing her hand, she said that this person from her team who had disappeared, and she was shown that he went in this direction. Looking at the cat again, she asked if they had definitely not seen it. The latter, standing opposite, repeated it again. Kiddo looked at him in disbelief. Spirit scratched the cat when he heard that he was not leaving. Mayang presented her with a potion, saying that it had come a long way, offering her to rest before leaving and drink grape juice for free. Waving it, she replied that everything was fine and did not love him. The cat standing next to the boss was outraged by such rudeness, offering to beat them. He glanced at Mayang after hearing that the girl looked familiar. I looked after her, adding that she spoke and behaved very familiarly. Chunshik opened his eyes with difficulty. He saw a lizard in front of him. Both ended up in a pit. Putting his hand to his head, he was sure that he had been torn apart by a dinosaur. He was standing over them. Noticing him, the guy wondered what exactly was going on here. The hero threw off the lizard as well. Getting back on his feet, Chunshik did not understand how he was supposed to get out of here, noting that the dinosaur was waiting above. The lizard began to dig something. Folding his arms, he was surprised that she would be able to tunnel. There was a mole in her mouth. Pointing to it, the man noted that he had often seen them in the fields when he was a child, and that it was a bad animal. The lizard laid him on the ground. She pushed him to her leg. The guy was surprised that she was giving it to him. Taking it in his hand, Chunshik wondered what he should do with it, and if it was alive. The mole looked at him furiously. The hero, frightened, threw it away. The beast began to bury itself in the ground. Dirt flew towards the man who did not understand what was wrong with this crazy mole. It got into his eyes. Chunshik covered his face with his hands. After wiping them, he wanted to understand what was next. Together with the lizard, they looked into the passage made, noticing that it had dug deeply. His companion climbed inside. The hero followed him. The lizard looked around. The guy asked why he stopped. Chunshik squeezed through the passage, saying that he was going to die. But what he saw surprised him. The cave was illuminated by crystals. Looking at them, he said that it looked incredible. Looking intently ahead, the hero was looking for a way out, because he needed to get out. The lizard waved his head at him. The man clarified that he needed to follow him. The animal sped up, and hoping that it knew where the way out was, he called it not so useless. He clenched his fist, saying that it was too fast. Seeing the darkness in the distance, Chunshik asked him to wait. The lizard ran out, and many monsters were ringing in his direction. Running away from them, the hero was indignant that the lizard had led them with him. One of the monsters, looming over the animal, was split in half with a swing. Holding the sword in his hand, Chunshik said that it was dangerous. The lizard looked at him as if he were a hero. He gritted his teeth when he noticed this. The animal climbed on his shoulder again. The guy demanded to stop licking it. As he continued to run, he noticed that his stamina was running out, which meant that they would soon be caught up. Suddenly he opened his mouth, remembering something. Slime appeared in his hand. He threw it behind his back. Several monsters were chained by her. Looking back, Chunshik saw that there were a lot of them left. Smoke came out of the lizard's mouth, so fire burst out of his mouth. Looking at his companion, the man was surprised by the fiery breath, noting that it was better than it seemed. Later, they rested on the ground. The hero said that he ran for the rest of his life. Looking at the lizard that was eating monsters, he wondered if it was tasty, if he had lost his appetite after what had happened. The lizard handed him one of them. Chunshik looked at him with a smile. He patted him on the head, saying that everything was fine, and he would consider it from the bottom of his heart, telling him to eat it himself. The animal was surrounded by a bright light. His muzzle changed slightly. The front legs have become longer. Now the lizard stood on 2 legs. The animal looked around in surprise when the hero noted that he may have eaten something strange, not understanding why he had changed so much. The lizard shook his head. Upon seeing the flames that emerged, Chunshik noticed that he could still breathe them. The fireball flew through the darkness. He fell on the dragon's head. He opened his eyes. Chunshik stared at his companion silently. Sharp scales flashed in the cave, and the hero remembered wyverns, parts of the dragon species, but much smaller than them. The monster stood up, and the man thought that they must be weaker. But now he was not so sure. The lizard narrowed his pupils. Chunshik sweated and sighed, realizing that he was still a dragon in front of him. He turned around and began to run away from the huge monster that the newcomers had no chance against. The player rushed forward, exclaiming that he would go mad so soon. The brunette frowned and was indignant that he had only been running away all day. The hero glanced sideways at the lizard next to him, and exclaimed with displeasure that it was all because of him. He only stared. The animal pointed forward, making strange noises, and Chunshik asked for a normal explanation. Stones on their legs appeared in front of them. The man stumbled over one of them. After that, he fell flat to the ground. He wiped his face and muttered that he had neither luck nor help. At that moment, the wyvern caught up with them and roared. The lizard shielded the player. The opponent bent down and opened his mouth. The animal squinted his gaze to the side. Then he pointed his finger at the wyvern. The monster stared silently in the direction. Then he turned around and growled in annoyance. The lizard jumped. She wrapped her paws around the dragon's face. Then she immediately began to hit him in the eyes. The opponent arched and roared, and the main character appreciated such a move. Chunshik grabbed his sword and decided that it was his turn. He struck the enemy sharply in the stomach. The blade broke in half. The brunette looked at the wreckage in disappointment. The wyvern at this moment opened its mouth and screamed. She opened her wings and tried to fly. The man lifted his head and noticed an exit in the ceiling. The monster pushed off and rushed upward. The player grabbed his tail, thinking that he would fly with them. He grimaced from the exertion, trying to hold on. The dragon flew to the surface, throwing off its burden. Chunshik rolled on the ground and a lizard landed on his face. The man pulled the animal away from him and swore. He looked ahead, muttering that he had almost died. A monster was hovering in front of him. He opened his mouth and growled. The player gritted his teeth nervously. The enemy's mouth was approaching. Suddenly, a large dragon grabbed the wyvern by the neck. Then he pressed the enemy to the ground. The main character looked dumbfounded at the lizard that collapsed nearby, not understanding what was happening. The red monster turned its head towards him. The man tried to remove the lizard from his face, shouting that he could not see anything because of him. Meanwhile, the dragon opened its mouth and approached. However, a hammer flashed in the air. Someone hit the opponent in the eye. Nianji landed nearby. The cat turned around and reminded him with displeasure that he had asked me not to leave him. The hero frowned and replied that he had disappeared himself. An animal was standing next to Chunshik, and the escort asked where the player got it. The brunette turned to the lizard, who for some reason had transformed, and told him that he had met him when they separated. A paw appeared over the interlocutor as he muttered that he did not expect the man to catch him, but it was time to return. The dragon struck the ground, and the cat managed to jump away. Nianji concentrated energy in the weapon. Glowing blades appeared in the air beside him. A thunderstorm wave hit the monster. The main character looked at the cat with admiration and asked if he could also learn something to become as cool. The interlocutor turned around and said that he would figure it out himself, after which he gave the man a powder of return and demanded to teleport from here. Chunshik lifted his head and wanted to stop him, but he had already emptied the contents of the pouch. The brunette frowned and shouted that he wanted to learn this technique. However, he immediately vanished into thin air. Mayang noticed the silhouette that had appeared. He jumped down from his chair and asked if the player had caught the dragon, but if not, there was nothing he could do. The cat narrowed his eyes and wanted to say that now the hero would become their slave under the contract, but he stammered. On Chunshik's shoulder sat a red lizard, which he recognized as a scorching dragon. The man stared at the animal and asked again, and Mayang wondered how it caught it. The cat sweated and stretched out his hand, demanding to give it back faster, and the player himself said that the lizard simply clung to him. The main character crossed his arms and reminded that the part of the deal where the interlocutor must confirm the completion of the task. Mayang looked at the sheet and muttered that he would fulfill his agreement. The contract burned in a blue flame, and the cat said that the task was completed, and the debt was paid. The animals quickly put the cage on the lizard. The hero looked at them uncertainly, but he was hurried to get out of here. The animals stared pitifully at the man, and the cats assured that they would take care of this scoundrel. Chunshik flinched when the one-eyed man threatened him with a knife and exclaimed that he was already leaving. The brunette took one last look at the lizard. The dragon looked at him through the bars, and the player thought that he was sorry, but a deal was a deal. Tears appeared in the animal's eyes. Chunshik went outside and scratched his head, muttering that it was unpleasant. The blonde bit her finger. She and Spirit were sitting in the square, wondering where she was wearing a man, or whether he had figured it out and left the band. The elf turned around when the hero told her that she could gnaw all her luck this way. Chunshik smiled and asked how they were here without him, to which the girl disgruntled where he had gone. The brunette looked at her in confusion when she shouted that she had written to him in the mail many times, and asked if there was such a thing here. Kiddo jumped up in displeasure, and the hero opened the settings on her advice, noting that there were more than 100 things. The blonde crossed her arms and asked not to leave alone again, adding that, fortunately, nothing serious had happened. The man sighed and replied that he could take care of himself, but then the interlocutor asked what was on his back. The hero looked around and noticed a lizard clinging to him. Chunshik looked at the dragon happily and replied to his partner's question that it was a long story, but he had been with the animal all this time. The elf leaned over to the creature, muttering that she had seen it somewhere before, but she forgot what it was called, and the man said that they had recently parted ways with him, so how did the lizard end up here? Kiddo looked at the brunette and assumed that he had tamed him, and now the beast would follow him automatically. The player grinned contentedly and decided to name the dragon Kissy, after which he was indignant that he dared to bite him. There was a lantern on the crate, and a voice told the boss that a buyer for the dragon had been found. Mayang put his paw on the cage and was glad that everything was going according to plan. He squinted at the trophy and muttered that the super noob was actually able to catch it, and a lot of money fell right into their hands. The boss pulled off the canvas to look at the beast, but the inside was empty. The cat stared at the cage in shock, and Mayang ordered him to be found immediately. Silhouette's eyes flashed and turned to Nianji. He came closer and asked how long he was going to continue, because even if he died and was resurrected, he would not be able to win. The cat looked up and replied that he was just buying time, and some idiot had already tamed the incinerating dragon. The man petted the big monster and muttered that he had spent so much effort to catch it, and even set up a trap, released Draggy, and it took a whole month. The man pulled back his mask. Bima, the beast tamer, narrowed his eyes and said that he didn't know what kind of bastard had done it, but if he found him, he wouldn't let him go. Spirit tugged at the lizard's cheeks, and the lizard muttered that she now understood what had happened. The blonde looked at the hero and said that there were a lot of rumors about the black market, and they were scammers who forced you to join their guild, to which the man cursed. Chunshik frowned and stated that he realized that he couldn't ignore this, so it was worth reporting them and stopping them. The elf arched an eyebrow and asked again, and he suddenly shuddered. The player gesticulated nervously, saying that he would just throw a report and hope that they would be banned, because such bastards should be banned from playing games. He turned away and thought that he had to watch the language, otherwise it would be immediately declassified. Kiddo sighed, thinking that she felt sorry for the old man, who was probably successful in life, and here he was just scammed. She gritted her teeth, stopping herself. The girl bit her nails, remembering that she needed the old man to donate, and she would only have to take it away, but he refused to spend even a cent, so what to do now? The main character looked at his companion and called her, saying that there was some business, although not urgent. Kiddo froze upon hearing that the player broke their sword while escaping, and now he wonders if there is a way to get a new one. She smiled and decided that this was her chance. The city was lit up by the sun, and the man asked where they were going, to which the girl replied that they needed to buy weapons. The brunette pointed in the other direction and noted that the shops were there, but the elf demanded to follow her silently. Disgruntled players rushed by, and one guy grumbled that he spent a lot of money and didn't get anything. Chunshik looked ahead when he heard that they were there. The companions were standing at the end of the crowd, and the man asked why there were so many people here. The blonde pointed forward. Cells with images were displayed on the screen, and someone cried out in frustration. The girl clutched her head near the slot machine, complaining that she had spent all the money. The protagonist arched an eyebrow and asked how this casino-like place had to do with the search for weapons. Kiddo chuckled and pointed at the armed players. On the back of one of them was an ordinary old sword, which is sold in a simple store, but with a blunt blade. The other had a green item that drops from a machine gun, namely the alligator killer, an unusual two-handed blade. The elf pointed forward. The man had a huge sword, the Titan Crusher, and the girl explained that it was purple equipment, which had only a 1% drop rate. The brunette frowned and asked what she was getting at. The interlocutor raised her finger and replied that the point is that a good weapon is in the assault rifle, and if there is such equipment, then it will be able to farm damn fast, and it will level up in a couple of minutes. The hero shuddered when he heard about it. He already imagined himself standing on the top, and the girl was saying that with good equipment you can defeat any player, so he needs it. The elf crossed her arms as she looked at the giggling man, and added that he would then become a ranker, as she wanted. Chunshik coughed, and asked if he should try it. The partner smiled and exclaimed that it was not expensive, only $5. The player immediately turned around, and the blonde grabbed him, asking him to listen to what she had to say. The main character turned around and reminded that he does not spend money on games, and she assured that he would not need it. Kiddo narrowed her eyes and said that no one said he would spend when he could not. The men stared at her in bewilderment. The brunette narrowed his eyes and asked if this one wasn't the same. The blonde approached another machine and noted that they were similar, but not quite. There were cells with questions on it, and the elf said that it was an old model, but sometimes something useful dropped, so they would use it. The hero sighed and asked if money was needed here too. The girls showed a thumbs up and replied that they were needed, but the event was taking place right now. There was a promotion on the screen saying that there are many bonuses for newcomers to this update, and even give one free use. Chunshik and Spirit stared at the fact that they had one try each. The brunette rubbed his chin and noted that they had a good welfare system, and the elf said that they should take advantage of the opportunity. She chuckled, thinking that they had swallowed the bait. The name of the machine shimmered, and the girl thought that even if they didn't get good equipment, a tape measure was a tape measure, so if they tried it once, the thought of donating would already be in their heads. The men communicated with each other, and Kiddo dreamed of how they would start spending real money, and after that everything would be in her hands. The elf stretched out her hand and offered to spin once, after which she called out to Spirit. The man approached the machine, and the main character said that for some reason he was worried, and all this resembles gacha machines in front of a bookstore. The big man shuddered. A crystal flashed on the screen, a fragment of weapons, of which 100 pieces are needed to create a new weapon. The girl sweated and said that now it was her turn, and the hero at this time was comforting his friend. The elf put her finger to the button. She looked down indifferently, not expecting anything useful. The tape measure began to spin. The pictures flashed quickly. The blonde stared at the automaton, thinking that she had a strange premonition. The girl narrowed her eyes in the hope of getting a legendary item. The men looked at her and asked what had fallen. Steam poured out of the valve. A cursed dagger appeared in front of the players. Kiddo stared at him in disgust, lamenting that out of everything that could fall out, she got this garbage, as she knew that you couldn't get anything useful out of that ancient automaton. At this time, Chunshik also went to try his luck. The blonde looked inquiringly in the direction of the sound. A glow appeared on the screen. Confetti appeared around the protagonist, and the system congratulated him on obtaining an unidentified S-rank weapon card. The elf flinched and asked how he had knocked it out. She snatched out a piece of paper to take a closer look, and the man asked why everyone was so surprised. Kiddo turned pale, not believing that such a thing had been knocked out on the first try. The girl turned around and asked to wait for her, and she needed to go somewhere urgently. The blonde smiled, thinking that the chance of getting this card was 0.0141%, and now she didn't even need to force him to donate. The elf ran forward, dreaming that she would use the scroll and steal the item, and then get rid of this old man. The protagonist looked at the lizard and muttered that he didn't know what it was, but it must be something cool, judging by the reaction of Kiddo and those around him. The men stared at the map, wondering what it was for. Suddenly, someone appeared nearby, saying that he was not sure that it was appropriate to climb at their first meeting. The man adjusted his glasses and said that he knew the subject very well and could help. Chunshik smiled and clarified if the player knew how to use it. The interlocutor flashed the windows and nodded. The guy grinned and asked to show him the map first. The girl ran across the square, breathing heavily. She smiled as she looked at the object identification scroll. The elf broke into a smile as she imagined how an S-rank item would fall into her hands and she would receive hundreds of thousands of gold. The blonde waved her hand and shouted that she was back. The men turned around, and the girl quickly asked for a map. The main character sighed discontentedly and sweated. Kiddo froze upon hearing that he seemed to have been tricked. The elf blinked, pausing. Then she looked at the player furiously and asked again. She stamped her feet, asking how they managed to separate them during this time. The man remembered the bespectacled man and said that after she left, a boy came up to him, said that he was familiar with this card and asked to take a look. The brunette handed over the trophy, explaining that he did not know what to do with it, so he simply gave it away, deciding that it would be better to show it to someone who understands it. The girl frowned and was indignant that he was so stupid that he gave her to some stranger. The hooded man then looked at the map puzzledly and said that it was cursed and looked like an angel who had been chained in darkness and could no longer spread his wings. He looked at the hero and assured that he could fix it, and absolutely free of charge. Kiddo turned pale when she heard that the bespectacled boy had promised to be back soon, but he was not seen yet. She staggered and muttered that it was obvious. The girl in a rage poked at the hero and shouted that he was a damn idiot if he did not see through the deception. The men stared at her dumbfounded, while she said that even kindergartners would not bite at such a thing, and even Spirit did not stop him. The elf clutched her head, exclaiming that even the stupidity of a beginner should have a limit. The main character closed his eyes and admitted that he had messed up. He frowned and asked why he had been deceived, and she was upset. The blonde sweated and replied that she and she were one team, which meant that it also concerned her. The man nodded and said that he didn't even expect her to care about him so much. The brunette crossed his arms and said that he had to find this charlatan. The partners looked at each other, and the girl asked if they had seen the face of the deceiver, and the hero remembered that he was wearing a cape and round glasses. Spirit wrote the nickname of this person, Dark Archangel Zeroth, on a piece of paper. The man pointed his finger and exclaimed that he had gone in this direction, and the elf reminded him that it was impossible to find someone on such a huge map. Clouds floated over the houses, and the brunette admitted that he had not thought about it. Barnacle grinned, humming to himself. In his fingers he twisted the map. The player was walking down the corridor with a book in his hands. The guy smiled and muttered that this could be said to be just a prank. The young man smirked and was amazed that such people as the main character existed. He flinched when someone approached him, asking what he had got today. The two girls looked at him mockingly, asking if he had come empty-handed. Barnacle held out the trophy and said that he had tricked one fool into loot. The redhead snatched the prey from her hands. She showed it to her partner and noted that it looked good, and the blonde added that such a weapon card must be expensive. The woman looked at the loot and said that the guy could go, but he hesitated. He scratched his cheek embarrassedly and reminded that he was promised a group quest, that is, a date. The interlocutor arched her eyebrows and asked if she had really promised this. Jiro's turned pale when he heard her take back her words. The blonde leaned over and exclaimed that the conversation was over, so let her go. The leader grinned and said that the young man had no place in their group. He sat on the floor and asked at least to explain the reason. The swordswoman took out her blade and strained that this nerd continued to pester her. The bespectacled boy looked at the edge in fright, and the girl demanded that he fail, explaining that they would not play with such a nonentity. The redhead leaned on her arm and agreed, noting that all his words and actions betrayed an annoying insignificance in him. The guy shivered as they discussed that as soon as he opened his mouth, they were already nauseous. But it was funny to watch him communicate with the girl for the first time. The interlocutors looked at him menacingly and ordered him to roll out of here. Glasses walked around the square, indignant that he had done so much for them. He clenched his fist, muttering that they themselves had not moved far from the garbage can, but were showing off. A silhouette appeared behind him as the mage muttered that it was his fault as well, because things could have turned out differently. Jong swung her hammer of creaking hatred as she loomed over him. Barnacle turned around, noticing the shadow. The trio walked down the street, discussing that perhaps it was worth giving up on it, and not trying to find a needle in a haystack. The main character looked at his comrades and said that he already regretted that he considered this game easier, and the girl remembered that nothing would have happened, he would not have given that card. The brunette closed his eyes and said that it was time to forget about her, because what came easily was easily gone. The elf twitched, exclaiming that he didn't even know how expensive it was, but the man was already distracted. On the ground in front of them lay the same deceiver. Chunshik ran up to him and asked him what he had forgotten on the tile. The young man raised his head. The elf shook him sharply and demanded that the map be returned. The main character moved her and reminded her that he should be angry here. Glasses looked at the man, recognizing him. The trio stared at the player menacingly, hinting that there was a conversation. The brunette frowned as he listened to him. The beaten young man sat on his knees, admitting that he no longer had the map. The blonde leaned over and demanded to say who had the trophy. Chunshik looked at the guy and asked if he had given it away or sold it to someone. The interlocutor grinned and replied that it would be more correct to say that it was stolen. They were sitting in the alleyway, and the player added that it would be difficult to explain who did it. He pointed to the book and asked me to hand it over, because their names were written there. The elf frowned, but agreed, warning that he was dead if he twitched. The hero handed the young man a tome. Glasses got up and giggled. He narrowed his eyes and grinned that they had given him the spell book so easily. Chunshik arched an eyebrow as the other party muttered that they had contacted the wrong person. There was energy in the palm of the young man's hand, although he already thought that this was the end. The wizard grinned and gave them 3 seconds to run away, otherwise black magic would cause them endless suffering. The woman twisted the card in her hands, and her companion said that she had learned from an acquaintance that it was an incredibly cool thing. The blonde looked at her friend and added that this was an S-class weapon, so she had to keep it. The interlocutor smirked and clarified whether she knows how to use it, to which the girl replied that it would be difficult for her. The woman passed by and then decided to just drain it at the market and buy useful junk. The redhead turned around and said that she had heard that the Royal Battle Carnival was coming soon, so they should prepare for it. A silhouette appeared in front of them. The man grinned and asked if they wanted to participate in the martial carnival. The woman arched an eyebrow and asked who it was. The interlocutor had horns on his head, and the voice assured that they were not bandits, but just wanted to advertise their guild. Crazy Dog leaned against the wall while standing next to the knight, and said that they were from the Red Demon. She showed a jar of liquid and assumed that it would not hurt them. The trio looked at the bespectacled man, and the hero asked if he was doing something dangerous, but the elf advised him to just take out popcorn and watch. The wizard smiled and warned that he was about to grind them into powder. Energy swirled around him, and he muttered that he would present them with an unpredictable black magic spell. The young man put his hand on the ground and said, "Awake, brother of darkness, whose face is darker than burnt ashes, obey your master, answer my call." The silhouette of the Dark Lord of Shadows, Velkias, appeared in the air. The brunette arched an eyebrow and asked what it was. Spirit only shuddered dumbfounded. However, the blonde closed her eyes and sighed. The lizard silently lowered his gaze. The demon was smaller than even him. Barnacle Boy lowered his head, laughing, and asked how they liked his technique. Blood was flowing from his nose, but he continued to say that his Velkias was so incomparable that they swallowed their tongues. The dragon suddenly bit the demon before its master could give the order to destroy everyone. The wizard watched in horror as the lizard chewed on his best warrior. Kissy belched in satisfaction, releasing a purple cloud. The main character narrowed his eyes and said that for a second he was afraid that the young man really wanted to show them something incredible. The elf sighed and noted that it was just a beginner who had decided to use a high-level spell. She presented the image of a strong player and explained that Novice has recommended spell levels, but no one limits mages. Then the girl visualized a beginner who casts the same spell, but there is no effect, and added that anyone can use any technique, but the level is important. Barnacle sat in front of the lizard, frustrated, and the elf said that even a blind man would see that he was a noob, and nothing good would come of such spells. Jiro's grabbed the book and stated that he hadn't given up yet, and he had a lot of aces up his sleeve. The guy concentrated his energy, asking those who were born in the shadow of the eternal abyss to rise up and send a ball of dark flames at their enemies. The young man smirked when he simply didn't have enough mana. Kiddo decided not to wait for the continuation and simply kicked him, demanding that he shut up already. A moment later, the player was sitting on his knees again, and the hero was clarifying whether it was right that he was not acting himself, but someone was commanding him. Barnacle arched his eyebrows and apologized, explaining that he had been with them and had not noticed how he himself was trapped. The blonde narrowed her eyes as he muttered that he didn't even think he would be betrayed. Kiddo remembered a group of players who invited her to the dungeon with them. Some guy smirked and said that she had to take risks if she wanted to get rich, and if something went wrong, he would cover for her. After a while, the same man turned around and asked who she was and why she had molested him. The player grinned and said that he saw her for the first time. The elf gritted her teeth in irritation. The main character frowned and asked if the young man knew how serious this crime was. He bent over the guy, saying that even if it was just a game, it was impossible to treat the laws as nothing, and in general, his habits would remain at 25 years old, so he needed to correct himself right now, and although he did not listen to him, in the future it would become his flesh and blood and dinner for the evening. So it's better to let him listen, and not regret it later, after which he grumbled that children in their time are not frightened by the law at all. Everyone has the same wind in their heads, no responsibility. The man then nodded, deciding that the player had repented so that he could now go, but the girl asked again in surprise. The brunette turned to her when the elf asked how the map was, but he said that the boy apologized, especially since he no longer had the trophy. Chunshik knitted his eyebrows and stated that everyone has the right to make mistakes, and the young man promised that it wouldn't be like that again. Glasses stared at him in bewilderment, listening to how he had deceived him not out of malice, although the act was still bad. The blonde arched an eyebrow while the hero said that this was a problem that nothing else could be done about, so it was better to just let her go and move on with her life. She pursed her lips. The girl sighed and grumbled that she had no idea what to do next, because now they wouldn't even know how rare the card was. The partners crossed their arms, discussing that they didn't have a single lead, so it was better to find another weapon, but then the wizard gave a voice. The trio stared at him when he announced that they were his friends. The woman walked in heels, discussing with her friend that this slug called them again, apparently hoping to get a second chance. The blonde grinned and noted that the boy was too stubborn, but they were better. The redhead looked down and muttered that they were lucky. She had a jar of liquid in her hand, and she added that they now had a test subject. The girl stopped in front of the wizard, mentioning that he said that he had found something for them. The woman narrowed her eyes. The trio of heroes stood behind the bespectacled man, and she asked if he meant new friends or this betrayal. Kiddo crossed her arms and demanded to just give back the card that was taken from this weirdo. The interlocutor grinned and asked why she would do this if it was just a gift. The blonde stomped her foot and shouted that the bespectacled boy had stolen her, so let him drive her back. The main character made a gesture with his hand and calmly asked for the trophy to be returned, explaining that the map was originally his, so there was just a misunderstanding. The interlocutor turned to him and called the old people the boss. The women stood opposite, calmly claiming that the loot was now theirs, and the man called them an ungrateful petty. The wizard flinched when the redhead offered to ask him, but Chunshik replied that this eccentric had already repented and apologized. The girl grinned and said that she would not give the card back, but she could sell it. The elf took out a piece of paper and asked if they even knew how to use it, because an S-class card is useless without this scroll. The blonde was sweating and thought that there were plenty of these things on the market, but apparently these two had recently started playing, so they could believe it. The interlocutor rounded her eyes and clarified whether she was serious. The trio stood in front of the bandits, and Kiddo noted that she had the perfect solution, because they both had the thing the other needed, and the negotiations would come to an impasse. The girls looked at each other, and the elf offered to arrange a duel, where these items would be at stake. The blonde arched an eyebrow dumbfounded and was surprised that the newcomer was challenging them. The redhead smiled, then added that a simple duel was boring, and suggested that the loser delete his account. Kiddo grinned and agreed. The main character suddenly came closer and asked her to wait. The man looked at his partner and reminded him that this was his card, and so was the mistake, so he should participate in the duel. The interlocutor turned pale and asked again. She looked at the brunette and asked him not to climb there. However, Chunshik stepped forward and invited the girls to approach one by one, because today he will teach them good manners. The blonde frowned and called out to him, admitting that it was cool, that he wanted to stand up for himself. The man reached behind his back, but the girl reminded him that he didn't even have a weapon. The elf smiled and said that she would go out to the duel herself and cope, but he just asked to lend him his weapon. Kiddo gritted her teeth, unhappy with how stubborn the hero was. Red energy emanated from the redhead, and the elf knew that her comrade would be pulverized. She glanced sideways at the other two, trying to think of a solution. Suddenly, her eyes widened with awareness. The woman frowned and asked why it took so long, and her partner was yawning. The elf held out her hand and exclaimed that they needed a strategic break. The trio gathered in a circle, listening to the girl's plan. The main character smiled and replied that he did not quite understand, but it sounds like a reliable plan, and the interlocutor asked just to follow her commands. The blonde handed him a weapon, since he did not have his own, and the man noted that it was too short. The brunette twisted it in his hands, and the girl reminded him that it was not a sword, but a dagger, but better than nothing. The redhead turned around questioningly when the hero apologized for waiting. He stepped forward and revealed that they were just discussing how they would win, and Kido exclaimed that it wasn't necessary to say it. The player narrowed his eyes and offered to attack. The interlocutors laughed, admitting that he surprised them. The redhead smirked and said that they must have wanted to provoke her, but it didn't work. She folded her hands and asked Yoonji to deal with him for her. The woman narrowed her eyes and asked if she could cope with one noob, or if she needed help. The interlocutor shuddered in fright and replied that there was no need for this. An inscription appeared in front of them. Get ready. The main character looked at the blonde and recalled that he asked to attack both. The swordswoman held out her blade and said that she could handle it herself, and it was unlikely that this short dagger would reach her. The brunette took a fighting stance and noted that she asked for it. As soon as the signal for the start of the duel was heard, the girl rushed to attack. The man missed a blow to the chest. He turned pale and coughed. His comrades watched anxiously, and the redhead only grinned. Yoonji continued to attack, and the wizard exclaimed that she was a sword stance specialist. The hero covered himself with his hand, taking damage. He frowned and shouted that it was a thing that pierced through. The player swung the dagger, but the weapon was too short to reach. Barnacle Boy took a closer look and noted that the length of the rapier is twice as long as Chunshik's weapon, so he definitely loses at a distance. The fencer grinned and asked if this was all, although there were so many show-offs. Oi pierced the hero's chest. The elf squinted at the guy, who exclaimed that it was a powerful blow. The brunette fell on the ass, muttering that the attack fell directly on the liver. The blonde arched an eyebrow and offered to give up before it hurt. The opponent looked at her and replied that this is nothing compared to serving in the Marine Corps. They looked at each other, and the man asked him to stop talking and attack again. The girl swung, clenching the handle. She unleashed a series of blows on her opponent. The main character put his hands out in front of him, trying to block the attack. The woman watched from the sidelines, mentally noting that he was finished. She crossed her arms and noted that this was not surprising given the difference in levels. The redhead looked at the elf, thinking that she was too calm, as if she didn't care about what was happening at all, and didn't even look. The girl turned pale sharply, wondering how long the duel had been going on. The main character put out his hand for defense, and she noted that the newcomer would have passed out from such damage long ago. The elf smiled and said that it was time. Kido looked at the man and yelled at him to counterattack now. The brunette obediently swung and moved forward. The swordswoman looked at him incredulously, and said that they didn't want to shout even louder about their plans. There was energy around its blade, and she noted that his health is already at the limit, so we can end here. The blonde pierced the opponent's chest. A glow from the wound appeared on his body. Yoonji smirked and said goodbye to him. Suddenly, the man grabbed her by the arm. Jiro's, Spirit, and the swordswoman rounded their eyes in surprise. The redhead stared at them, trying to figure out what was happening. The main character smirked and said that the girl herself had fallen into the trap. Kido turned around and shouted at Spirit to start. The woman was sweating, asking what was going on. The big man folded his hands and released his energy. Chunshik, whom his comrade had healed, swung and shouted that he would teach his opponent to respect his elders. Then he hit her the head with the back of his dagger. The blonde recoiled with a bump on top of her head. The trio watched in anticipation. The fencer fell to the ground, and the system knocked out. Her friend jerked and shouted that it was impossible for him to knock her out with one blow, and why he was still alive at all. The elf waved her hand and said that Spirit buffed and healed him, to which the interlocutor asked how. The wizard pathetically adjusted his glasses and asked to be allowed to explain. He introduced the big man and said that the Prayer of Faith is a spell that increases the target's attack depending on the preparation time, and the man started preparing it from the beginning of the fight, so the bonus was enough to knock out Yoonji in one hit. The young man introduced the two players and added that the protagonist's health did not drop thanks to the Link of Redemption, a passive skill that allows you to share health with the target, so he was constantly recovering, and the elf added that they learned the spell just for such cases. Kido angrily swung at the bespectacled man and said that his explanations were infuriating. The blonde looked at the big man and asked if he was okay so that he wouldn't overdo it. The red-haired woman pointed her finger at them, amazed that this brute was a healer, and then asked how he could have participated in the first place, since it was a one-on-one fight. The woman turned pale when the elf reminded her that there were two of them, as well as girls. It was just that she herself decided to send her friend alone. The main character grabbed the rapier in his chest and said that he could fight thanks to his comrade, but it was still unpleasant. He took the blade out of the wound. His body recovered, and the brunette stepped forward. The woman frowned when the player asked if she wanted to continue the duel, or just give up the card. Instead of answering, the girl took out a bottle. The contents glowed in her hand. Sometime later, in the alleyway, the girl asked what it was. Crazy Dog pointed to the vial and replied that it was their new dual drug that drastically increased the power of abilities, which was called Red Boom. The interlocutor crossed her arms and asked again doubtfully, but the devil assured that it was an explosive thing. She introduced the demon and told him that they had made a potion of random effects, only for abilities, though not without side effects, but with it you can't lose against an equal opponent. The girls squinted at the knight, and the redhead said that she would not buy from them, because they did not have a penny with them, and it also looked like a deception. The man looked down and grinned that she decided that they would take change from the punks. The interlocutor arched an eyebrow and wondered why they should give it back then. The knight looked at her and replied that it was just like that. But then she will have to tell about the result of use. The woman knitted her eyebrows. The main character stood in front of her, clarifying whether she was in the mood to fight. The elf crossed her arms and reminded her that the girl was also a beginner, so she should just give up, if not a masochist. The brunette nodded and added that he didn't like to bully the weak, and his friend pointed out that he was a toxic person. Instead of answering, the opponent put on bracers with spikes. Then she took a sip from the bottle while the bespectacled man explained to the old man who the toxic players were. The vial shattered on the ground. The hero turned when he heard a scream. The redhead clutched her head. The comrades stared at her, and the man asked the elf if this was normal. Horns appeared on the girl's head. She clenched her clawed paw and noted that it was very good. Hyun's, gripped by red energy, stepped forward and muttered that it didn't seem to be a hoax. The elf was sweating, trying to understand how she changed shape, because it requires a high level. Her opponent narrowed her eyes and offered to test her new strength. She suddenly appeared in front of the hero and hit him on the head. The man gritted his teeth and leaned away. The woman was right in front of him, but he didn't even notice the impact. The blonde glanced at the wizard and asked how she had done it, but the young man was still frantically looking for an answer on the wiki. The opponent grinned and shouted that she felt good, and she became so strong. Chunshik gradually recovered, saying that he didn't quite understand what she had done now. He rushed to attack, shouting that it would not work twice. His face immediately contorted. The devil grinned and asked if he had decided to go against her. It pierced him through. Then she rested her foot near the wound. The man was thrown back. The blonde turned to him and asked if he was alive. The player stood up, holding his chest, and replied that everything was fine. Spirit ran up to heal his comrade, but the girl noticed that even his treatment was not enough. Kiddo gritted her teeth, trying to figure out what the bastard had done and where she got her powers. The opponent opened her mouth and sighed. She straightened up and muttered that she kept thinking why the hero did not die, and it was all about his doctor. The woman raised her hand and said that he her off, because it was not a duel at all. Spirit flinched as she aimed at him. The devil slashed at him and stopped behind him. Cuts appeared on the man's chest. The main character turned anxiously at his friend, but he was already knocked out. The elf frowned, realizing that the enemy had taken their chance by knocking out Spirit. The red-haired woman examined her claws as the blonde pondered how she had managed to use a high-level ability. Barnacle buried his face in the book and exclaimed that he had found it. The guy looked at the picture and read that this is a form of demon that turns the user into a demon hunter, but it is a high-level spell that is available at the maximum level. The interlocutor turned to him with displeasure and asked how she had used it then. The girl froze and thought. At this moment, the main character stood up and cursed. Chunshik frowned and said that it wasn't fair to attack a respected spirit right in the middle of a battle with him. Hyun's grinned and asked how they liked such a coup, and whether the man had any desire to lie down next to his friend. She grimaced and asked him to surrender. The brunette stood up and replied that there was no word surrender in his vocabulary, nor did he have to surrender. The opponent jumped up and advised him to die in such a case. The man gritted his teeth and sweated. The lizard stared in fright and puffed out his cheeks. Suddenly, a large purple ball burst out of its mouth. Kiddo's eyes widened in surprise, and the bespectacled boy recognized his Velkias. While the demon was burning, the hero squinted at Kissy and asked what he had done. The elf knitted her eyebrows and realized that now they had a chance. She narrowed her eyes and thought that she didn't want to resort to this, but there was no choice. Chunshik turned to her voice as she demanded to repeat after her if she wanted to win. The blonde blushed and began to mutter, "My blade sparkles with a bright flame and is righteous at the end of it." Hyun's opened its mouth, surrounded by purple fire, and shouted that they were all corpses as the elf continued to recite the spell. The brunette stared at his partner in irritation and exclaimed that he had not heard anything, and that he should repeat it louder. Kiddo frowned embarrassedly and repeated her words loudly, after which the man said the same thing. The demon narrowed her eyes in displeasure as the players read out the lines. The wizards looked dumbfounded at the elf, surprised that she had the courage to shout such a thing out loud. Chunshik and Kiddo frowned and almost simultaneously finished shouting the spell. Suddenly, the blade in the man's hands began to glow. Hyun's peeked out of the smoke and asked what it was. The brunette stared in surprise at the throbbing blade with writing. A picture of demons appeared on the page, and the young man read that a long time ago, these beings, summoned from another dimension, invaded the world and wreaked havoc, killing all living things and constantly expanding their power. A silhouette appeared in the center, and when everyone lost hope, a man appeared in front of the monsters with a double-barreled shotgun and a skull-shaped dagger. The knight stood on the remains of his enemies, ruthlessly destroying demons and hunting them alone. However, he did not say anything, so his name remained unknown, but from the memories of how he destroyed opponents with an explosion, he was nicknamed Boom Slayer or Bull Guy. He had a weapon in his hand. The dagger he used, the Garosival, was cursed by the demons and became an ordinary dagger. But if the demonic scripture is read and the dagger is freed from the curse, it will be able to regain its power and return to its original form. The wizard looked at the book and added that it was written in the Novus Wiki. The protagonist looked at the sword and asked if it was something so incredible that the elf exclaimed that it was just a legend. The blonde narrowed her eyes and said that the backstory was cool, but in the game he was just garbage, since the abilities were SOSO, and in order to use the added effect, you need to say such pathetic words. Jiro's adjusted his glasses, hearing that this skill only applies to damage from demons, and the duration of the effect is short, so except for the annoying show-offs, no one wants to use this item. Chunshik took a fighting stance and offered to start the second round, since he had become stronger. There was smoke in front of him, and the man asked where the opponent had gone. A shadow flickered ahead. The demoness jumped sharply at him. The player barely had time to duck and swing his blade. The brunette opened his eye and looked to the side questioningly. The woman jumped away, trying to figure out what had happened. She was sweating, realizing that she had almost missed, but for some reason, her body felt heavier. Hyun's noticed that her life scale had become critically small, but she did not understand how this happened. The demon remembered Crazy Dog and thought that she hadn't mentioned that the side effects would be like this. The man pointed his finger at her and exclaimed that it was his natural ability. The red-haired woman grinned and replied that the self-confident old man would die like that. The elf rubbed her chin thoughtfully as she looked at her. She snapped her fingers and said she understood. The wizard turned to her and asked again, and the girl reminded her that the demon form was damn strong, but it had a time limit. Hyun stood in front of her, and Kiddo said that that girl had turned quite a long time ago, but still looked like that, which meant that she hadn't used the demon form skill, but most likely it was a different method. The blonde crossed her arms and added that in this case, there should usually be some other punishment, such as loss of health. At these words, Hyun sweated and shuddered. The elf looked at her maliciously and exclaimed that she had caught her. The blonde approached the hero and advised him to just hit the enemy once, as she had already lost a lot of health. The demon sneered and reminded him that the man had already lost his healer, so all it took was one blow to dismiss him. The brunette held out his blade and offered to find out. The opponent abruptly rushed to attack. Kiddo jerked along with the wizard and shouted that he still had to dodge. The hero opened his mouth and said, "Peerless sword number 2. He swung his weapon with a demonic slash, and the elf was amazed that he was actually shouting the name of the technique. The opponents stood with their backs to each other. The demoness fell to the ground, catching a knockout. Kiddo and Jiros looked at the hero happily. The blonde smiled and noted that it was a good job, asking if he had hurt himself. Chunshik turned around, holding his side, and assured that he was perfectly fine, even though his HP was almost at 0. A flask flew into his head, and the elf asked him to drink it and restore his health. The blonde held out another spirit, while the hero swore that she did not respect him, since she threw objects. The girl turned. Hyun's was lying on the ground, and the map was in front of her. The elf picked up the trophy from the ground. She smirked and said that the woman lost because she tried to use cheap tricks during the fight. The red-haired woman frowned while the interlocutor reminded her to delete her characters, since she remembered the nicknames. The main character rubbed his back and said that there was no point in going that far. He looked at his partner, and added that even though Hyun's was doing bad things, they still got the card back. And it's just a game, so don't go any further. The man snatched the card from the elf's hands and asked why she continued to take the lead. Kiddo turned to him and exclaimed that they were the ones who started it all, but the brunette calmly replied that they got everything they wanted. The girl looked back at the wizard who called out to them. The young man was sweating and looked down, muttering that he was sorry, and he didn't think that the situation would turn out for the worse because he was useless. His eyes rounded when the main character advised not to worry too much, since this is all in the past. Chunshik smirked and said that at this age, everyone makes mistakes and moves on, so don't let it confuse you. The interlocutor stared at him dumbfounded, when the man added that the young man looked like he had a lot of knowledge. The elf arched an eyebrow and asked the hero if he was interested in an exchange, since she had lent him the blade. The sky above the city turned the colors of the sunset, while the comrades were arguing. The hero looked at the blonde woman in annoyance as he held the scroll in his hands, but she shouted that he should do it himself to get a better point. The brunette glanced at the objects, and the partner said that they just needed to be put together. A radiance began to emanate from the map and the scroll. Chunshik looked at the cube in bewilderment, and the system announced that he was holding the Sword of Execution, a legendary one-handed blade, but needed a level of 100 to use it. The elf stared at the trophy enthusiastically, exclaiming that it was just crazy because there weren't even 100 of them on the server, and it was a damn expensive commodity that cost $100,000 in real life. The man pointed dumbfounded at the cube and asked if such a small thing really had such a price. The girl held out her hand, saying that she would show how to use it. A notification appeared above the comrades that this commodity can only be traded when the required level is reached. Kiddo clutched her head, screaming that she had completely forgotten about the confirmation, because the legendary item can only be used after reaching the maximum level, and if she remembered this, she could have sold it while it was still a card. The hero frowned and asked why he needed to sell him, to which the interlocutor justified herself by saying that he needed money to level up. The man exchanged glances with the lizard and stated that he would use the sword after leveling up, and if there was a goal as he leveled up, then his hard work had a motive now. The girls met with Crazy Dog under the bridge, and she asked if they had tried their product. She arched an eyebrow and noted that judging by their shitty expressions, it didn't seem like that. Yoonji and Hyun stood silently in front of her. The red-haired woman frowned and said that she had fought a duel with this potion and had lost, so were they going to take responsibility now? Crazy Dog grinned and recalled that she had been warned that there could be side effects, So what are the complaints now? The interlocutor turned pale and said that she did not know that the opposite effect was a decrease in health, because then she would end everything faster, but in any case, they must compensate for their losses. The demon narrowed her eyes and thanked her for the clue about the side effects. The blonde looked at her friend anxiously and suggested that she just go and not take out her anger on her. Yunji's eyes widened as the woman collapsed to the ground, and her voice cursed, reminding her that she had said not to give it to those stupid newcomers. Crazy Dog looked at Trake and exclaimed that she was going to kill them herself, but he reminded her that she would be suspended if she killed another person. The fencer trembled in fright, and her eyes filled with tears. The man frowned and asked him to just die quietly if he didn't want to do it for real. The main character was sitting at the table, asking the secretary what was next on the schedule. The woman looked at the recordings and replied that there would be a meeting about the Novus Worldwide Webtoon series, and in the afternoon there would be a marketing conference dedicated to the new update. Chunshik looked at the monitor and muttered that he now understood how they did it. Links with Novus tactics in the world were opened on the screen. The man waved his hand when the interlocutor offered her help, and said that he wanted to achieve everything with the help of his abilities. Jong looked at the chief and noted that he had been making a lot of effort lately, to which he said that he had to put all his energy into it because he had promised to get to the first rank. The hero took off his glasses and added that it was just fun, because when you meet your partners inside the game, you get the feeling that they are growing together. The secretary stared at him silently, listening to the president do some research and study on his own. The woman looked indifferent, but in her heart she was very happy and proud of her boss. Chunshik looked up when he heard some noise outside the door. An old man appeared on the doorstep, whom the guards could not stop. The main character jumped at the sight of the president of Song. The guest smirked, noting that the brunette was hiding here. The interlocutors sat opposite each other in chairs, and Chunshik asked why he was there. The old man arched an eyebrow and reminded him of what he had said to him the last time they met. The hero turned pale and replied that he had asked to be called brother. A secretary and a man were standing outside the door. The employee glanced at Zhang and wondered what kind of person the president of Song was, since even the director was so tense, although not to say that he was losing to him. The interlocutor looked in front of her, saying that she did not know all the details, but it had nothing to do with money. She introduced the man and said that Song is the person who brought the director to where he is now, creating his world, and more specifically, he is the one who taught him passion. The woman put her ear to the door and muttered that there was enough gossip, because she couldn't hear what was going on inside. The old man smirked and said that he had actually come to ask him something. Chunshik shuddered when the interlocutor recalled the promise at the last premiere to advance the cause, and he replied that he had worked it. The president took a glass and said that it is always necessary to accept challenges with passion, even if they are impossible. He emptied his glass in one gulp. Then he grinned and said that the main character should work with him on something. The brunette arched an eyebrow and asked again. The interlocutor narrowed his eyes and assured that it was nothing special, in fact. He unveiled the cover and said that he had heard about the next Battle Royale Carnival update opening, and they could go there together. Chunshik broke a sweat and asked if there was a reason why the old man should play with him, as his level was still low. Song smirked and replied that there was no one else whose eyes were full of aggression and passion like his. And as for the level, as long as they were at the one they could participate in, that was enough. The man shuddered when the interlocutor said that he and he had known each other for so long, and he was most like him. The old man laughed when the hero said that he would try to do as he wished. They started climbing, and Song offered to have lunch together. The protagonist looked at the president and asked how they should hold this event, to which he chuckled that he didn't even watch the announcements of his own game. The old man turned around and reminded him that there wasn't much time left, so he should prepare in the meantime. Chunshik froze when he heard that the minimum level starts at 30, but he, of course, has no less. The protagonist entered the game looking at his 17th level. Kiddo and Spirit flinched when the man called out to them. The brunette was out of breath, asking how he could get to the 30th level in 1 week. The blonde smirked and replied that the easiest way was to use the money, but the interlocutor asked for something else. The player scratched his head when the girl asked why he suddenly needed it. The lizard hissed at the street cat, and Chunshik muttered that there was an event coming up next week and he wanted to participate. The elf crossed her arms and was surprised that the other person had even heard of the Battle Royal Carnival. After all, he was usually only interested in leveling up. The blonde narrowed her eyes and thought that she really didn't pay attention to it, but it must be exciting, and she initially thought about forcing the woman to use real money and then steal it. The girl introduced the sword and noted that after the hero received such a trophy, her plans changed, and since the player does not plan to spend money, it would be better to bring it to the maximum level, unlock the cube, and then steal the sword of execution from there. Chunshik squinted at the battered lizard, and the elf decided that it just so happened that the Battle Royale Carnival was good for leveling up easily, so there was no reason not to. The blonde smirked and asked him to trust her, and she would teach him how to directly reach the 30th level. It was light in the city, and the girl said that it was not very difficult, but it would take some time to reach just by hunting, which is why people usually look for competitive Indian to level up faster. The brunette looked at his interlocutor in bewilderment, and asked what it was all about. Kiddo introduced a group of cats and said that an instant dungeon is one that you enter only with your group. Just as it is described, the game is played without fail, so it is difficult. In addition, you get a lot of scenarios. There were 2 commands in her head, and she added that the Hindans were gathering to complete the quest and fight. One of the seals raised his sword, and the elf explained that if you beat competitive Hindans, you will get more scenarios than a normal Indian participant, so when people are working on leveling, they often go there. The man smiled and asked what he needed to do to participate in such a thing, and she replied that it was necessary to assemble a group. The hero pointed to the 3 of them and clarified whether this would be enough, but the girl said that 4 people were needed. Chunshik knitted his eyebrows, wondering where they could get another one. The blonde grinned and said that was why they were on their way to finding them. They came to the squad meeting square, filled with players. People stood with signs, and the man noted that it was really full of people. The girl raised her finger, introducing the diagram, and said that she was the dealer, the brunette tanker, and the spirit healer. The main character arched an eyebrow and asked what it meant, to which the blonde explained that the tank is being beaten, the dealer is just beating, and the healer is healing. Chunshik frowned and exclaimed that he didn't want to be beaten. The elf made a gesture with her hand and muttered that this was a shorthand. The man wiggled his ears as she assured him that the tanker was one of the most important people in the group, and usually the leader. The hero scratched his nose contentedly and decided that he had no reason not to do this, and Kiddo thought he was an idiot, and she said so simply, because tanks are hard to find. The blonde crossed her arms and muttered that there was a problem anyway. There were players standing around with leaflets, but the girl noted that they had high levels, and they would not be interested in the opportunity to join the group of newcomers. The hero rubbed his chin, thinking. His comrades looked at him questioningly as he said that there was no reason to worry, because he already had a plan. Users squinted at the heroes with grins. Kiddo blushed, trembling with anger. The man looked at her and assured her that this was the best way to find a good person. Spirit fidgeted in embarrassment. They were sitting at a table with alerts hanging above them about an open interview with a member of the Chunshik recruitment party with passion, and the blonde asked who was even doing interviews in the game. The main character leaned on his hands and asked them to just wait, convincing them that this method was the best. A fly was lazily flying in the air. Kissy, not missing the opportunity, deftly caught it. Chunshik was annoyed that no one had applied for an interview. Kiddo was mad at him for not understanding that they should be asking others to join their group. Kissy jumped in surprise as Chunshik slammed his fist on the table in fury, shouting that modern kids give up without even trying to do anything. Kiddo, with her arms crossed, still believed that Chunshik was wrong. It was at the moment when she was talking about the fact that no one would come for an interview that a man appeared and said that he had come to the interview to join their group. These words stunned the girl. She politely invited him to sit down, still perplexed. Looking in the direction of the guy, she was surprised to notice a huge crowd behind him. She couldn't believe that all these people actually came to the interview. At this time, someone paid a gold coin to the adventurer. After receiving the payment, the young man pointed towards Chunshik and asked if it was true that he would receive 500 gold if he went to the interview. Holding a poster with the announcement in her hands, Secretary Jong confirmed this information. Lowering her black glasses, she looked directly into the adventurer's eyes and said that in exchange, he should keep it a secret. Adventurers came for interviews one after another. Some of them were angry and threatened when they heard a refusal. Chunshik asked adventurers about their reasons for coming, as well as what achievements they had. Some were surprised by their questions, some answered honestly, and some did not behave quite reasonably. Someone groaned deeply to all questions. The third question was what they thought of the group they were going to join. Some adventurers were unhappy that they had to endure such stupid questions. Some directly told them that they looked like fools. Another adventurer, unable to stand such stupidity, laughed irritably, without even answering all the questions. The other, as usual, answered with an incomprehensible set of letters. Once again, hearing a simple moan in response to his question, Chunshik became furious and, jumping up from his chair, told him to just leave if he planned to continue to behave like this. Chunshik shouted away the poor adventurer. Kiddo wasn't even surprised that everyone treats it like a game. When Chunshik began to explain why he was doing all this, Kiddo covered her ear in exasperation, saying that he could do whatever he wanted. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted. Chunshik looked up at the one who had called him. Adjusting his glasses, Jiros asked how they were doing. Unlike Kiddo, who was extremely annoyed by the boyfriend's presence, Chunshik was happy to see a familiar face. Adjusting his glasses and grinning, he called their meeting fate. The girl immediately refused to even talk to him, and Chunshik warned that, despite their acquaintance, he must honestly pass the interview, like everyone else. Jiros boldly accepted the challenge, answering that he had not counted on anything else. Resting his chin on his hands, Chunshik voiced the first question. Jiros laughingly replied that their group was perfect for him and actively began to explain the reasons. Chunshik didn't like the frivolous tone the guy was taking, and he seriously warned him that they were not joking. Chunshik repeated his question sternly once more, clarifying that Jiros had to tell why he wanted to join the squad with them, and not someone else. Jiros was dumbfounded when Chunshik bluntly said that their band was weaker than the others, but the guy should have reasons to choose them. He wanted to hear the real reason for Jiros' desire to join them. Jiros paused for a moment, his head bowed. When Jiros decided to share his story, Spirit and Kissy turned their sights on him as well. Jiros said that those around him called him useless from a young age, as he had no common sense and nothing he was good at. It was difficult for people to love him. In these difficult times, he discovered a new refuge called Novik World and decided, forgetting about his present, to recreate himself with the help of the game. But even here, he continued to consider himself useless, and only Chunshik said that he was not a useless person. Looking Chunshik straight in the eye with determination, Jiro said that after hearing these words, he was very happy and decided to live up to Chunshik's expectations, which is why he wants to join their group. Chunshik froze for a moment at these words. His story caused a grimace of disgust on Kido's face, and Chunshik, coming to his senses, decided to ask the next question. Suddenly, the interview was interrupted by a young man who, placing his hand on Jiro's shoulder, roughly pushed him aside to walk forward. Chunshik glared angrily at the guy who was making fun of what was happening. Carnes and his companion looked down on them and taunted them. Chunshik waved his hand in annoyance, telling Carnes to leave them alone and go on their way in peace. However, the guy and the girl continued to mock, boasting of their successes. Their words infuriated Kido, and she decided to respond rudely to rudeness. Chunshik stopped his girlfriend and, pointing his finger at Carnes, offered to take part in the interview, since he thinks he is so smart. Carnes immediately refused, finding the idea ridiculous, but his companion found the idea amusing. A devious idea arose in her head, and she whispered to Carnes that he had to agree and deliberately shame them. Carnes liked the idea, and he immediately looked at Chunshik and said that he had changed his mind and decided to accept his offer. Having said that, Carnes haughtily sat down right in front of them in the interviewee's seat. Crossing his arms in front of him, Carnes arrogantly told them to proceed with the interview. The men looked into each other's eyes defiantly. When asked if he was approaching their squad, Carnes, exhaling haughtily, replied that, of course, he did. But before he could finish his sentence, his eyes widened with the realization of something. Chunshik with Kissy on his shoulders stared at him. Carnes remembered where he had previously heard this question. On that occasion, he answered almost the same way, but the interviewer turned away in disappointment, saying that this was not the answer he was expecting. Resting his head wearily on his hand, the interviewer said that almost everyone who had come before him had given a similar answer, which indicates the absence of any subjectivity in their thoughts. Noticing that Carnes stopped in mid-sentence, Chunshik warned that the interview was not over yet and told him to continue. Cold sweat streamed down Carnes' face with excitement. Chunshik's serious and direct gaze put terrible pressure on him. A huge crowd gathered around the interview venue began to attract the attention of passers-by. Among them were a young girl with a boyfriend. When they saw Carnes being interviewed, they were perplexed, not understanding why the squad was conducting a recruitment interview. The girl remembered that earlier there was a person who offered 500 gold to the one who would pass the interview. Hearing about the money, the young man began to look for the man. Drake-Doke walked past them in displeasure, muttering that they were putting on a ridiculous show. Upon reaching the adventurer with whom he had an appointment, Drake-Doke announced his arrival. Seeing that he was standing alone, he wondered where Crazy Dog was. Upon hearing that she had left early, Drake-Doke angrily called her useless and tossed the pouch to Mr. Leaf, telling him to catch her. Reflexively catching the pouch, Leaf asked what it was. Drake-Doke revealed that the pouch contains random potions that they need to make their own. In exchange for these potions, Mayang demanded that they catch Chunshik. Hearing Chunshik's name, Leaf's eyes flushed with blood. He furiously stated that they should kill him as soon as they found him. Spirit closely followed the course of the interview. Kido also waited for Carnes' answer. Continuing to stare at Carnes, Chunshik demanded that Carnes continue his thought. Yunha felt uneasy from the tense silence, and also asked her companion not to be silent. Cold sweat streamed down Carnes' face with excitement, and he seemed to be frozen in a stupor. Kido, in bewilderment, asked why Carnes stopped in the middle of a sentence. Exhaling in disappointment, Chunshik said that he didn't think there was any need to continue as it was a waste of time. Hearing these words, Carnes came to his senses. Rising from his seat, he headed towards Chunshik. Grabbing him by the breasts, he angrily accused Chunshik of using fake intimidation tactics and failing to conduct interviews. Chunshik was shocked by Carnes' behavior. When Kido noticed that Chunshik was starting to lose his temper, she stopped him. Moreover, she asked Chunshik not to resist even if Carnes tried to hit him. The reaction of Carnes, who considered himself an elite, was not long in coming. In a fit of rage, he raised his fist, clearly intending to hit Chunshik. The latter, squeezing his eyes shut, prepared to take the blow. Suddenly, someone grabbed Carnes' hand with a clenched fist. Turning around, he saw a man twice his size, who reported that violence outside of duels in the village is strictly prohibited. Carnes continued to yell at Chunshik, claiming that he did not understand anything in the interview, even when the guard, throwing him over his shoulder, carried him away. Chunshik thanked Kido for stopping him from fighting. Kido, throwing her hands behind her head, replied in a bored tone that this is a well-known fact: a person is taken away for an attack in the village. She also noted that it was Jiro's who went to call the guard when the fight began. Hearing this, Chunshik looked at Jiro's with interest. Getting up from his seat, he approached the guy and, putting his hand on his shoulder, proudly announced that he was accepted. Spirit applauded as she watched the scene, while Kido looked on in annoyance, believing that Chunshik was putting on a ridiculous show. Chunshik proudly invited Jiro's to work together. Jiro's eyes sparkled with happiness when he heard these words. A lively life continued in the village. Now that their group was fully formed, they went to get the necessary things. First of all, they needed to purchase the necessary things. Leaf, muttering in exasperation that only an idiot could start a fight, remarked to Spirit. He began to bow incessantly. Leaf explained that he didn't understand why he had to go so far. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Spirit's physique. He immediately appreciated the muscular appearance of the character, because nowadays most people created their characters to look like skinny handsome men. Leaf praised the muscular characters with admiration. Spirit blushed in embarrassment as he listened to the enthusiastic praise. Leaf did not forget to brag about himself and his appearance and armor in between. When he asked what Spirit was doing here, he replied that he was buying items. Hearing this, Leaf generously handed him a huge bag of items, saying that he didn't need them. Moreover, he started throwing useful items to Spirit that he didn't need. Opening the pouch of potions, he took out a small bottle and, handing it to Spirit, said that it was some kind of experience, and since he was in a good mood, he was ready to share. Spirit stared at the previously unseen potion in surprise. Suddenly, someone called out to him through his headphones, and he remembered that he was in a hurry. After saying goodbye to Spirit, Leaf left in high spirits. After that, Spirit's comrades contacted him to see if he had managed to purchase everything he needed. After taking Leaf's gifts and his purchases, Spirit went to meet with his comrades. His comrades were already there and waiting for him. Kiddo and Jiro's, who had completed their purchases, curiously asked if he had managed to purchase anything of value. Spirit's cheeks flushed slightly as his comrades began to praise the items brought to them. After finishing looking at things, they noticed that Chunshik was late. As soon as he was mentioned, he immediately appeared, ran up to them with a sword in his hands, and shouted that he had brought good things as he had promised. Kiddo looked at him questioningly, because he looked exactly the same as before. Chunshik showed off his sword and told how he purchased it at a discount from another adventurer, paying only 470 gold instead of 2,000. Hearing this story, his comrades immediately realized that he had been deceived. Jiro's adjusted his glasses and explained to Chunshiku what kind of sword it was and where he could buy it. Moreover, he noted that the weapon is not even worth 50 gold. Chunshik was furious when he realized that some scammers had tricked him. Kiddo replied that, most likely, the scammers have already escaped and it will be impossible to find them. She added that thankfully, Spirit has brought a lot of useful items that they can use. After borrowing a few things from Spirit, Chunshik thanked him and asked if everyone was done with the preparations. After receiving an affirmative answer, he enthusiastically raised his sword in the air and announced that it was time to go to the dungeon. The group went hunting for golden scarabs. Chunshik didn't know what it was, so Jiro's volunteered to explain. While he was talking about the temple of the golden scarab, Kissy decided to have a snack. According to Jiro's, it was the lowest level dungeon that gave the most experience. He also said that there are competing users who choose one of the two alliances. Depending on the choice, the progress is slightly different, but the goal remains the same: catch the scarab. Kiddo was pleasantly surprised by how detailed Jiro's laid out the information. Chunshik recalled how he loved to play with a rhinoceros beetle as a child. Upon hearing this, Kiddo grimaced, showing how disgusted she was at the even mention of it. While they were engrossed in conversation, the group made it to their destination unnoticed. Of the two possible paths, they chose the path of an alliance, deciding that it would be easier with an alliance. In front of the tent, an old NPC slept on a chair, who was supposed to accompany them to Indong. The girl said that by waking up the old man, you can get detailed explanations, but suggested not to disturb him and just move on. However, Chunshik, without listening to her explanation, woke up the old man. When the old man woke up, he raised his bunny hat in irritation and asked who he was and what he wanted. The chatter replied that he had come because he wanted to enter the temple of the scarabs. The old man's face immediately changed, and with a friendly smile he shook hands with him, greeting him happily. The old man was insanely happy, because no one had woken him up for a long time. Chunshik was surprised to hear this, because how can you go on a raid without listening to an explanation? However, Jiro's and Kiddo countered that no one is wasting time talking to every NPC they meet right now. The old man with a pleading look asked to be given a chance to tell his story, because he needed to tell something really important. Despite Kiddo's protests, Chunshik decided to listen to the old man, much to the latter's delight. While the old man was telling his story, Jiro's took out a wiki and began to compare his words with the written text. Chunshik had a lively conversation with the old man while his comrades began to fall asleep from boredom. Unable to stand it, Kiddo angrily demanded to move on to the main topic. After a long silence, the old man was tearfully glad to have the opportunity to talk to someone. Getting down to business, he handed the hero a certain object. The NPC explained that it was a temple exploration kit and explained its contents. Kiddo was shocked, as it was an item that could only be obtained after completing a special quest. A half-asleep Jiro's confirmed that, according to rumors, it is sometimes possible to obtain such an item by ending a conversation with an NPC, although this is the first time he has personally seen it. Happily shaking Chunshik's hand, the old man wished him to return safe and sound. He seriously warned to be careful with the things he was talking about. The guy assured that he kept all the information in his memory. After finishing the conversation, the old man opened a portal to the dungeon of the Golden Scarab Temple. Spirit, Jiro's, and Kiddo hurried to the portal. The old man again shouted after them to return safe and sound, and warned them to beware of the Antler tribe. Upon entering the portal, Chunshik instantly found himself in a dungeon and began to look around for his comrades. Kissy moved with him. There was no one around. Suddenly, Kissy made a strange sound, which caught Chunshik's attention. He was spinning strangely and wagging his tail. When Kissy turned around, the hero noticed that he was chewing something. Chunshik grabbed Kissy's head and tried to pull out the contents of his mouth, scolding him for pulling everything into his mouth. Despite Kissy's resistance, he forcibly opened his mouth. When the mouth opened, a frog and a small bug flew out, thanking the adventurer for saving him. Chunshik was taken aback when he saw the bug holding the frog in the air. Memeta, with her paws on her waist, introduced herself as the Alliance's temple guide to the excavation of relics. She explained that due to the vastness and complexity of the underground temple, she guides all the adventurers. Memeta added that Chunshik needs to just follow her. During the journey, Chunshik decided to ask Memeta if she knew where his comrades were. Toad assumed that they might be around the corner, but she wasn't sure. Suddenly, Chunshik noticed a golden glow. Looking down, he saw a golden scarab lying on the floor. Joyfully rushing towards him, he stretched out his hand to pick up the precious find. However, before he could touch the scarab, someone abruptly pulled him away. In the next second, an angry serpent pounced on him from the darkness. Before Chunshik could even react, the snake grabbed its teeth into his neck. The adventurer's eyes darkened. A system message appeared on the screen stating that Chunshik had died. In the world of Novik World, Chunshik only lost consciousness. After a while, he woke up, his eyes wide open. The anxious Toad asked if he had come to his senses. Chunshik was in shock, not understanding why he didn't die after being bitten by the snake. Memeta explained that although he died, he came back to life, as it is impossible to truly die inside this dungeon. Seeing his comrade alive, Kissy happily hugged him. Memeta warned that, due to Chunshik's death, their team had only 2 lives left. Angrily pushing Kissy away from his face, Chunshik furiously asked why Memeta hadn't revealed it sooner. Getting up from the floor, he decided that from now on he had to be extremely careful, because there were only 2 lives left. Continuing her way, Memeta showed the way. Chunshik followed her without further ado. Walking through the empty corridors, the hero noticed a suspicious silence around. Suddenly, Kissy smelled something. Lowering his head to the floor, he began to sniff. Looking up, Kissy began to point somewhere, trying to explain something. Memeta translated the pet's words for Chunshik, saying that there was something dangerous nearby in the form of a trap or monster. In the temple research kit, the adventurer found a trap detector. Studying its screen, he tried to understand the controls. Finally turning on the detector, Chunshik reported that the device shows the presence of traps ahead. According to the testimony, many traps were hidden in front of them. While the hero was thinking about what to do, Kissy noticed some kind of insect. His eyes lit up, and he rushed after the prey, not listening to the screams of his comrade. In some incredible way, Kissy slipped past all the traps. Memeta and Chunshik were extremely surprised. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. Stone spikes moved out of the walls, and the walls themselves began to draw closer. Memeta and Chunshik rushed forward in a hurry. Hypnotized by the insect, Kissy walked forward, not noticing the danger. Spikes also began to appear from the ground, but Chunshik managed to jump. No sooner had he escaped one trap than the next one appeared. Kissy finally caught up with his prey. After catching the insect, he sent it into his mouth with a satisfied look, not noticing the exhausted Memeta and Chunshik behind him. Upon reaching Kissy, Chunshik punched the pet on the head for disobedience. After asking Memeta if it was safe ahead, he noticed a golden glow. A bright light poured from the room around the corner. From there came the familiar sounds of blows. Rushing there, Chunshik found Spirit surrounded by monsters. A friend defended himself from attacking creatures using self-healing magic. Seeing his friend, Spirit was delighted and threw away all the monsters. Chunshik was also happy to finally meet one of his comrades. It turned out that the monsters had been attacking Spirit from the moment he entered the room. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by another attack from one of the monsters. However, the creature did not have time to strike, because it was stopped by a lightning swing of the sword. Enraged, Chunshik threw the monster back a few steps with one powerful blow of his blade. After putting away his weapon, he proudly boasted to his comrade how much his strength had increased. Noticing that the monster gave up its breath with just one blow, Chunshik was slightly surprised. Memeta explained to him that these creatures are mirrormorts and turn into ghosts after death. The angry ghost rushed towards his killer, scaring both Chunshik and Kissy to death. In an attempt to defend himself, Chunshik swung his sword to slash the undead, but was surprised to find that the weapon was passing through the ghosts without doing any damage. In the end, the ghost still got to Chunshik and clung to his head. Memeta belatedly explained to the surprised hero that ghostly monsters are invulnerable to physical attacks. Upon hearing this, Spirit decided to use magic and cast a light spell, creating a blinding flash. The ghost, having received damage from the holy power, disappeared with an agonizing scream. Chunshik, breathing heavily, thanked Spirit for saving him. He promised to repay the debt, and reminded them that they needed to find the rest of the team. Rising from the ground, Chunshik asked Spirit if he had any ideas about the whereabouts of their comrades. Suddenly, the hero fell silent, looking away. A red light could be seen behind Spirit. Chunshik instantly rushed towards his comrade and pushed him away, covering him with his body. A small fireball was flying towards them at great speed. Chunshik managed to block the blow with his sword, but a small burnt hole appeared on the blade. The guy demanded that the attacker reveal his identity. He lowered his weapon. The masked man announced that he was unlucky enough to meet him as an enemy. Not understanding what was happening, the hero asked Memeta who these people were. She replied that, most likely, these are competitors of their alliance. Memeta noted that they faced opponents earlier than expected. Chunshik, hearing about the upcoming fight, cried out that it was dangerous. He was indignant, scolding the adventurer who shot for using weapons against people. The masked man only chuckled in response. Memeta once again reminded Chunshik that they are facing their enemies. After analyzing the strength of Chunshika and Spirit, the attackers came to the conclusion that they were guaranteed a victory over such newcomers. The guide who accompanied the group warned them not to be so overconfident and to remain careful. Despite this warning, the masked adventurer haughtily reassured Momoto, being absolutely certain of victory. He believed that there was a serious advantage in their team. Chunshik decided to check with Memeta if it was necessary to fight these adventurers. While Memeta explained that this was not a prerequisite, and some even became allies with their opponents, Kissy slowly climbed Chunshika. Upon hearing that fighting was unnecessary, Chunshik boldly put his sword away, deciding that there was no need to fight. However, the opponents were determined. Chunshik approached them and offered to form an alliance. He spoke in detail about the benefits of their cooperation and the items that could be useful in the mission. The masked adventurer, without putting away his weapon, listened attentively. Suddenly, he shot directly into Chunshik's chest. He felt unbearable pain. Spirit and Memeta shuddered at the surprise. They rushed to the wounded comrade, and Spirit began to use healing magic. Loading his shotgun, the masked adventurer rejected the offer of cooperation. He didn't believe that Chunshik was really committed to peace talks. After all, he had a special liquid in his bag that could slow down enemies and turn them into liquid monsters. The hero highly appreciated his insight. It turned out that he had originally planned to pretend to be a friend and suddenly attack. Recognizing this, he drew his sword and charged into battle. The opponent fired again, this time hitting Chunshik's shoulder. The adventurer continued to shoot, retreating backwards, and Chunshik, despite his wounds, stubbornly walked forward. But I couldn't get closer. The enemy mocked, changing cartridges. Deciding to deliver the decisive blow, he used the dragon breath bullet, unleashing a huge wave of fire. Spirit continued to support his comrade with healing magic. Suddenly, he noticed how the pink-haired girl who had been standing next to their enemy was next to them. In surprise, he and Memeta jumped. Cold sweat broke out on Spirit's forehead. Stopping the shelling, the adventurer admitted that Chunshik was strong. Kissy, who was next to Chunshik, was also affected by the attack. Brown-haired was burned and dirty. His clothes and equipment were in disarray, and the fire was still smoldering behind. Despite his stubbornness, Chunshik was forced to admit that he had chosen the wrong battle tactics. Looking for an alternative plan, he glanced at Spirit and noticed a girl next to him. She stared at him, staring at him. When he saw her, he remembered Kido's instructions before entering the dungeon. She explained that in a team fight, the primary target should always be the healer. Kido said that as long as there is a healer on the team, no matter how much you attack the others, they still won't die. But if you eliminate the healer, it will be much easier to deal with the remaining fighters. The guy remembered how during the previous battle, their opponent was constantly trying to get to Spirit. Kido, covering her mouth with her hand, chuckled that he hadn't understood such an obvious tactic right away. Lost in thought, Chunshik examined the girl in front of him. Her clothes clearly indicated the role of a healer in the team. But his thoughts were interrupted. The masked adventurer raised his weapon again, aiming at the hero and preparing to deliver the final blow. Noticing that Chunshik was running in the opposite direction, the opponent thought that he was trying to run away from fear. However, Chunshik didn't back down at all, and he just changed his goal. Now his target was not the attacker, but the healer. But the girl was not so simple, because she stopped the opponent with one powerful blow. Spirit and Memeta were shocked by what they saw. Chunshik flew backwards from the force of her punch. The masked adventurer noticed that many, seeing such a fragile girl, mistake her for an ordinary healer. In reality, she was a combat healer and one who not only healed but also repaired the source of damage while healing wounds. The main character rides his face from the healing effect. A warrior with a gun stands behind the girl and explains that if they thought that Strawberry Mint Miss was an ordinary healer, then they were very mistaken, because this person was both a healer and a dealer. Strawberry looks away and states that she is also a tanker, since their group does not have one. The partner notes that she is indeed a versatile person. A lady with a serious face says she has something to say. The helmeted giant holds his weapon. It is said that there is someone who looks like a tanker, but he is a pure-blooded healer. The black-robed fighter asks if this is true. He looks nervous, clarifies whether he is really not a tanker, but just a huge man. Strawberry looks to the side and states that at first she thought he was a healer and a tanker like her. But this is not the case, because the girl cannot attack, so it would be better to aim in this direction first. The protagonist looks at his partner with a disgruntled face and asks Mr. Morale what is going on, and if this lady is a healer, because if this is true, then they are all at an even greater disadvantage. An outraged Chunshik claims that there is then no choice but to carry out this plan, clarifying that Miss Kido taught them everything. The interlocutor in the steel helmet does not understand anything. The main character is about to do something with a grin. Suddenly, he begins to run quickly, stating that he is going into flush mode. The warrior in black stands in amazement near a shocked Strawberry and demands to stop. Chunshik, along with his partner, runs to attack in a rage, while accompanying everything with a loud scream. A small frog flies beside him and remarks that he must have a backup plan ready. The frog is shocked to hear that they all look like rotten meat now, and he assumed that he had planned everything in advance. The fighter in black with a nervous look strokes his stomach and says that these idiots run well, and in general they want pancakes. The horned snake angrily exclaims that they are cowardly bastards, and instead of running away, let them stop and fight, and can they call themselves rivals of the Antler Clan Alliance? Chunshik looks at the orange pet with a smirk, and says that there is nothing he can do, and will have to give it to him. The fighter in black aims his gun, stating that if there is an opportunity, he does not want to use it, while the system states that the skill of visual search in order to aim at the enemy and strike with a 100% probability. He sees the enemy in the sight, and says that he will first aim at a huge healer. A bright energy beam flies right into the back of the big man. The protagonist runs forward and turns around in shock at the falling Mr. Morel. The shooter takes 2 cartridges and declares that this is an anesthetic bullet prepared specifically for this case, because even moving like this will be difficult. The worried protagonist turns around and asks if his partner is okay, while wondering what a bunch of bad guys did this. A warrior in black walks near Strawberry and advises you to just surrender. He raises his gun and takes aim, claiming that none of them have a bright future anymore, only despair. Chunshik opens his mouth wide and yells at Kissy number 2 that it's time. A small orange monster rushes to attack. Strawberry sends it flying to the side with a single punch, taking him by a small briefcase. Kissy is in complete shock. The bewildered lady looks at him and asks what kind of stupid-looking lizard it is, noting that she has already seen it somewhere. Suddenly, the monster's eyes are transformed into lovers. He does not take them together with Strawberry. The healer looks at him in amazement. She smiles and notices that the lizard is quite cute, but her partner is shocked. The orange beast looks in amazement, without closing its eyes. He is held by a small briefcase. Suddenly, green slime flies into Strawberry's face. The little monster hurriedly runs away, while the warrior in black screams at what he sees and swears. The fighter turns around in a rage and shouts that his opponent is him. In the next moment, he sees the protagonist jumping on him directly with a sword. Chunshik hits hard, but the opponent bounces back. MC gritted his teeth in fury. The imperturbable rival declares that the guy does not study well. He starts firing a powerful gun, saying that with these movements he is sluggish and even if he tries hard, it will be difficult to catch him. The protagonist struggles to dodge the bullets. There is anger in his gaze. He realizes that you need to get closer to him to do something, because you can go crazy from helplessness. The warrior in black goes to meet halfway. Chunshik reflects on the need to find a way to approach this guy and are there really no good ideas about it. The main character closes his eyes in anger, realizing that his head is already beginning to hurt from this. The guy is on his knee and thinks that he just needs to give a little strength to his legs. In a second, he takes off, realizing that he needs a push to jump forward. The protagonist flies forward with his eyes closed. He opens them and looks ahead in amazement. Chunshik sees an enemy in front of him. The system says about a rapid jump, in which, if there is a collision with an enemy, it pushes him to the side. The warrior in black holds his gun in shock and does nothing. The protagonist flies forward in a rage and screams. The enemy's eyes reflect the guy attacking him. Chunshik flies into the enemy with all his strength. The opponent in black clothes is in complete shock. They hit the ground with great speed and fly away. The dumbfounded protagonist looks ahead and asks what had just happened, because a minute ago it seemed that he was flying. Chunshik with a puzzled look suggests that even without his knowledge, the contract space was used with the help of magic. The opponent is kneeling in the middle of the smoke and says that he looked down on him too often and thought that he was just a beginner. The enthusiastic protagonist stands opposite and asks how to get a strong blow, while the opponent calls him a grasshopper. The fighter in black clothes calmly declares that there is one thing that they overlook. The main character asks what it is about. Suddenly, behind MC is Strawberry, who is swinging her weapon. An enemy in black clothes asks to finish him off. Chunshik turns around in shock and screams. A pink-haired lady with slime on her face agrees with him. She stands on heels and asks what exactly. Her eyes open wide in amazement. Someone says that no matter how they see her, she is most likely a hybrid healer, meaning she can heal while dealing and tanking as well. A stranger with a dagger at her throat says that no matter what, a healer is still a healer. Chunshik is shocked, trying to figure something out. Kiddo smiles happily as he notices the fiery champion. Suddenly, she strikes at her rival, calling her an insect that has been destroyed. The system shows information that Strawberry is dead, and a scream is heard that they have finally met with Kiddo. The elf says with a smirk that she found him, and if she hadn't arrived in time, she wouldn't have dreamed of victory. The joyful protagonist looks at her, and says that they thought that the end had come, because without her they would not have coped, and even if she lacks experience, her playing skills are not of this world. The elf asks to stop flattering her. The guy notices that now all that remains is to meet with Jiros. The boy adjusts his glasses and exclaims that he is already here, while Chunshik is happy to see them. Kiddo turns around at Kissy in amazement, saying that he has already managed to get to know her, but was more looking forward to meeting Mr. Flame Champion and Fighting Spirit. He was quite impressed by that lizard, so he immediately headed here. The protagonist sees an orange pet on his shoulder and remarks that he thought that Kissy had escaped, but as expected, he apparently planned everything a long time ago. Kiddo says with a smirk that anyway, now that they're all together, they need to head to the center for it all to end. A warrior in black clothes silently kneels. The question is what to do with him. A small green snake crawls along his back and tells the adventurer that it's time to leave, as he is at a disadvantage, especially numerically. The fighter in black will raise his hand with the ball and exclaim that he knows about it. Suddenly, his saber spreads thick smoke around the area. He shouts that you just need to wait for further developments. And don't think that he will forget this humiliation. In the system window it is written that the smoke bomb blocks the view. Chunshik stands next to his friends and offers to catch up with this bastard. The elf wonders that he probably tried to parody the villain, but overplayed him. The fighting spirit is very blurred by Kiddo, who calls out to him. The amazed girl says that he finally woke up. The big man in the helmet shakes his head. The elf suggests that Mezi's skill was quite powerful. Given that he has been stunned for a long time, the bespectacled guy remarks that it is one of the strongest crowd control skills that stuns enemies for a long time. The protagonist looks around, while his girlfriend shouts enraged that Jiros needs to learn to watch his words. Chunshik wonders where this frog scoundrel has gone. A small frog peeks around the corner and asks if it's about him. MC in turn clarifies where he has been. The frightened frog hid from the enemy's snake. It is said that he decided to measure his strength with him, but he shouted in fury to get out, because he considers himself a warrior of the alliance. The protagonist looks at the amazed partner, who asks what this meta is. He wonders if Kiddo really knows him. The elf stands in front of the protagonist and explains that of course she knows, because she has passed this dungeon many times and thanks to this, they will have an advantage in the last test. Chunshik asks again. The disgruntled girl is silent. The excited protagonist hears that it doesn't matter, because soon he will see everything for himself. He in turn asks why he stopped. The frog happily flies and exclaims that in any case, when the worst was avoided, they all gathered and need to speed up. MC remarks that he himself was actually hiding until now. The pet flies behind them and asks them to follow him, because he will lead them. The elf objects that she knows the way herself. He shouts loudly again and wants the adventurers to work with him. 4 guys with pets are walking down the corridor. Kiddo says that he used to know how to use spatial magic, but she does not understand what it is about. The main character says with a smirk that he suddenly took off. Terrified, Kiddo hears that this is why that rival flew so far. She states that she didn't even know it. Jiros adjusts his glasses and tells her that Mr. Flame Champion is most likely talking about skill. Mr. Fighting Spirit silently listens as the protagonist wonders if he ever used such a skill. Kiddo in turn asks what it means he hasn't used any abilities yet. The lady presents 2 combat options with a normal attack and a chaotic sword dance and explains that it is much better to use many skills to quickly and easily level up. Even if you master just one skill, you can manage everything many times faster. The elf closes her eyes in displeasure. Hearing the question of how he can use the skill, she replies that it is easy, because you need to imagine your skill in your head. Suddenly a dark, thick aura appears around her. The protagonist looks at her performance in discouragement. A second later, the elf is behind him and with a smirk offers to act. The system says about the ability of a phantom step. The grumpy Chunshik shouts in rage at the snide girl that these are bad manners, because no one just draws their blade. She in turn calls it funny. Kiddo, smiling mischievously, states that the more level, pace, and skill increases, the stronger the skill and the more can be used. As the guys argue, the protagonist wondered why he was able to use his skill earlier, while wondering if he could use stronger skills as his skill grew. He remembers the ferocious monster and realizes that he can probably use the ability that the hero used. The startled guys turned around as MC exclaimed excellently. The joyful protagonist raised his hand and shouts that he is even inflamed, so they need to go and level up. Jiros adjusts his glasses with a smirk, thinking that this is what he expected from the elder, while the elf gets angry. They are standing next to each other. Suddenly, a bunch of monsters appear that are approaching them. They are amazed to watch the insects running by. A stone door is shown. It is said that following Miss Kiddo's advice makes it easier to advance. The elf clarifies, didn't she say that she passed this dungeon more than once? A joyful Kiddo points her finger and exclaims that they are almost there. In the middle of the golden hall is a statue of an insect. This is the dungeon of the golden scarab. The discouraged protagonist calls it amazing, notes to his partner that she expected such a reaction. The elf says with a smile that they are from here. The character stands on the floor, asking if this is the way out. A smiling knight stands next to the lady and declares that it is easy for him. He looks around and notices that the other team hasn't even arrived. Kiddo points his finger at him in displeasure and calls him the man who set it all up, and they are now opponents. Surprised, Chunshik turns around and watches while his partner is angry. The enraged guy hears that he is the one who cannot say anything at the interview. In a rage, he activates magic in his hand, shouting that it is insulting him, so that the opponent declares a duel. A warrior in a black robe puts his hand on the master's shoulder and asks him not to worry. In the middle of the hall there is a statue. It is said that now they are in the chambers of the guardian, so if they fight with each other, they will suffer, and then nothing will definitely work. The lady in the red hat agrees that there is only one round left, and you need to wait for the right moment, she suggests, ignoring them. The guy with a serious face is silent. With a slight smile, he sighs and agrees with this. Karl states with a confident face that it would be funny if he worried about such a trifle, so it is much better to save his energy for later. The protagonist watches and asks his partner what he continues to talk about. She suggests that he forget about them. The flying frog calmly declares that now there will be the first serious test. Jiros adjusts his glasses and clever explains that the guardians will soon appear in the second phase of the temple, so if they pass the guardian test and climb up, they will receive a golden scarab. At least that's what it says. The determined lady claims that it will not be useful, because you just need to try not to die. Chunshik notes that the elf is as smart and amazing as always. The guys are standing in the middle of the golden room. The main character assumes that they and the rival team have already gathered, so apparently everything will start soon. The dumbfounded protagonist senses an earthquake and asks what it is. Mr. Morale and Jiros are shaking with fear. The opposing team is amazed to hear that they are the same adventurers who decided to pass the trial of the Golden Scarab dungeon. A monster in golden armor begins to wake up. He has a fierce look of green color. A giant monster appears before them, and the test begins. Stunned, Chunshik asks in shock if they really have to defeat this thug. The flying toad deadpans that this is, after all, the beginning of the final test. A large monster stands in front of them. It is explained that he is the keeper of the Golden Scarab, and in order to get it, you must first go through. The puzzled protagonist wonders what will happen if they fail the test. Toad with a frightening look claims that in this case he will simply die a terrible death. The elf, crossing her arms, declares that they will not die, because it does not matter if it is a test or something else, it is still simple. Excited guys hear that if they want to level up, all they have to do is keep their heads straight. The enemy team is standing nearby. One of them says that he assumed so. Strawberry hears with a surprised face that Kiddo seems to be an experienced player, because he knows this dungeon very well. The shocked lady stands silently while she is addressed, but she does not answer. A fierce green-eyed scarab stares at them. It is said that the test is quite simple. He swings his mighty hand with long claws. Suddenly, the ground began to burst up. The toad speaks with a serious look about the first test. Chunshik is calmly waiting with his teammates. The monster clenches its fist and uses speed. The smart guy adjusts his glasses and explains that this is a speed test in which everyone has to run out and press a button, guessing the answer, so what matters is who exactly clicks first. Raising his finger, Jiros explains that it is forbidden to deal physical damage, but you can use stuns, and the side that first scores 4 points out of 7 tries wins. Kiddo looks at the guy with a serious look and says that they have to take the initiative into their own hands, so she will be first, and then they will see what the rivals are up to. The Golden Scarab announces the question. Suddenly, the heroes began to run while the monster says a question. The elf heads forward. MC asks where everyone rushed. Because the riddle has not yet been asked, she replies that there is no choice. You will have to press first, and then listen to it. Kiddo rushes to the button, the protagonist shouting that it is faster. The disgruntled gentleman looks at the lady in the red hat, and says that if it goes on like this, they will lose, and she also notices that they have a bullet with an anesthetic, but this skill is for an assassin. Strawberry slashes with his blade at this time. He asks why they don't use it right now while he runs. The elf smirks and thanks them for the easy victory. Suddenly, she receives a powerful blow to the head. The gentleman looks at Strawberry in fright, while the main character shouts that this is actually cheating, because it is forbidden to inflict physical damage. The disgruntled girl finds herself in a sand cage. She is called the first violator. The Golden Scarab points his finger and declares that the first point goes to their team. Kiddo grunts in pain as she is shouted that she is incomparable because she has done a good job. Chunshik stretches his hands with a smirk. It's time for the second question. He looks at the fleeing master in amazement as the Golden Scarab utters a question. The red-haired scoundrel turns around, asking if his debts will stand still. Chunshik sits down slightly and closes his eyes, mentally telling himself to calm down and try the skill of space control magic. The protagonist opens his eyes wide and understands that he needs to act. At breakneck speed, the main character pulls forward. A black-robed fighter aims his gun, asking if he really decided to leave so easily, while Kiddo asks the flame champion to dodge. Bullets fly past the protagonist. The gentleman wonders why they are always worse. The main character sees a sand wall in front of him and shouts how to stop it all. His teammates close their eyes, assuming what will happen now. The guy's hand lies on a sand rack. Chunshik stands up with a smirk and states that he did it. A giant golden scarab looks at him and asks what the answer is. The puzzled protagonist wonders what the question was. The rival points his finger at him in a rage and exclaims that he should get out of there, because he does not even know what was asked. MC in response asks if he knows himself. The Golden Scarab with a stern look declares that there is a competitive spirit in them, so he will give them a second try. Chunshik listens in amazement to the question that he is the one who co-founded Novice World along with the director who developed the game, as the name of the current CEO who turned it into a leading company is called. The protagonist raises his hand and says his name. The giant remarks that this is the correct answer. The main character wipes his nose with joy, thinking why they had such a question, because even if he does not know who exactly, he may have to give them a bonus. The people behind the protagonist discuss how this question may have been scripted by Chunshik himself, as he doesn't even care about the games, and the principal hasn't said he'll take first place here. Kiddo asks with a questioning look if Mr. Flame Champion is okay. He furiously says that they are all done once he reaches the first rank. A gunslinger in a black cloak hears a question about who is the strongest monster in the Forest of Drawers. He replies that it is a horned bear. Jiros effectively answers the question of what is the name of the civilization that created the Temple of the Golden Scarab several hundred years ago. He says that the civilization of the Incas. Mr. Morale reaches for the button with Strawberry. The giant asks where the Alliance camp is for a joint excavation, with the score 3-3. A huge monster stands in front of them and announces the last question. The elf smirks and declares that even walking will be faster. The sorceress, on the contrary, wonders if she can win. The joyful protagonist waves his hand and shouts that she will succeed, while the scarab explains that the team that takes the last point can go after the golden monster. The confident elf says that she knows all the answers. She has gone through this dungeon so many times that she remembered everything. She mockingly tells her opponent that she will lose anyway, so she can sit and rest. Kiddo starts running with a smile, while the scarab just starts asking. The girl confidently stands at the button and says that she is in place, while the monster declares that Novice World is a VR game. The surprised warrior hears the question of what the abbreviation VR means. Sweat begins to flow from the girl's frightened face. In her frightened gaze there are thousands of thoughts about what it could be. The protagonist stands next to Jiro's and wonders why she is silent. The bespectacled man notices that judging by the reaction, she does not know the answer. The nervous girl reaches for the button, thinking that she can press and try to guess. But if she suddenly answers incorrectly, at this time they shout that Kiddo assured that she knew all the answers. Suddenly, the opponent presses the button. A joyful lady in a red hat exclaims that virtual reality is the answer. The scarab deadpans that this is the correct answer. The elf opens her eyes in shock. In the arena, there is a scream that she has won, and Kiddo is a dumbass who may not know such simple things. The opponent points her finger with mockery and says that she had such confidence in the beginning, and now she can't even say a word. The gentleman stands next to Strawberry and rejoices, noticing that Yunha is great, and no one even doubted. At this time she offers to see that pathetic team. The excited elf turns and looks pitifully. The main character and the rest of the participants awkwardly scratch their heads and move their hands. There is fear and surprise in her eyes. Images of 3 heroes are visible. The frightened girl tries to say something, but she fails. Scarab, raising his hand, declares that the adventurers have passed all the tests. Suddenly, the floor begins to collapse under the master's feet. The monster talks about the team that won. The enemy team flies up. The scarab declares that they must go to the last level, where the golden monster lives. Chunshik is outraged because he hears being called a loser. The scoundrel with a snide face shouts that he belongs there, because later, when they pass the dungeon, they will tell him what it was like. The protagonist looks at the flying toad, which says that this is a very big problem. He in turn wonders what is going on. The protagonist opens his mouth in shock when he hears that the adventurers who failed the first test must go to the second. A huge monster has a blade flying out. It addresses the losers. The scarab opens its giant fanged mouth and demands that they prove their resolve. The discouraged guy stands still. He swings his arm intimidatingly, announcing the beginning of a test of strength. A ferocious mutant swings his blade. He hits the ground. The guys run to the sides in horror. Chunshik runs next to Jiro's and asks how they can knock him down, while he reads the answer from the book. Barnacle Boy reads tensely about how the losing team must defeat the Guardian, although his movements are simple, but he is quite strong, and you also need to be wary of the sun-breathing skill, which can instantly kill. The monster roars in rage. Jiro's exclaims about its emerald stone on its head, which must be destroyed. The protagonist runs nearby and asks what he means by this green thing, while clarifying how he can get it. A bespectacled guy with a confident look begins to conjure, declaring that there is no need to worry, because it is his turn to prove himself. With a stern face, he summons the Lord of Darkness. A small flying animal, the Lord of Shadows, Berkias, appears nearby. An excited Chunshik hears that his partner has summoned him without mistakes. The main character wonders if this will be enough. Purple lights fly through the air. The bespectacled man exclaims that he will show his amazing skills. With the help of his staff, he directs them to attack, ordering them to step on this monster. The system states the skill of dark flames, which creates exploding flames that burn enemies. An explosion occurs on the head of the monster. The protagonist asks if he can handle it. The guy replies that if the elder is surprised by this, then let him look further. Strong purple explosions are heard in front of the fighters. MC asks to continue fighting in the same vein. The giant monster clenches its fangs in rage, smoke coming out of its head. He opens his mouth, in which a bright sphere is formed. Jiro shouts that he is using the breath of the sun. The discouraged protagonist tries to say something. At this time he is called. Glasses in shock tells the master that he needs to run to the corner of the room. Suddenly, a powerful blast of energy crashes right next to Chunshik. Only a dark spot remained in Jiro's place. The system window says that he died. Frowning, the protagonist begins to call out to Kiddo. The elf stands silently nearby. The main character loudly calls for her. He shouts in fury why she stood still, because it is becoming very dangerous. The main character shakes her by the shoulders and asks her to get ready. The worried girl explains that she did not do it on purpose and did not want to do it at all. Chunshik does not understand what it is about. Mr. Morale opens his eyes in shock, which are barely visible through the slit of his helmet. MC flies to the side after the big guy pushes them. The guys are lying on the ground. The protagonist asks why he suddenly behaves like this. The partner effectively restrains the huge paw of the monster. The fighter in the helmet turns around. The main character calls him by name. The protagonist watches the scarab crush him with his paw, while he shouts something, but Chunshik replies that he does not hear him. The fighting spirit is amazed to see the monster withdraw its hand. Suddenly, a huge blade flies in his direction. He hits the big man right on the body. The scarab sweeps away the opponent. He flies away. Mr. Fighting Spirit lies on the ground in a pool of blood. The embittered protagonist tells Kissy to take care of Kiddo while he checks on the big man. Smoke comes out of the body of a pumped-up fighter. The protagonist asks how he feels. He tensely examines the wounded partner and asks if he can move, and what exactly he asked to take. The main character looks in surprise. The elf tells an indignant Kissy with a serious look that she must make things right. A small red lizard tries to hold her by all means. Kissy clung tightly to her. It opens its mouth with small teeth. Suddenly, he bites her with all his strength. Kiddo writhes his face in pain. In a rage, she punches him, asking what he is doing. An enraged Kissy points to the pile of ash that remains of the gyros. The elf looks at this in amazement, and says the name of her dead partner. She lowers her head and admits that she made a mistake, and if only she had done everything right. The scarab with golden horns turns around while the girl blames herself. Kissy stands next to her, frightened, noticing the monster's gaze. The giant swings his blade. A strong blow occurs. The elf frowns and looks around. Someone's shield restrains the edge of the blade. Discouraged, the girl sees how she is protected by a stranger in armor. The boss of the challenge opens its huge mouth and growls furiously, exposing its sharp fangs. The warrior, holding the monster with a shield, tells her that he won't last that long, so they need to retreat. The fighter runs with Kiddo, who asks where he got such equipment. The helmeted protagonist explains that the fighting spirit gave it to him along with the other things, the same ones they found. The girl apologizes with a sad look, stating that it's all because of her. An armored fighter yells at her, asking how long she will blame herself. On his shoulder is an astonished Kissy. MC says that if she really wants to apologize. The surprised lady listens that she needs to tell how to defeat this monster. The elf smirks, saying that she can be trusted. The protagonist, holding his sword, swings in a rage. He strikes the mutant's leg. The guys immediately run away from him. Chunshik asks if it is possible to defeat him at all. The girl, frowning, shouts that simple blows do not bother him, so it is necessary to attack only weak points. A cracked green crystal is visible on the scarab's head. The protagonist asks that it is necessary to attack that emerald stone on its head. She replies that it is, but it is not clear why it is already damaged. The remains of gyros are smoking on the floor. The main character says that he did his best. A giant scarab runs after them. The guys think about how to break it. The protagonist in armor hurries next to his partner and asks if there is any other way, and how long they will run away like this. The embittered girl tells the flame champion that he needs to try to get his attention with her shield. Chunshik, shielded by his shield and holding his sword, stands motionless. He wears a steel helmet on his head, shouting for the monster to come towards him. A giant scarab pulls its clawed paw directly at him. The mutant strikes, and clouds of smoke rise in the arena. The protagonist has difficulty holding his huge paw. Suddenly, Kiddo flies out and swings her blade. She thrusts it right into the emerald stone. A bright green light bursts out of the crack. The dung beetle begins to roar loudly from the damage it has taken. The main character in armor looks at this in amazement. The elf lands next to Chunshik, who asks what happened. She replies that she struck directly at the rock. The ferocious monster stands still. It is said that it still has stones, and if you cope with them, it will not be able to move, so if you hit one at a time, you can hit you in the head. The monster opens its fanged mouth and goes on the attack. Kiddo sees this with a serious face, and the protagonist asks her to be careful. A bright light bursts out of the golden staff. The amazed elf sees that she has bright wings. She soars upwards, stating that these are the wings of blessing. The system states that this skill will materialize them within a certain time. Mr. Morale stands furiously with a staff in his hands. The main character in armor sees a monster and shouts that the big man is finally with them, while clarifying that they need to destroy all these stones. MC's legs begin to emit blue smoke. He realizes that he has already used this skill. The fighter prepares to attack, realizing that if he uses it now, in the blink of an eye, he rushes straight at the emerald stone and pierces it with his blade. The sword fits tightly into the broken stone. The protagonist says that it is necessary. Kiddo flies with a joyful look and praises the guy for the impressive job he has done. Suddenly, her face changes to a frightened one, because her wings have disappeared. Mr. Morale looks at her fall in bewilderment. The enraged elf understands why they don't trust low-level skills. The warrior with a smirk says that nevertheless, they now have a huge advantage, so thanks to the wings of blessing, victory is in their hands. The giant monster continues to strike. Next to the big man in armor, the monster's fist flies in. The protagonist in the helmet shouts to the spirit that they need to act right now. The scarab's hand remained on the ground, and his partner was shouted at to destroy the green gem right now. The fighter with the staff freezes in place. The main character asks why he is inactive. Trembling, he swings his weapon, strikes directly at the green stone. The elf and Chunshik look at the bright light in amazement. The ferocious monster begins to roar loudly from the damage taken. A bright charge forms in its mouth. The main character warns that he will use it again. A powerful energy beam pierces space. A bright flash illuminates Kiddo's face, and she is screamed to dodge. A powerful flow of energy crashes into it. The main character covers himself with a shield and shouts the name of his girlfriend. The smoke dissipates near it. Suddenly, you can see how the elf briskly pushes off Chunshik with her foot and flies up. She turns around in mid-flight and shouts to the fighting spirit to use the wings right now. She had bright golden wings. The girl approaches a giant opponent who is standing opposite. Kiddo raises his dagger in anger and screams as he does so. Her magical wings begin to crumble into pieces. The girl flies towards the giant mouth of the enemy. Kissy is sitting on her head with a frown. In a rage, he jumps away from her and flies straight at the scarab. The red lizard lands directly on the green rock. The pet opens its large mouth and forms a cloud of flame. A small flame reaches the green stone. The protagonist, Kiddo, and Morale watch in shock. The emerald crystal begins to crack. Its cracks are becoming more and more obvious. The lizard sits on a crystal that begins to collapse, while accompanying it with a bright light. The joyful protagonist looks at his comrades in arms and says that they are finally finished and everyone has shown themselves to be wonderful teammates. Kissy is amazed to hear that he is returning their helmet, shield, and potions. Chunshik happily asks if they really gave them to him, because he is not sure that he should do so. Jiro's raises his finger and asks to look away. Flames erupt from behind the guardian's mouth. A happy little light congratulates them on passing the test of strength. The guys look at each other in bewilderment. They are told that they knocked down the keeper and thereby took the victory from the clutches of death. So now they deserve to proceed to the Hall of the Golden Scarab after the other team. A small flame points to the pedestal and declares that this is the reward for the first trial. The joyful toad sits in the bag and says that this is the sphere of life. The guy notices that the pet hit again while everyone was fighting. A bright sphere of power floats in the air. It is said that this is a disposable object that contains the power of a guardian. This is a treasure that can be used and then the power will increase many times over. Kiddo is silent in amazement, while the guys discuss whether they need it, because if you give it to him, then someday it will be a huge help. Chunshik, frowning, wonders if he needs to save her for now. He looks at his partner and asks why she has such a sad expression on her face. What is bothering her? The sad girl apologizes again, saying that only if she hadn't been stupid then. The indignant guy shouts in anger that she is talking about it again. Jiro's and Mr. Fighting Spirit watch silently, while the protagonist suggests that they just forget and move on without bringing up the topic anymore. The elf begins to get very angry. In a rage, she shouts at the protagonist that all responsibility lies with her, then the warrior says that she needs to move on. The protagonist, crossing his arms, declares that everyone can make a mistake, because there are no perfect people and everyone has made a mistake at least once. Chunshik hugs her friends and asks if anyone has ever reproached her for this. The surprised lady hears that without her, they definitely wouldn't have made it that far, and they wouldn't have found such a cool artifact if she hadn't been wrong. She smiles slightly and sighs. The embarrassed girl with a big smile declares that they did it, also because she did a good job. The happy warrior is surrounded by friends and offers to leave here. She laughs happily. The image of a boy with a pet appears. Chunshik is amazed to see this. A little boy holds a puppy in his arms. Then he turns to him alone. The main character, crossing his arms, does not understand what is happening. The image of a guy standing in front of the flowers is visible. He has red eyes and a sad look. A man with his eyes wide open looks at this. MC, thinking, is silent. The elf turns to the fiery champion and asks him not to have his head in the clouds, because she needs to hurry. The guys come to the large altar. She says that if everyone is ready, they need to go. Kiddo states with a sly smile that it's insanely fun, so they need to hold on tight. Suddenly, the main character opens his eyes in fear. The stone block moves them upwards at great speed. Everyone except the elf lies on the floor in fear, and she is very happy about this fun. A kind of elevator reaches its destination. They are on the top floor. Everything around is golden. Kiddo happily claims that it was fun, and every time it was like new. The flying toad sees the frightened elf. Before asking that the other team probably got up first, and there is no time to relax, she replies that she completely forgot about them and then she needs to hurry up and then they will catch up with them. A stone gate to the cave opens. The guys run out of there. The girl points to the stairs. The other asks if they will be in time. Chunshik looks up in shock. In front of him is a giant temple of the golden scarab. The green pet points with his paw and declares that there will be a golden scarab right on this top. The elf wonders where the enemy team is, if they found it earlier. The protagonist turns around in surprise, not having time to say that he needs to go. Suddenly, a golden insect lands on its nose. The elf sees this and exclaims that this is the golden scarab. The enemy team appears opposite. The gentleman furiously asks when they made it. Kiddo remarks that they have apparently been catching him all this time. A small insect hastily flies to the very top of the temple. Yunho runs after his teammates with a smile, hearing from Strawberry that he will be theirs. He just needs to be faster. A pink-haired lady swings a weapon. Kiddo is shocked to see this. She barely blocks an unexpected blow. The surprised healer tells her that she should only try to insult her again because of the class. She replies that the mistress of the problem has visited her again. The main character and the guys turn to Kiddo. They are told that she will soon join as soon as she deals with her rival, and they need not to miss the golden scarab. The shooter in the black cloak turns around and sees the pursuers, noting that it is quite dangerous. A small blue snake flies nearby and tells the adventurer to give him an orb of power. He agrees. The horned snake devours it. Suddenly it begins to glow very brightly. The monster's eyes are fixed on the enemies. She calls them cursed foreigners. A giant snake with deer antlers shouts for them to see its power. The stunned protagonist exclaims that apparently he has been fed an orb of power and another giant monster has appeared. The green toad with a confident look asks Chunshik to also give him an orb, because this is the only way to cope. Chunshik looks at the pet with an angry look. He hands her a small golden orb, claiming to trust it. Suddenly, a golden sphere of power slips out and flies to the floor. Kissy yawns at this time, his mouth wide open. Suddenly, the lizard feels that it has swallowed the sphere. The main character and the toad look at the bright glow in horror. Closing her eyes in fear, the lizard looks at the dim light. Chunshik nervously hears a question from the elf if it is really a horned snake from the opposing team. He agrees. He in turn is asked to give an orb of power to the meta. Strawberry waves her cross in a rage, trying to attack Kiddo. She clarifies what problem they have. An enraged girl hears that Kissy has swallowed her. The main character holds the pet. She clarifies whether he will be able to withstand the energy, and whether everything is fine. He replies that it does not seem to have changed, but there was light earlier. The warrior barely dodges her opponent's blows. The amazed healer looks at her and asks that if she constantly turns away, then her eyes can be taken away. The elf clarifies with a smirk that she is also an assassin, because she looks experienced. The protagonist stands on the steps, listening to his partner that she will first deal with her rival, and then contact them. A giant horned snake appears in front of the guys who understand that things are bad. It opens its mouth wide. Suddenly, a bright light begins to shoot out of Kissy's body. He is very surprised by this. The lizard begins to increase in size many times over. The discouraged pet looks at the fact that it has become the same size as the snake. The ferocious giant asks how he did it, if this sphere was really fed as well. Kissy growls angrily, his mouth open. He swings his paw at his opponent. While the snake has twisted the lizard, the protagonist offers to escape. While Kissy deals with the opponent, Jiro's agrees. The prince turns to the gunslinger in black, stating that Mr. Assassin is stubborn, who replies that he can leave it to him. He aims his gun, declaring that thanks to the bullet, the fiery breath will not leave them alive. Suddenly, a huge shadow falls on him. The snake, twisting Kissy, throws him around different parts of the arena. The protagonist puts his hand on his ear. Hearing the question why the pet has changed so much, he replies that he does not know, because it just suddenly increased. The elf stands in front of the enemy. While Chunshik asks if Kiddo is okay, if he is messing with that pink-haired woman, she replies that she is, but there is no need to worry, because the victory is hers. The angry girl looks ahead and says that you don't need to pay attention to those remaining idiots, you just need to take the golden scarab. Even though they have only 2 lives, it's not worth dying. Kissy bites a horned snake in a rage. The protagonist thinks that since they have 2 lives, then he and Jiro's have only 1 left. The protagonist makes a face when he hears a shout that they must not die in any case, because if something happens to one of them, the game will end. He replies that he understands everything, just don't scream. Chunshik begins to run up the giant staircase and turns around, telling the bespectacled man and the fighting spirit that they must not die under any circumstances. A fireball flies towards the protagonist, who at this time claims that if they die, he himself will kill them. Suddenly, a small explosion occurs, from which the protagonist flies out. Yunho holds a fiery finger with a smirk and says that even if she doesn't run well, the fire mage holds the book and declares with a smile that no one can compare with her in magic. Jiro's calmly adjusts his glasses, claiming that she dared to talk about magic in front of him, and since she can't tell the difference between them, he will show it. The bespectacled mage raises his staff and summons Berkias, shouting that she is about to see real magic. Yunha says with a sly smile that this is a summoning skill, so she has no right to lose. The girl releases a fiery entity that immediately rushes to attack. Mages exchange powerful attacks of different colors. They use a blast of darkness, dark flames, meteors, and more. A tired Jiro's hardly says that he will deal with the imposter, and he needs to go without him. Chunshik replies that he will do so, but the bespectacled man cannot die. The protagonist looks ahead and thinks what kind of staircase it is. At this time, the enemy fighter turns around and is clearly nervous. A red-haired fighter runs up the stairs and shouts that the main character is provoking him, because someone like him has no right to such a thing. MC rides his face in anger and replies that he only looks down on others because he works for a large company, so he is not worthy of him, let him fail from there. The discouraged rival hears that although Chunshik does not know what company he is from, he began to guess after seeing such an elite bastard. The enemy suddenly stopped and demanded to take back his words, saying that he did not care about insults. The guy in a rage takes out a sword and shouts that the protagonist should not stutter about his company. Stunned, the protagonist opens his mouth and remembers that this is the same skill that Nianji has. The energy blade flies towards him. He fights back with his shield at the last moment. The opponent waves his fingers. Suddenly, the beam of energy changes its direction. He flies right into the back of the main character, who screams in pain. The enemy calmly holds the blade and flies to attack. He deals a powerful blow to the protagonist's body. He falls to the floor, hearing that no one dares to laugh at his company. They are standing in the middle of a giant temple. The rival asks if he knows how hard he had to work to get to such a place. In anger, he points his finger at himself and shouts that he is different from those who hide in their rooms like the other, and the master is successful. He has always achieved it himself. The main character, making a disgruntled face, says that he has so much confidence. So what kind of company is this? A confident opponent clenches his fist, announcing that he is the leader of the novice company's gaming industry. The main character asks again in shock. He claims that this is the company that created the game. At this time, Kissy fights a horned snake. Chunshik asks what department he is from. He replies that the technical support department. MC thinks for a moment and clarifies that there seems to be a different manager in that department. The rival at this time is screaming in a rage, not understanding what he is muttering under his breath. The guy in armor gets up from his knee and says that he is thinking about how big the company is. Chunshik smirks if he knows who the firm's CEO is. The opponent calmly calls the name of the main character. The guy laughs mischievously, saying that it's good that he knows. The protagonist, frowning, wonders what his actions will be if he finds out that the director is in front of him. The gentleman in shock thinks that this is some kind of stupidity. He opens his eyes wide in surprise. A metropolis with a green park is shown. The guy sits in a business suit and realizes that he did everything he could to prepare. But who would have thought that it would be such a tough interview? But in general, this is what was expected from such a large company. Suddenly, a stranger approaches him and asks why the guy sighs so heavily. If he is worried before the interview, he agrees. The man sits next to him, while the excited candidate shouts about Mr. Manager, who, in turn, asks him to calm down and maintain his composure in any situation. A nervous guy listens to the manager apologize for the pressure at the interview, but since there were many applicants, there was no other choice. They chatted happily with each other. He realizes that although he thought the boss would be a strict person, he underestimated him. The embarrassed candidate smiles and thanks the man who said he didn't see it during the interview. But he's a funny young man, you could call it a youthful spirit, so if he were the CEO, he would definitely hire him. A surprised guy hears a question about what if he were the CEO. Jong holds the papers and says that she kept thinking about where he went. The boss asks if he was late. The discouraged candidate hears the secretary say that he needs to sign a whole stack of documents, so the CEO should go back. Chunshik hopes with a kind smile that he and his friend will see each other again. The astonished rival asks if it is really him in front of him. The protagonist smiles slightly and agrees with him. The frightened guy remembers all his bad words towards the main character. He lowers his head and apologizes to the CEO, who replies that there is no need to worry, because MC does not take to heart what is happening to him in this game. The surprised opponent turns around when he hears that he did not say that he was playing in the company, so a lot can happen. A nervous red-haired fighter wonders if he remembers him, as he is takes second in command from technical support. The protagonist happily assures that of course he remembered, while wondering who he is. The bewildered rival hears that the director seems to have seen him a couple of times near the office. Chunshik raises his shield and walks towards the stairs, stating that he wants a fair fight, as the fact that he is the boss makes no sense. The discouraged protagonist suddenly turns around. The energy blade flies right past his head. The enemy calmly says that he is not his CEO, while he shouts that he still needs to be softer. Takes up his sword and declares that after the interview he did not see the director again, and he talks about several cases. The main character, in turn, claims that he cannot remember everything, but he is really Chunshik. The fighter waves his fiery hand and declares that he respects the chief, and the guy dared to introduce himself to him. The protagonist looks at him with a smirk and says that he did not expect that he would immediately believe him, so it is worth solving this with a duel. The fighters begin a fierce battle. The magician waves his fingers. A fast beam flies directly towards the main character. He shields himself from it with his shield. Chunshik, frowning, looks at his opponent and realizes that he feels like he's fighting two at once. The bright blade glows in the air. He thinks that only if it weren't for his skill. The protagonist stands opposite and shouts about his ability. Carnes, frowning, hears the question of how he can learn such a thing. A powerful beam flies over the protagonist's head. The mage asks if he is talking about it. The enemy swings his sword, asking since when he should tell him. The guys wave their blades at each other in fury. MC wonders where he got him from, because after all, the fighter turned out to be stronger than expected. The energy sword suddenly splits into two parts. Carnes holds his blades with a mad look and asks what about it. He deals two powerful blows to the protagonist. The main character with a serious look thinks that he can use several swords at once, but the blow is clearly weaker than with one. Chunshik enthusiastically shouts that the more he watches the enemy's actions, the more he realizes what a great skill he has. Embarrassed, Carnes states with a smile that not every swordsman can master it, as it is a skill that requires mana. The protagonist kneels in front of him and asks how he can get it. He replies that it is quite obvious that potions or support skills will be needed. The magical swordsman sends energy beams in his direction and shouts that he is completely useless to him. Chunshik shields himself from these attacks, stating that even so, he liked him. Carnes hears with a serious look that he understands more and more why he is so proud of his company, especially the CEO. MC claims with a sly smile that even if the skill is so unique, he still wants to get his hands on it. The opponent with an important look says that this is a trifle for someone like him, and he realized that the protagonist is playing for time, because he has a good eye game. Chunshik drinks a blue potion, asking if the opponent can show something, such as something more deadly. Carnes raises his hand up and forms a 5 radiance sword, shouting that if the protagonist wants it so badly. The sinister-looking magical swordsman claims to finish him off with the strongest formation. Several powerful beams fly directly towards the main character. Suddenly, they dissipate into thin air. The opponent looks at his hand in shock and exclaims that apparently his mana is already at the limit. Suddenly, the protagonist approached him and almost grabbed him. He holds his hand on Carnes' face and states that the brighter and stronger the skill, the greater the risk. The protagonist mockingly states that as he thought, Carnes is not higher level, he does not yet have it to use the skill freely. Suddenly, there is a powerful blow with the blade. The blue barrier saved the magician from the powerful red flow of energy. Stunned, Chunshik sees the defeat notification. All the participants in the battle turn around in shock. You can see the fighter's fingers on the pedestal. He laughs. A gunslinger in a black cloak picks up a golden scarab and shouts that he did it. Chunshik sits on Carnes and tries to figure out how it happened. The horned snake glows brightly and shouts that they finally succeeded. The golden scarab now belongs to the Antler tribe. The sorceress rejoices in her victory, while Carnes and Strawberry are very surprised. The toad lies on the protagonist's shoulder, stating that this is the end, because they took the golden scarab. He turns around when he hears that he is being addressed. 3 teammates with pets are guiltily silent. Frowning, the protagonist sees a glow. Kiddo holds his head and wonders if it's really going to end like this. It's said that they lost after all. High cliffs are visible among the green forests. The old man comes out of the tent and looks away in amazement. The frog sits on his hat and tells the professor that they are finally back. The losing team exits the portal in displeasure. The old man looks at the protagonist and asks if he managed to get the golden scarab. The sad frog replies that the Antler tribe took them. It's a waste of time. Kissy looks at his feet in amazement. It is said that apparently they were stronger. But everyone did a good job. Let them return the manual and get the reward. Jiros looks at the elf and states that he expected to leave with nothing, but she remarks that it was a low-level dungeon. Chunshik stands with his back to them. The warrior asks if he is really so upset. She comforts him that they also got treasure and experience. The surprised elf hears that they got less than that team. Frowning, the main character assures that he will not do this again, because all this time he acted too thoughtlessly. Carnes holds his head in horror and thinks, what if this is really the CEO? Strawberry looks away in surprise as they discuss that these are the ones from the black market. On the pole hangs a wanted poster for Kissy. Events take place in the metropolis in Nova's company. The guy has a perfect hairstyle and shirt. They say, this man is good at everything, because he has a calm, sharp look and excellent manners. Some take smiles broadly. He is greeted at this time. He greets everyone in return. He thinks about the protagonist with a serious face, realizing that what happened has left a deep mark on him. The short-haired girl agrees, stating that he suddenly visited them earlier, ordered an emergency meeting to discuss all the feedback. Her colleague says with a slight smile that considering that he never cared about the development department, it's kind of strange, but she wonders what kind of wind blew it in and what happened. Some take listens in shock to their conversation about how the CEO is actually playing the game, and it's just amazing that he's interested in Nova's world. A lady in glasses addresses the boss. Chunshik looks at her and asks what's wrong. They go together. The girl says that he should not just devote time to this, because he can leave all the routine to her. The protagonist replies with a satisfied face that it is funny, because a personal conversation with them will be a more effective method, and he is also curious about how they do their job. A screen hangs on the wall nearby. The director claims that the company grew thanks to this game, so he didn't even know anything about it, which is quite ironic. The secretary replies that it was inevitable because he, as the CEO, only cares about management. Jong is amazed to hear that she may be right, but now that he's tried it himself, he understands more. Chunshik looks ahead and is referring to their company's game, in particular flaws and mistakes. He turns around with a smile and states that he needs to improve as he continues to play. The discouraged girl seriously thinks about the fact that seeing how hard he is trying makes her admire even more. MC listens excitedly about the fact that he needs to level up faster. At the current pace, it will be difficult for him to achieve the goal, first place within 1 year, and if he listens to her, it will be easier. The frightened protagonist stands with her in the hallway and exclaims that he will take care of it himself, and he does not need to help. She replies that she did not even think about it, she just can give a little hint. Tall skyscrapers rush towards the orange sunset. At this time the schedule is announced. Dim lanterns burn on a 2-story house. A small dog happily wags its tail and barks. Chunshik strokes her with a kind look and asks how the pet is feeling. A family photo hangs on the wall. He asks if Nuna has already arrived. The man looks around the room and clarifies about Hyung. His eye can be seen through the crack. He opens the door slightly and sees a guy at the computer. With a serious look, the main character closes it back. He is standing in the middle of his room. The man sits down on a gray chair, connecting all the equipment. He has bright virtual reality glasses. The playable protagonist opens his eyes. The system says that the Flame Champion has joined. The protagonist looks at Kissy on his shoulder with a smirk and asks how the baby is feeling. The window says that MC is level 29. An amazed Chunshik hears his name. The elf waves her hand benevolently and exclaims that he is a little late. The main character stands in front of her and asks where Spirit and Jiros are. She replies that before leaving, they said that they would leave early today. MC with a serious face asks what their plans are for today. If they are going to the dungeon, she replies that they are not, because now there are only 2 of them and they have raised their level enough, so they are no longer needed. The fighters are walking around the city. Kiddo suggests just going hunting to level up even more. Since there are only 3 days left before the battle royale, he in turn agrees. A large castle stands in the middle of the green Negron plain. A large stone monster roars ferociously. He hits the ground with all his strength. The fighter jumps to the side. He breaks off and goes on the attack. On the head of the warrior is a steel helmet, and in his hand is a sharp sword. He plunges his blade directly into the green crystal on the mutant's head. The elf sees how the flame champion defeated the monster. She admires him. Chunshik is asked with a big smile if he feels he has learned to fight, and he replies that he probably has. She hands him a red potion and asks if there are any thoughts on how to become even stronger. At this moment he asks where she got it from. As the boys sit on a rock, Kiddo starts talking about RMT, who exclaims in displeasure that if she says it again, he will slap her. The excited girl looks at him and clarifies that he does not do it because of principles or because there is no money. What is the goal? To reach the rank without RMT. The main character wipes the potion and exclaims that this is definitely not the case, because he has already said that he is not going to spend money on the game. Kiddo looks at him carefully and says that if he wants to become a ranker, he should listen to one thing. The surprised protagonist hears that he will not succeed without RMT. He clarifies why this conversation at all. The giant blue monster stands in front of the adventurers. It is said that to become a ranker, he must go to raids and increase his karma. If he wants to complete the raid, he must have a good item, and to have it, he must have money. Chunshik in turn clarifies that a good item cannot be obtained without RMT. Kissy sits with the potion as she explains that there are many other ways to become a ranker by increasing karma besides raids. But without a good item, they are ineffective. The protagonist, with a face twisted in amazement, asks if the sword of execution or the things he received last time do not fit the term good object. The elf replies with a smirk that it is certainly good, but it also needs to be strengthened, and in order to use it, you need to reach the maximum level, and he is still far from that. With a snide grin, she realizes that when he leaves, it will all be hers. Kiddo enthusiastically hears the question why she does not use RMT. The elf mysteriously averts her eyes and explains that this is her second account, but she constantly uses it on the first one. He asks in response whether it was worth the money. The girl waves it off with an important look and declares that on that account there are already one-click raids, together with her friends. Suddenly, the elf opens her eyes. Chunshik, frowning, tries to figure out what's going on. The interlocutor with a forced smile declares that in general it helps, although it was a long time ago. The blue sky is shown. The main character says that he just asked just in case, clarifying if something happened a long time ago. The girl laughs nervously and assures that everything is fine. Suddenly, her face begins to radiate energy. She does not understand what is happening. The protagonist looks at her in discouragement and asks if everything is okay, because something is wrong. The warrior has disappeared. The system window in her place says that she has logged out. The main character, in turn, thinks that the lady did not even say goodbye. Suddenly, a girl appears behind him, declaring that she was right about the person she saw then. Crazy Dog smiles with his long fangs and asks if he remembers her, as she clarified his identity earlier. The main character is amazed to wonder that she seems to be a reporter. The joyful red-faced heroine laughs, exclaiming that he still remembers her. Kissy listens to their conversation dumbfounded, and the guild master is looking for the exact same pet. The lizard's wanted sheet falls to the floor. She claims that she is at least convinced, because it is a little unusual, but still. Crazy Dog, with a sinister look, declares that he must die. Computer headphones fall to the floor. The silhouette of the father hangs over the child. He claims that the boy did not sleep again and played his games. The frightened boy apologizes, stating that he was just about to turn it off. The silhouette of the man claims that his dad does not tell him to stop playing completely. He just wants him not to sit in it for a long time. While the hero realizes that this is his mistake, because when his father drinks, the child shakes in horror, hearing that dad cannot endlessly repeat. He realizes that he had to pretend that he was sleeping. The parent looks at him with crazy eyes, asking if he really doesn't care about his father's words. The frightened boy sits on the floor and hears that he will have to spank him to make him listen, so let him carry the stick. The poor child exclaims that he should not do this. In the corridor, the screams of a boy are heard, who says that everything hurts him. The protagonist opens his eyes, thinking that everything hurts, and it is not clear what happened. He tries to open his eyes. Chunshik sits in the room with a disgruntled face. His gaze is extremely surprised, does not understand what is happening at all. There's a small room around it, and MC wonders what kind of place it is. He turns around in surprise when he hears that someone has noticed that the idiot has woken up. Nianji sits next to him, the protagonist exclaiming his name. The discouraged protagonist tries to understand why he is here, while the cat assures that he assumed that this would happen to him. Shocked, the protagonist sees that his hands are tied behind his back. He asks why this happened. The cat sits next to him and closes his eyes and states that there are rumors that he stole the red burn potion. However, his level is still low. Chunshik responds by asking what he is talking about. Jong lies face down with his hands tied on the floor. She jumps up abruptly and starts screaming. Nianji looks at her with a sad look. The protagonist simultaneously tries to find out why she is there. The secretary asks permission to explain everything to her with a serious look. In a flashback, she was hiding in the bushes, currently talking about helping him as usual. An indignant Chunshik clarifies that she has been following him all this time. Jong, frowning, leans over to him and declares that it's not that important now, and it's better to let her finish. He agrees in fright. A warrior with a sword cuts through the red smoke. It is explained that she witnessed the boss being attacked by a red demon. The secretary with a hammer flew into the attack, shouting that she would not forgive him, because even though she had forgotten her weapon, But even with that, the girl at this time explains that as his personal secretary it was her duty to protect him. A tired girl is lying on the ground. Someone asks what he is doing to her now. It is said that her skills were not enough and in the end she was also caught. The protagonist notes that he knew that everything would turn out this way. The secretary closes his eyes and says that it was all her fault. She was so weak that she could not protect him. Chunshik calmly asks who the woman attacked them. Chunshik seriously hears the information that the Red Demon is not a person, it is a guild that deals with PK. Nianji introduces this organization and the black market, explaining that these are the guilds that signed the mutual aid agreement. He was caught and brought here because the market most likely ordered from the Red Demon. The frightened protagonist looks at the army of cats, clarifying that this is a market run by cats, that is, they are now with them. The surprised protagonist hears that technically this is true. The megaship is tied to a ramp with ropes. It is explained that they are inside a transport ship belonging to the black market. Chunshik, with his hands behind his back, wonders why he was captured, as they already had an agreement on the condition that they give him kissy. The dumbfounded protagonist opens his eyes wide, not understanding where he is now. Nianji confidently claims that it was because of him. He didn't know that the one he was told to catch would already be tamed. Jong looks at them and apologizes for interrupting, while clarifying if they know where they're heading right now. The cat calmly replies that it is quite obvious, to the Queen Bee. The dumbfounded secretary asks about the Queen Bee Guild. The main character simultaneously asks if she knows what it is. It is said that this organization is probably the most powerful in the Western continent, led by the eponymous player, and it is also a guild that owns most of the land on the Western continent. An ear assistant sits nearby and declares that the idiot is well informed. The secretary asks again in shock. A dim light illuminates the wooden walls. The question is asked why they are being taken there at all, what the Black Dragon Guild has to do with this. Chunshik frowns when he hears that the Queen Bee has also signed an agreement with the black market, so they will be sold as slaves. Sad people are standing near the schematic exchange of guilds. It is explained that in addition to illegal affairs, the Black Market Guild is also engaged in trading and renting out rare monsters. Most of the people caught are sold to the Queen Bee because of the debts they have to pay off. This boat is a transport for transporting goods, monsters and slaves. The bound protagonist is on his knees and asks Nianji, who interrupts, saying that although they are not like that, however, the cat with a stern look claims that they have similar cases. The protagonist and the assistant turn around in amazement when they hear that this is extremely unfair. The secretary angrily states that everyone is equal in the game, so it is difficult to understand the idea of creating a slave trade. She hates such jokes, so she will leave the system. The long-eared cat closes his eyes and repeats her words about equality. He has shackles around his neck. He declares that even if she logs out, it won't help much, because after logging out, she will still come back here. John listens with a serious look that the only way is to delete the character and start all over again. Everyone else thinks that this is a waste of time, so they willingly create new characters, but if you don't want to, you will have to work it out. The cat sits next to MC, who asks that in his opinion there is nothing they can do about it, and will have to just sit and wait. He agrees with the idiot. The protagonist nervously closes his eyes and reflects that although he was not going to die busy because of the president's wishes, he was not warned. Enraged, Chunshik realizes that these bastards must respond. The assistant cat raises her ear, hearing his order to the secretary. She needs to announce a meeting for tomorrow, because he will no longer leave it uncontrolled. Suddenly, the door opens and a cat appears. The fluffy bandit calmly demands to follow him, because the elder calls them. The guys are walking on the deck. The main character notices that they are really soaring in the sky. He wonders how such a large transport can do. He looks up in amazement when he hears that they have come to the place. The longer lord towers over them. He asks if the fiery champion himself has come to him, who did not pay for the red burn. Mayang with an eye patch claims that a lot of time has passed since that moment. The main character gritted his teeth in anger. The villain advises not to look at him like that, because it took a lot of effort to find MC. He even had to pay a red demon to find him. The villain says with a smirk that he also had to buy a potion of force taming. Kissy sits in a cage with a sinister look. A cat with a scar on its head asks the elder what they will do with the two. Nianji, frowning, hears that he stole and ate the cat food intended for the Queen Bee. The secretary watches angrily. She is asked who she is. The thug frowns and introduces Crazy Dog, stating that according to the red demon, she was with him, so she got it for free. The ship, tied to a flying stingray, plows the sky. The leader orders that as soon as they arrive on the western continent, they need to land her. A dark aura floats through the air. He addresses the flame champion lord. The protagonist looks at him in shock. A tattooed man with a grin holds a blade. He is Maros, better known as Mayang, a guild master of the black market. He asks what he should do with it. Crazy Dog happily states that everything is fine with the potions. She found what she was looking for. Before that she was asked if she fulfilled the black market order. The demon with sharp fangs bites his finger, as he hears being asked what about Chunshik. She replies that she has been looking all this time, but is still not sure. A mysterious man in a red shirt and suit declares that the Demon King has already got it. When she finds him, she asks in response if the protagonist is really playing this game, because there is such a possibility that he was just joking. On the wall hangs a flaming coat of arms. It says that they do not know for sure, but since the order is made, it does not matter. It is the slogan of the Red Demon. Kissy sits with an angry look at the girl. There is a conversation about the fact that she will continue to try. And by the way, she saw a lizard that looks exactly like the one that the master takes care of. A demon with a red face and big horns strokes Kissy, stating that it sounds very interesting. The frightened boy looks at his father, who orders to bring a stick, because he will have to spank him so that he begins to listen. He asks in horror not to do this. Blows are heard throughout the corridor. The protagonist hardly opens his eyes, not understanding what happened at all. He opens them and sees a room. Nianji watches carefully. Maro states with a sinister grin that he shouldn't cause trouble until they arrive at the Queen Bee Guild. He holds the beast near him with a smirk, stating that this applies to everyone. They need to be quiet, unless, of course, they want to die. A red cat with scars hears an order to take them back to prison. A huge cat has long fangs. Mayang has once again turned into his feline version, stating that he has prepared something to keep them entertained on the road, who in turn exclaimed that this is what was expected of the boss. The fluffy scoundrel stands in front of the cages and shouts for them to move their legs faster. The main character and his friends enter the cage. They are ordered to be obedient, otherwise they will be called upstairs again. Chunshik sits down on the floor with a tired look and says that they were caught doing nothing. The secretary looks at the boss carefully and states that there is no need to worry too much about this. She will quickly inform the task force. Suddenly, the lady looks at him in amazement, hearing that she has to wait. Frowning, the angry protagonist claims that if they act rashly, his identity will be revealed and the situation may worsen. Chunshik calmly says that first he just needs to observe their actions and find out their motives, and he can do away with them once and for all. The embarrassed girl thinks that the boss really looked like a boomer. She was so worried, however. The enraged protagonist hears that this is the first time she hears such calm and cold-blooded judgments from him. He, in turn, grumbles that this is always the case. Nianji looks at him in amazement and asks the dumbass. The guys turn around in surprise at the scream, in which they ask where he is being taken. The character desperately holds onto the cage with his hands and screams to be released. A girl with a drawing on her face exclaims in horror that otherwise she will simply die, and they will all die at her hands. The protagonist and the secretary look at this. He notices that apparently she was also caught. Nianji turns around in amazement. There are monsters sitting in the corner. He says that it seems that there are a few more people there. The girl and the cat argue angrily. The pet demands to shut up, otherwise he will lose his teeth. She replies that she will let him go to barbecue. The surprised warrior turns around, hearing that if she continues, it will be bad for everyone. The protagonist watches closely. The question is whether they are really new and why they got here. The character in the mask and coat suggests that perhaps they are also on the counter at the black market. Chunshik replies with displeasure that no, but it's better to do without details. The interlocutor scratches his head awkwardly and says that it may sound rude since they have just met, but he would be interested in knowing their classes. The main character, perplexed, declares that he fights with a sword, but he, in turn, exclaims that a sword is a very worthy class and an excellent weapon. Nianji closes his eyes and replies that he is a master of weapons, who yells that it is delicious. Zhang claims to be an archer with a serious look. A sad new acquaintance tries to understand why he is so unlucky. Panya at this moment declares that the archer is really a long-range class for weaklings. The masked fighter states that his performance is late, but his name is Machel, and so are they. Several warriors spectacularly raise their weapons. The leader claims that they are a guild of the Melee Alliance, in which cohesion between members is valued. The protagonist looks at him and wonders what they did to be here. The interlocutor, closing his eyes, assures that this is a long story and it is better to start with the reason why their guild ended up here. He recalls their failures and explains that their community has always been ostracized. He was excluded from raids because he did little damage, and he was often humiliated in PvP. A fighter in a rage fights with a hammer, explaining that their team did not give up. The feeling of a blow that can be enjoyed every time, the love of raids made them love this game more. A giant red fist clenches his blade. The warriors raise their weapons, explaining that this is why they created the guild to fight the unreasonable attitude towards teams, because each community is a close-knit team. The guys look sadly at the ads. It was difficult to cover the costs of the raids for those who did not have money as they were not able to do the job properly, and when they needed money the most, black market bonds caught their attention. Chunshik clarifies with a serious look that they borrowed money and then because they couldn't pay it back, they were dragged here. But this is very stupid because no matter how urgent it was, they said that it was not good to borrow from an illegal business. Machel sadly sits next to his teammate and says that it was stupid. If they only knew about it, thought a few times, the girl agrees with him. The amazed Panya warrior hears a question about her. The masked leader turns to the sad comrade in arms and says that there is no need to explain to the coward. She replies that she did not intend to do this. The protagonist, frowning, remarks that this is too much and at the same time clarifies where they come from. The interlocutor replies that Panya is from Russia. The secretary turns to Chunshik, who wonders that foreigners play in such a case. She remarks that Nova's world is known all over the world. The protagonist looks at the head of the guild and asks that they are kind of there, and it doesn't seem like there are many people in it. He replies that they actually have a lot of members, it's just that some are in another prison, and the rest are out of the game. Machel assures with annoyance that in any case, if they come back in, they will also be here. The protagonist with a stern look wonders if this is really true, because it is unlikely that people can stay here for a long time. He closes his eyes and thinks that he needs to figure out how to get out of here. Kiddo would surely have come up with something by now. The ginger cat stands in front of them and orders them to go to the exit. The villain with a smirk declares that it's time to have fun. The cat hands another a bag of money. He is asked who he will bet on today. He replies that as always. The bearded cat looks at the cat and offers to think about it. Because the stakes are high today, she, in turn, asks that in his opinion she will lose all her money today. The main character makes a face, stating that the snot should stop pushing him, because he can walk himself. A large arena can be seen in front of them. They do not understand what it is. Matchel is discouraged to realize that their business is bad. There are fighters standing downstairs. They say that they are people from their guild. The furry helper is near Mayang and reports that everything is ready. With a slight grin, the head orders to be released. Fierce sounds can be heard from the corridor coming from afar. The giant is released. The host exclaims what will happen if they defeat Grunk. The cats exclaim joyfully when they hear that in this case he will let everyone go. The protagonist watches excitedly, and an exclamation is heard around him, supporting Grunk. A ginger cat with a gun asks if they are having fun, because if they defeat this monster, they will be released, so for now, just enjoy watching. A huge red mutant stands in front of the defeated adventurers. The scoundrel warns that they will soon go there themselves. A giant owl attacks fighters in the arena, explaining the event where players fight monsters and the place where people place bets to see who wins. Warriors fighting a large boar are depicted. It is said that betting on monsters is a game of chance that is played by the black market. Several people are driven into the arena and release the monster that needs to be defeated. The ferocious wolf is on fire. It is said that thanks to the black market policy that sells rare monsters, they always have goods for battle. Some of them are high-ranking creatures that are very difficult for ordinary players to catch. Colorful chips are tossed in the air. It is said that betting is illegal because the game is gambling, and it is said that there is no problem with the game itself because it is a form of player hunting for mutants. A sinister monster stands next to a scared girl. Most players are aggressive and forced to play because of their debts. This is one of the most talked about rounds in a long time. Surprised, the main character tries to understand what it is. A silhouette of a giant mutant is visible. Chunshik tries to find out if it is usually a monster. Mayang happily spreads his paws and announces the third round, claiming that it would be too boring if these guys just died there. The cats in the stand shout enthusiastically that they had no doubt that the winner was Grunk. The big monster stands still and breathes. Small Cats holds sticks as he walks back into the cage. Chunshik, with a puzzled face, asks what the hell is going on here, if they really make people fight this monster for fun. The defeated adventurers lie on the ground. He clarifies what they are fighting for and how it differs from dog fights. The ginger cat points his gun with a grin and says that they are dogs, because should people who borrow and do not pay them back need to be called something else. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist declares that he did not borrow, and they are liars and swindlers. The beaten guy struggles to raise his head. The villain walks through the arena and asks if these are the last words of the loser. Mayang happily says that if they won, they would already be walking free. He turns around and confidently orders them to be thrown behind bars. Sad Matchel stands with the lady and pronounces the name of their teammate. The eyes of the beaten guy open. He abruptly takes up the blade. Enraged, he throws himself at Mayang's back, wishing him dead. The main character and the others see this in complete shock. The head of the cats calls him a fool with a smirk. The trembling guy is lifted off the ground and told that he crawls like a dead mouse. Mayang, in his ferocious beast form, holds him above the ground, wondering if he is really tired of living. Matchel and the warrior scream the name of their partner in horror. The beast looks away and notices them. He jumps from his seat and declares that this is a good opportunity to teach everyone a lesson. A giant werewolf lands on a fence. The beast states with a smirk that this happens when it is upset. He walks past them. Chunshik tries to figure out what he is going to do. The werewolf stands near the open door and asks if the flame champion wants to amuse him. Little cats pour a potion into the poor guy. The system says about a mixture of underwater breathing. The sinister monster takes hold of the guy and asks if they know what happens after using such an elixir, because the one who crawled on his own is like him. He lets go of it. A scream is heard. The guy, not understanding anything, rushes down. He lands in the water column. At this time the villain shouts that he could not even die, and in the end he will live in the sea for the rest of his life. The werewolf laughs loudly, stating that no matter how many times he does it, no one will stop him, while Matchel says his friend's name. The protagonist and the secretary watch angrily as they hear Mayang say that if they are upset, they should log out, but if they log in again, they will suffer the same fate. Black smoke spreads across the room. The villain declares that if there are no willing, Mayang assures with a smile that you just don't need to be rude, but do what they are told. The cat waves his paw and says that they need to be ready for the next round. Shocked guild fighters hear that they will be next. Chunshik looks discouraged at the villain, who claims that there will be a fiery champion after them. The doors close. The leader orders him to be locked. Pursing his lips in anger, the protagonist listens that they will prepare a small match for them, but if they log out during the round, it will no longer be fun. The bar's closed. MC, crossing his arms, thinks that he doesn't have time, and if they don't get out of here then it won't work. The guy wonders how he can cope with such a monster alone without someone's help. Jong sadly sits next to him and apologizes for not being able to help him. He assures him that everything is fine. A dim light is visible in the room, MC finds it amazing that such things can be done in a game: cheating, gambling, kidnapping, unexpectedly that there will be so many of them, but this is a virtual reality game in which you can do anything. Nianji looks at Chunshik and says that's actually her thing. The cat is amazed to hear that the protagonist has been playing it relatively recently. He replies that the idiot does not need to pretend. The stunned protagonist and his secretary turn around. The cat corrects himself, calling him by name. He looks at the cat with an angry look and asks what he is talking about. The animal replies that he is already tired of seeing his cheap acting, because he has known everything for a long time. Outraged, Chunshik and Jong hear that they are the secretary and CEO, who do not know how to hide their conversation at all. The guy sees a small cat in front of him and says that these words should not go beyond the cage, because this is a secret. He agrees. The astonished protagonist incredulously asks how, in response to Nianji's offer to help him escape from here. The cat puts his paw behind his back, declaring that he will bet everything on him. He objects. He holds out a green potion and states that this potion, which can temporarily increase his level to 100, won't help much, but it's better than nothing. Chunshik examines the potion and thanks him, assuring him that he will receive him immediately. A disgruntled cat stands at the bars and orders to get ready, because the main character will be next. The secretary turns to the boss in fright. He replies that there is no need to worry, because he does not intend to lose. Nianji opens his eyes stunned, realizing that this is his chance. It will begin in a minute. The guild fighters lie unconscious. The villain announces that the previous battle ended on a very boring note. He hoped for at least some kind of performance, but Grunk managed to do it in 5 minutes, and perhaps now they will have such a chance. The presenter in glasses declares that the next game will be slightly different, because they have not yet seen him at the bets. Chunshik stretches his arms until it is announced that the rookie has not even reached level 30, but is already entering the ring alone, and his name is a fiery champion. Then he is told that he needs to take up arms and glorify his name. Red eyes are visible from the opening gates, and the entire arena is told that monsters like Grunk are too strong for newcomers, so to keep the show from being too boring, they have prepared. A giant rabbit enters the battlefield. The host asks to meet him. A bearded cat sits on the podium and asks if they are joking, because they said that they found a worthy monster for a beginner. The rabbit has huge sharp fangs. Chunshik clarifies if they really want him to fight him, and the host replies that it is not just a rabbit. A giant monster gets back on its feet. The protagonist hears that it is a killer rabbit. MC smirks and wonders if they're raising rabbits like this, as he's more like a crocodile. The assistant looks at Mayang and asks if they went too far, because the killer rabbit will now fight against the rookie, who replies that it will be for him to be rude. He has a predatory look. It is said that if you consider that it was hard for him because of him. A huge rabbit opens its terrible mouth. The host does not understand what is happening. Chunshik frantically wields his blade at the enemy, shouting throughout the arena that the fiery champion has decapitated the monster in just one hit. The audience was amazed. Mayang visibly tensed. The host brought the microphone to his mouth and exclaimed. Chunshik looked at the stricken monster, heard about how everything happened very quickly, and the flame champion blew off his head with one blow. Holding up his hand, the guy said that it was too easy, and he wasn't even sweating, and that was to be expected of him. Looking up, he asked if the cat was satisfied, and since he had won, they could be let out. The rabbit raised his paw when they asked him what he was talking about. Behind him, there was a stomp saying that the round was not over yet. The monster withdrew his hand to strike. She approached the hero's face when he did not understand what the interlocutor wanted to say by this. The rabbit struck him. Chunshik flew through the iron door, the host wondering about the first time he was fighting a killer rabbit. The monster in front of him has fully recovered. The hero reflected on the fact that he usually looks like a harmless rabbit, but when he feels threatened, he turns into a monster. Characteristically, according to the records, he is incredibly tenacious, and even if his head is cut off, the same will grow a new one. Nianji took a deep breath as he heard the demands to release a human in order to help the flame champion. The girl turned around when he told her to shut up and that she was his secretary, and replied that she was. Getting to his feet, the cat said that if he were her, he would attract less attention, even for the sake of his boss. Frowning, Jong replied that she couldn't sit idly by. Approaching the bars, Nianji noted that he did not say that they would just sit. Tearing out a piece of wood, he added that he was going to get out of here. The guard went down the stairs, demanding that the prisoners be quiet. The cat introduced the torticollis sharpening when he wanted to threaten. The guard fell to the floor. The girl did not understand how he managed to get out. Then, having introduced the squid to Nianji, he told that cats can crawl anywhere where the head goes. Grabbing the bars, she clarified that he was sitting there on purpose, although he could have escaped long ago. Searching the guard, and he replied that he could escape only now, but in any case, he was constantly on a leash, so he gave up. Putting on the armor, he added that he hadn't even thought that this guy could change his fate, and he would have to save him one last time. Looking at the unconscious guard, Jong offered to open the door for her so she could help. Looking at her, the cat replied that he wanted to be caught and make a fuss, so if she really wanted to save the hero, she had to sit here. Running up the stairs, he added that he would return. Chunshik swung his sword, unleashing a furious rabbit killer attack. The guy blocked the attack with his shield, heard that it is difficult to inflict a lot of damage to this monster, and just attack recklessly. He gritted his teeth. The rabbit leaned on his hand. The guy thought about how much he was cutting, but he didn't care, not understanding where the vulnerable spot was. Lamenting that Jamin is not around right now, he opened his mouth wide and growled. When he stomped his foot, the host noted his continuous stomp of a killer rabbit. The muscles have become larger. Chunshik opened his mouth in surprise, delayed his onslaught. The rabbit grabbed him by the leg. He threw the hero away. Sitting against the wall, he heard about how the flame champion really didn't know how to confront the killer rabbit. Withdrawing his paw, the facilitator called him a weakling. Chunshik gritted his teeth again, remembering the words that the most important thing when hunting is to attack the weak point that every monster has. Earlier, Jamin pointed to the side, offering to catch the slime. Looking at the one-eyed monster, the man replied that it was simple, and resented who he was mistaken for. The girl folded her hands when she heard about the use of the merciless sword of the first and second forms. Anna yawned, heard exclamations why the monster did not die. Seeing how the guy was enveloped in slime, she said that she only needed to be hit at her weak points, otherwise she wouldn't die, asking about what to do if her weaknesses were unknown. Throwing a dagger, she added that it was worth doing so. The dagger struck the slime. The monster's eye began to glow, and after noticing this, Jamin noted that it does this every time it hits, regenerating at that moment. A giant crab was standing nearby, when she said that therefore, it was necessary to study the monster first, and then find the weak points. Frowning, Chunshik repeated the thought of weaknesses. Gazing intently at the rabbit, he thought about what it could be: a neck, a head, or a heart. The monster rushed at him. The host marked such a throw to the wounded fiery champion. Many eyes peeked out from the stands, not understanding what was happening. The cat, gripping the microphone tighter, paid attention to what was happening. The hero climbed on top of the rabbit. He began to inflict many blows to the neck. He tapped his paw on the ground. The wounds on the neck healed quickly. The monster brushed it off. Seeing the rabbit continue to slap the ground with its paw, he realized that it was the right leg that was repairing his wounds by stomping. The enemy pounced on him. Chunshik swung his blade using the second form of the merciless sword. Once behind him, he cut the Achilles tendon. A deep wound remained on his leg. The rabbit fell to the ground. The young man raised his sword and pounced on him. It pierced his neck. The monster tried to hit the ground with its paw. Draft, he fell dead. The audience was shocked by this. Mayang watched silently, his assistant silently watching what was happening. Standing on the body of the defeated enemy, the hero heard that he had won. Looking up, he asked them what they thought. The cat on the balcony laughed, saying that he was not bad. Another cat appeared behind him, saying that they were in trouble and not understanding what kind of fuss it was. Mayang heard a sound. Outside, the beast threw another cat away. A lot of animals were free. Introducing Nianji's face, the servant replied that he had released all the monsters. The monsters dealt with the guards. One of them looked away, shouting that this was a commodity, and therefore you should not kill them, only try to grab them. One of the beasts grabbed him. With a jerk of his head, he threw it aside. Nianji stood on his shoulder. Someone's swift steps were heard. The cat paid attention to them. The enemy struck the dragon. Seeing the cat land on the floor, Mayang said that they would not lie low and wait. Raising his clawed paw, he asked the cat if he represented the consequences, saying that no matter how much they resisted, the queen bee would still continue to dominate, and if they wanted to escape, they had to pay back their debts. Looking at him intently, Nianji replied that they had nothing to worry about and he had a plan. Gritting his teeth, he wanted to know what it was. Chunshik looked around, not understanding what was happening and why. He raised his fist above his head, demanding to let him go. Looking behind him, he heard himself referred to as a fiery champion. A group of people appeared from behind the iron door, saying that they had come to save him. Looking at them in surprise, the guy asked about what was happening, and heard that everything would be explained to him on the way. The girl with the axe glanced in their direction, pointing to something. The armed cats headed in their direction, asking where they were going. Turning to them, the warrior told the others that she would take care of it. Together with the rest, the hero ran forward, asking what was happening, and heard the answer that it was a long story. Remembering a lot, the interlocutor said that they had previously lost matches, were transferred to the cargo compartment, and this place was filled with goods for trade. A cat that Chunshik had been with before appeared in the aisle. Anya looked at him in surprise as he began to break the locks of all the cages with monsters. Then the interlocutor caught the key. Hearing that they also needed to leave, Nianji stood on the dragon's shoulder, saying that there should be a fiery champion in the underground arena, asking to be brought to the deck. The hero glanced at the interlocutor, specifying the name of this cat, although he did not know his name here. Footsteps were heard in the passage, as well as words that although they did not know why, they were still there. Frowning, the guy realized what kind of help Nianji was talking about. The redhead looked ahead and stopped the others. Two basilisks came around the corner. The monsters rushed towards them. Chunshik grabbed his sword in preparation for battle, but his companions asked him to wait. The hammer in their hands began to glow brightly, and the interlocutor asked to leave them to them. Comrades rejoiced at the victory. Looking at the dead basilisk, the hero noted that he was worried that they were weak, since he lost to a similar one in the arena. The masked man looked down, replying that they had fought many monsters, but these had strange behavior. The girl agreed, adding that they were different. Imagining the silhouette of a huge monster, he said that no matter how many AI monsters there are in the game, when you encounter them, you try to find weaknesses, but it simply does not have them. Folding his hands, the hero replied that he did not quite understand, but in any case, they said that that monster was very strong. What if he raised an eyebrow, clarifying that all the monsters had been released? His companions threw up their hands when asked if they had seen a red lizard. Standing in front of them, Chunshik apologized, saying that they should go without him. After all, he needed to find this lizard, clarifying where the cargo hold was. Frowning, the interlocutor replied that it was too dangerous to return, and they also did not have time, so they needed to forget about her. Looking at him intently, the guy replied that the lizard was like family to him, clarifying if they wanted him to betray a family member. Turning, the masked man agreed, asking him to follow them. The bullet bounced off the mask. Several cats appeared in front of them, not noticing that they had killed the basilisks, said that they were expensive. Smoke was coming out of the barrel of the gun. The cats said that they had spoiled the goods, and now they wanted to escape, offering to return to prison themselves. The man lowered his head and when asked how he felt, replied that it was fine. A girl was hiding under the mask, and raising her head, she said that she didn't care about it. Frowning, the blonde added that there was no need to think about escaping anymore, and the hero would have to go to the cargo hold alone. If he went down in the other direction, there would be a cargo compartment. As he turned around, Chunshik heard that he had to hurry up and leave, and thanked him for his answer. Picking up the hammer, she asked Panya if she was ready. Both girls grabbed their weapons, not ready to play a little. The hero stood in the aisle, wondering if it was a cargo compartment. He walked among the destroyed cells, shouting the name Kissy. Someone's foot appeared nearby. The red lizard looked at him. Approaching her, Chunshik said that he was very worried and called her to him. Kissy growled and grabbed her hand. The lizard bit him, and the hero clenched his teeth in pain. The guy looked at her angrily, asking her to let him go. The lizard bit harder. Chunshik recalled how a dog bit him, telling his father that he was nervous, and he replied that he knew what to do. The guy patted her on the head, hearing that the animal needed to be left alone and lightly stroked to make it feel safe. The dog's gaze became kinder. She licked the biting finger. Chunshik now brought his hand to the lizard's head. Stroking her, the guy talked about the fact that she could bite as much as she wanted until she felt better. Kissy's eyes widened. A pupil appeared in them when he said that this was her owner. A bright light spread from the lizard. She looked at the man with big eyes. Kissy climbed on his shoulder. The hero was happy because she recognized him. Someone wagged his tail as he suggested getting out. A huge monster appeared in front of them. Kissy growled at the sight of him. A red trail came out of the monster's mouth and rushed at them. Chunshik only covered himself with his hand, seeing him approach. Kissy began to glow brightly again. Looking at the pet, the hero did not understand what had happened. The lizard grew larger and bit into the monster. His hand tried to reach for the key. Jong leaned against the bars. She lowered her head in frustration, saying that she lacked long arms. Looking up, she noticed that something was going on upstairs, and she didn't even know. Suddenly, the ceiling collapsed. Someone looked at her with his green eye. The panther headed towards Jong. The girl crawled to the wall, hoping that this cat was a good boy. Chunshik sat down on his knee. Seeing the lizard bite into the monster, he wondered if it was really Kissy. The monster struck. He threw the lizard away as well. Then he turned towards the hero. The guy got nervous, thinking that this monster was not simple. Thinking back to previous enemies, Chunshik reflected on the fact that he had already dealt with similar ones. But this is something different, and also felt that there was something familiar. Remembering the armored enemies, he noted that it was just like back then, and he had no chance of winning no matter what he did. The monster stretched out its hand towards him, and he felt an overwhelming force. Kissy opened her mouth wide and growled. She jumped on the enemy from above. The hero watched what was happening with surprise. He grabbed his weapon, saying that it was not in his nature to give up so easily. He looked behind him when he heard something. The cats from the monster suppression team ran to him, the head ordered to take out paralyzing guns. The monsters and the hero turned to them, hearing that there was a player who had previously won the arena. Several shells flew out of the guns. Chunshik took cover behind the shield. The monster covered himself with his hand. He carefully peeked out from behind her. With a roar, the monster knocked the cats off their feet. They got back on their feet. One of them said that the others had used too much potion on him, which was too much. But the main one replied that he didn't care and that the monster would fall when the potion expired, so there was no need to rush. They turned when they heard them get out of the way. An iron-armored cat appeared behind him, saying that he was just going to test his toy. His mask closed. Opening its mouth wide, the monster pounced on him. He withdrew his fist for a blow. He struck the monster in the jaw. There was a noticeable mark on it, but it opened its mouth again and growled. Chunshik hid around the corner, not understanding what was happening. Kissy appeared behind him. The guy fell to the floor, saying that the pet scared him. The lizard stuck out his tongue, and the man did not understand why he had grown so sharply. The two of them looked around the corner. The monster fought with iron armor. Deep cuts remained on the armor. Putting his hands forward, he used a laser. Clouds of smoke rose everywhere. The monster jumped out of it. It bit off an iron hand. Gritting his teeth in battle, Chunshik remarked that it was indeed a terrible monster. Kissy growled in the direction of the enemies, but the hero said that they needed to get out of here. A few bottles lay next to his hand. Chunshik picked them up, thinking that they were the same potion. Kissy sank to the ground. The lizard nodded to him when he asked if he could climb on his back. So he ended up riding a pet, noting that he used to ride a horse, But this is a completely different feeling. One of the cats looked behind him. Chunshik rushed forward. With a swing of his sword, he knocked the guards out of the way. On horseback, he headed for the exit to the deck. The monster struck the armor with its paw. The monster defeated its enemy. It looked ahead. In front of him was the road to the exit. The monster headed towards him. Someone fell on top of him. Chunshik ran out onto the deck. What he saw surprised him. Beasts and guards lay everywhere. The elf sighed heavily and said that they had barely made it. She was frightened when she saw the dinosaur. The other was glad that they were safe. After getting down from the pet, Chunshik asked where Nianji was. The interlocutor replied that they did not know. He only told them to go on deck. The three of them looked away when they heard someone's voice. The man held the cat in his hand, saying that he was a little hurt and that, no matter how cute he was still just like them. Throwing it on the floor, Mayang noted that it didn't matter. The condition is still on the highway. The man added that only small fish remained. They stood opposite each other. Nianji raised his head, saying that the plan had failed. Mayang put his foot on him and, upon hearing about the plan, called him a joker, outraged at how much money he lost because of it. The girls frowned when the man told the cat to behave quietly. But he spoils everything, asking how he will work off the damage now. He glanced at the hero, hearing from him a question about whether he was bored. Seeing how Chunshik seemed to be on fire, Mayang asked him what he was going to repay in kind. The man put his hands in his pockets, surprised that they had already become best friends in a short time in prison. The hero replied to him that he was breaking the rules of their game by giving illegal debt obligations, as well as kidnapping people and selling them. Pointing the sword in his direction, the guy also added that he would file a complaint against him, not allowing him to do it anymore. Mayang laughed when he heard about the complaint. Looking at the destruction, he said that the hero is not alone with such threats, that the game only looks amazing, but this is not the case. Putting his foot on Nianji again, he asked if he thought the same way. Pointing at him, Chunshik offered to fight if he was a man. The latter looked at him with a smile. Kissy looked at her master. The girl next to her was surprised at what she heard, and the guy offered that if he won, he would let everyone go and write off all debts. Covering his face with his hand, the man said that the hero had gone mad and asked what would happen if he won. Turning a blind eye, Mayang asked about what he would get from such a weakling. Then, a bright object called the Sword of Execution appeared in Chunshik's hand, and he said that he would give it back. The girls looked at him in shock, wondering where he got this sword from. The hero smiled, clarifying whether the opponent was satisfied with 100 million for the victory, and whether it was enough to cover all the damage. A dark aura surrounded the hand of Mayang, who called it a great luck, a very unexpected gift. Frowning, the blonde girl called it nonsense and ridiculous that a rookie would fight a ranker, and that it was tantamount to simply passing a sword. Looking in their direction, Chunshik asked not to worry, because he had a plan. The opponent standing opposite was surprised by the next plan, assuming that after the fight he would no longer be able to speak. Mayang put his hand forward, clarifying if this was his plan. A dark aura surrounded the sword, and in the face of unfair trade, the pair had not heard that if he won, he would give him the ship, as well as what he had previously offered. Showing sharp fangs, Mayang added that he would feel sorry for him and give him a slight advantage, as no one likes obvious games, and he would only use one low-level skill. Taking the weapon in his hands, the hero thought that Mayang has no conscience or honor, but this is enough. The huge cat pounced on him when he realized that he had no chance. The enemy struck him. As he fell, Chunshik did notice something. He looked at the clawed paw when he heard that he only had one skill, and asked in surprise that the hero had never seen such a thing before. The opponent used the appearance of a tiger. Kissy opened her mouth slightly and growled. The pet rushed in his direction. Suddenly, he became a small lizard again. The tiger threw him aside. Looking at the unconscious lizard, he noted that it could also transform, but decided that he would talk about it later. The girls grabbed their weapons. The two cats pounced on them, saying that their opponents would be them. They whirled in a whirlwind, using a storm of blades. Chunshik pulled the blade behind his back. The enemy attacked him again. Mayang struck the hero again, not understanding how he managed to defeat the killer rabbit. Hitting the guy again, he asked if he was running out of strength. Chunshik lay on the ground, thinking that his opponent was playing with him. He imagined a cat with a mouse, wondering if he could win. The fierce gaze of the tiger made it clear that there was no time to think, and he could not even launch an attack, although, as expected, he could not win. The tiger flattened his ears, calling it boring, and said that he hoped that the hero had prepared something. Lashing out at him, Mayang added that while it was fun, it was time to end. Something caught his attention. A hammer of light appeared next to the cat. The man changed his appearance to a bear, surprised that he still had the strength to use his skills. Nianji dodged the swing. Magic blades appeared next to him. A bright light illuminated everything around. But Mayang broke through it. With a blow, he threw the cat away. Landing on the floor, Mayang said that he was finished. Chunshik tried to get up. Changing his appearance, the opponent asked if it seemed strange to him, noting that he would not be able to win, even if he himself died. Having become a werewolf, he stretched out his paw to the hero, offering to simply give him the sword. Chunshik took the potion in his hand. The cork flew off the vial, the system noting that it was an experience potion that raised the level to the maximum within 5 minutes. A bright light spread from the guy. Chunshik smiled slightly, noting that the enemy was too confident. He sat down on his knee. The system reported that his level was 100. Smiling, the werewolf noted that the hero had prepared a potion of the maximum level, but in vain he hoped that something would change. His gaze changed from what he saw. A bright object appeared in Chunshik's hand. After using it, he said that they would now look at the power of a sword worth 100 million won. The girls looked in his direction. Nianji raised his head. A bright blade appeared in the hero's hands. Clenching his fist victoriously, he called it a success. The system showed a description of the blade. The werewolf was confused, not understanding what was happening. Chunshik raised his weapon above his head. A bright light spread out like a wave. The flames engulfed everything around, saying that it was incredible. Surrounded by fire, he came out of it. A new message has surfaced that this is a temporary transformation into a servant avatar, and all stats have been greatly increased. Clenching his fist, Chunshik said that he felt stronger. Spreading the flames around, he added that they would now begin. Frowning slightly, Mayang thought about the fact that he had heard of him, but was seeing him for the first time. He began to change his shape. His claws became sharper when using his berserker form, and he said he would give it his all. Gritting her teeth, the girl thought about the fact that he was ranked 34. The beast opened its mouth wide and roared, and she reflected that although the druid was considered a weaker class, his new condition had made him the strongest Dravidian. Looking at the inflamed hero, he thought about the fact that he knew his sword was an incredibly valuable item. But even so, his opponent was still a ranker, and the difference in experience was too great. The berserker's silhouette darkened as he cast his bloodthirst and ferocity power potion. He raised his paw over the hero, telling the fiery champion to die. A bright light spread from the blade. Chunshik pulled the weapon behind his back. The card with this item was the least likely to drop, and it was currently worth more than 100 million in the auction, and the reason for such a high price was its rarity. The hero pointed his weapon forward. A bright light appeared in the berserker's chest. The sword of execution pierced through him. The girl opened her mouth in shock. Nianji was also surprised. The beam rushed beyond the ship. A hole remained in the animal's body. Clouds of dust rose everywhere. The fire gradually disappeared from the hero. Assuming his normal appearance, Chunshik asked the defeated enemy what all this had been, as he had promised to use only one skill. The guy raised an eyebrow in surprise. Looking at the object in his hand, he realized that the sword's duration had ended. Kissy climbed onto his shoulder. The girls ran up to him, and he was glad they were okay. They looked at the hero with delight, saying that he was amazing and had won a good victory. Chunshik put his hand behind his head in embarrassment when asked where he got such a sword and how he managed to do it, but he asked to ask the questions one at a time. The other cats were shocked. They immediately disappeared, and the girl said that since their boss had lost, many would run away. Looking to the side, Chunshik clarified that they had won. The others ran on deck, asking the captain, who replied that victory was theirs. The big guy gave a thumbs up, inviting him to join the union, but the hero replied that he had to refuse. He looked down. Nianji was sitting nearby. Looking at him with a smile, the guy thanked him for his help, because he would not have been able to win on his own. Sighing, the cat replied that he surprised him by calling him stupid, to which the hero asked not to call him that anymore. Earlier, they turned around when they heard the words that this was not the end. The man with the pierced chest stood up, asking if they would be able to cope with the consequences, and indignant that the hero dared to interfere with him. A sinister smile appeared on his face as he said that Chunshik had used a cowardly trick and that he would use a weak potion. Someone hit him on the head, saying that there was too much noise from him. Jong sat astride the panther, saying that the losers were not given the floor. Noticing the hero, she was glad that everything was fine with him. He was surprised at what had happened, and that she was now a rider. Jong smiled as she told her that the beast had come to her prison, and they had escaped together. Raising her hammer, she added that this was called attraction, but heard a demand to get off it. Smoke surrounded the panther, and when asked that it was a talking monster, the beast replied that it was also a player. So the beast became a girl who said that she was watching a fiery champion and that her name was Nana. Pointing at her, the masked girl told her to be careful, because she was a guild merchant, but she asked to calm down. There was a Deuce standing nearby, and when Nana explained that they had been forcibly forced into the guild even though they were engaged in black trade under contract and had foolishly fallen into a trap, Chunshik laughed when he heard this. Nana admitted that she felt like they would never get out of here, and so she was grateful to him for his freedom, but he replied that he didn't do anything. The green-skinned beast stared at him as he wondered who it was. The hero is frightened, saying that he looks like a monster. Pointing to him, the girl said that in fact, he was also a player from the clan of lizard people, who was forced to work off a debt. Taking a step forward, the guy noticed that if you look closely, he looks a little different. Nana clarified that he was in the role of a monster at the bets. The latter, opening his mouth and hearing the question that he was pretending to be a monster, replied that it was. He remembered how Mayang had handed him the seized, telling him that he had handed it to him a long time ago and told him to use it before each round, and that it was already being distributed by the red demon. So, imagining red skin, the Rogan said that after using it, it grew, and he became stronger, but he could not control himself. Kissy pulled the skin on his face when the hero noted that he had heard about this. Looking at the interlocutor, the animal thanked him for defeating him. People gathered around thanked for the rescue. Chunshik smiled broadly, noting that it was exciting. The ship continued on its way. Others took the guy out of the water. The girls looked after the remaining cats. Clouds floated across the sunset sky. The hero noted that they were almost finished. He turned towards the masked girl, saying that it was time for them to go. She was surprised that they were already leaving. She took her hand aside when he was talking about how it was late, and it wouldn't hurt everyone to get enough sleep, and asked what to do with the ship, since it belonged to him. Chunshik brought his hand to his face thoughtfully. The interlocutor happily clenched her fists when she heard that she could take him for herself. Glancing at the flag, he added that it would be more useful to them. She thanked him, promising never to forget such kindness. Chunshik waved to the others as he heard the wishes to return. Frowning slightly, Jong noted that they had something else. Imagining the silhouette of a cat, the girls said that at the moment they had solved the problem, but they would not be able to stop their growth, because in a few days the enemy would return to form, although the eternal blocking of the guild master would solve the problem. But the guild itself was hiding the account with an external program, so their task force would not be able to track it. The guy replied that he hoped that they would finish him. The interlocutor nodded when she heard that they would talk about it tomorrow in the office, because now they were powerless. Both looked away when they heard that someone would help them. Lowering his ears, Nianji said that he had seen the entire fight, and therefore the sword would not help Chunshik rise to the top of the rankings. An energy blade appeared in the cat's paw with the words that the sword was strong, but the guy had used his inner ability, not his own. He still lacked experience, although there was potential for growth. Frowning, the hero asked what he should do. Pointing at him with his blade, the cat offered a deal in which he would take care of leveling him up. Looking into his eyes, he added that he had his own reasons for this, and he would increase his strength many times over. The bright sun illuminated the walls of the school. Someone asked about the fact that a rookie battle royale would take place today. The student, leaning over to his classmate, asked not to take his friends from the black market with him. He asked in surprise why. A girl nearby took out a textbook, hearing that if they were caught, they would write a complaint. Juhi was frightened when her comrades appeared from behind, asking what she was doing. Haiji pointed her finger and suggested that we go home together and have a little snack. Unchan smiled and offered to look into the VR room. The girl frowned, saying that Juhi doesn't play such games. She lowered her eyes and apologized to her comrades. They glanced at her, hearing that she already had plans. The two of them immediately approached her, asking if they were planning with the guy. Juhi was visibly embarrassed. The two looked at each other. The girl blushed even more when she was called cute, and her friend was surprised that she did not know about it. Juhi looked away when she heard the question of who he was. She closed her eyes altogether when her comrades wanted to know what kind of person he was. A slight smile appeared on the guy's face, saying that he had been waiting for a long time. Holding the book in his hands, the man added that there were only two of them today. Spirit folded his hands. They were walking along the street when the guy remembered that today was a battle royale. Glancing at his friend, he noted that most likely Jamin would not be here today, asking to contact her. Withdrawing his hand, he also noted that Spirit has been training hard all these days, offering to prepare together, because they can be lucky and take first place. He paid attention to the other players. Looking in their direction, the guy noted that they were joking merrily. After introducing the barbarian, he also said that if his companion likes muscular guys, then he also has moments when he wants to level up a character like Conan. Glancing at his friend, he noted that they had similar tastes. Spirit clenched his fist victoriously, rejoicing at this. Nan was surprised when his comrade addressed him. He looked confident, said that if he had any problems, he could tell right now, and even if he was useless, he would still try to help. Juhi remembered Haiji's joyful words that it was very cute. The guy silently froze in place, wondering if the girl would dare to date. He was absolutely confused, not knowing how long it would take him to get used to it. Jiro's gritted his teeth, contemplating that if nothing was said, the atmosphere would quickly diffuse, and that he didn't know what the other person was thinking because he had a masked face. Raising his hand, he remembered that he had recently seen a fiery champion and offered to contact him. The guy brought his hand to his face, asking if he could hear him, to which he received the answer that the hero could hear him. Chunshik was breathing heavily as his comrade talked about contacting him because of today's battle royale, asking where he was, and heard the answer that he was almost done and would be in a minute. At this moment, Nianji raised his blade above his head, telling him not to be distracted. The guy blocked the attack. Kissy lay quietly on the ground, hearing that the level in PvP does not matter, and the most important thing is control and the ability to handle his avatar. Chunshik's eyes lit up brightly. With a blow, he threw the cat away. He opened his eyes wide, saying that it was not bad. Seeing the hero's fighting stance, he added that they still had a long way to go, but it was not useless. Placing his sword on his shoulder, Chunshik heard that that was all for today, and thanked him for his help. Clouds floated over the valley. The guy added that he was going to the battle royale today, to which his comrade replied that he was also going to. The hero smiled when he heard the wishes to show his skills there and strive for the first place, and replied that he had to win at all costs. Nianji looked up when he heard the address to him. Lowering his head, Chunshik thanked for that incident on the ship, saying that it was okay to help each other, and thanks to it, he felt like he was getting stronger. Looking at him, the cat reminded him to keep his promise, because this is the only reason why he helps him. Kissy opened his eyes when the hero asked for advice on the battle royale, and heard that he had better succeed. The pet jumped on Chunshik's shoulder, saying something, and Chunshik replied that he had heard it many times. Turning away, the cat told him to call him when the battle royale was over. Seeing his friend leave, the guy said that they would see each other again. Someone's eyes shone among the leaves. An unknown person was watching Nianji. The cat felt it. He glanced up the crown of the trees. Chunshik ended up in the city, noticing that there were a lot of people there. Glancing at the lizard, he said that Jamin wasn't getting in touch, even though it was a battle royale. He glanced to the side and noticed Jiro's. His attention was attracted by the crowd that had gathered. He stepped closer, wanting to know what was going on. Jamin looked away from the man who was accusing her of cheating. Unaware, she raised her eyebrows, asking for evidence, saying that as long as she had a good item, she was in the game. He was visibly angry, asking who she thought he was. Stepping forward, Chunshik asked to calm down and asked what was going on. The girl was glad to see him. She ran up to the hero, who said that she did not get in touch, and he did not understand what was happening. With a frustrated look, Jamin said that the guy was teasing her, even though she didn't do anything. Pointing to her, the man replied that they wanted to deceive him about objects. Covering her mouth with her hand, the girl replied that she did not understand what he was talking about, asking to help her just once. The unknown looked at him intently, clarifying that he was a fiery champion. Chunshik looked at him uncomprehendingly. Taking a step forward, he was surprised by such a coincidence. The interlocutor took off his helmet, surprised that he did not remember it. The hero opened his mouth in surprise, saying that this could not be. Putting his hands on his belt, the man laughed, saying that he was Song Taegil.